At the beginning of everything, we are in a completely desolate land, with monsters taking to the sky and flying everywhere, as well as, apparently, an erupting volcano. And some people are watching from atop a hill, and one of them says it's coming, and that monster is approaching. It has dragon wings and looks like the devil, and so, even that, it comes along with a huge dragon. And the leader of those humans says he's the king of the dragons, a huge, colossal dragon, and he calls him Gormtail. And the girl right behind him says that, apparently, the centaur's nest has fallen, and there's nothing left for them to depend on now. The Sign Knights, the Resistance, the Cross Hunters, and all the adventurers, and the 6 heroes that people saw as a ray of hope, they are all dead, and their leader is the only one left, the last adventurer, El Palmi, and so he calls them all because that is his last adventure, facing that gigantic dragon that is ready to lick its mouth in the air, and he already begins invoking fire magic. But a while after that, everything is burned around, and Palmi is in a very bad situation, badly injured, bloody, with blood everywhere, and his companions are thrown and dead on the ground. But right in front of him, the Dragon King is dead, fallen in front of the boy, and he wonders if that is the end for him. But then, another dragon appears above them too, and it is a 3-headed dragon, having cut off one, and Palmi says that the head he cut off is regenerating, and realizes that everything was in vain. And so that dragon descends once again on top of the boy, and he no longer has the strength to resist, so he just closes his eyes, realizing that this is his end, the end of the world, and the end of his adventure too. But then he punches the ground, very angry, thinking that this fate is shit, and he wonders if this is how it will all end, desolate, dying of hate. And he remembers the death of each of his friends, Philippe, Jaden, and Alexis too. Then he says that they all sacrificed themselves, and starts to scream, howling with hate, thinking that he can't accept this. And so he gets up and thinks of Gormtail, thinking that this can't be how it ends. And he gathers all his mana, preparing one more attack, and says that no matter what, he will finish this. But that fire arrow he was summoning above his head is broken and shattered because he is hit right in the middle of the abdomen, and his blood starts to gush onto the ground. And the dragon takes advantage of this to prepare another breath towards the boy, while that infernal fire comes at him direction, thinks that he really is a pathetic piece of shit, and wonders why it had to end like this. Because if at least he were stronger, if he had just one more chance, then it would be different. But then someone throws water in his face, and he wakes up scared, noticing that he is no longer facing the dragon, not knowing exactly where he is, wondering what's going on. And man says that pretending to be sick won't work, saying that the slave has to know his place. So the protagonist is left without knowing what's going on, wondering where Gormtail is, and also wondering why he's alive, but ends up recognizing that place. So he thinks that this place is where he's been before, looking around at the people there, noticing that it's a slave market, and no way, because the slave market was abolished a long time ago. But that place is definitely the one he's been to, and the seller, if he remembers correctly, is the merchant who was in charge of him 6 years ago, when the boy was still a slave, and it's definitely the same guy. Then he realizes that he's returned to the past, but the bald man, seeing the boy not answering him, gets pissed, asking what he's looking at, preparing to punch the boy. And Palm says that on that day he was brought back to the starting point of all stories. And after receiving that punch, he wonders if he's dreaming, but ends up realizing that that is too real, because he even got punched, and says he can't believe it, but there is no other explanation. And so, another man who works in the slave market is leading a group that appears to be pirates, saying that everyone there is a slave who can be used as bait, telling them to choose one, and says that they are in good condition as they were recently caught. And so that guy with white hair says he will take 2, and Palm, in turn, after reflecting a little, realizes that he doesn't need to think too much, and that is his second chance. But going back in time a little, before our protagonist realizes he was back, a group of pirates arrives in that city, and one of them is happy to finally be there. And a girl in a bunny outfit says that as soon as they did her a little favor, she will be able to buy potions, and another guy offers some fish there. And one of the boys who is with them is all happy to be in the port city, Lich, and that guy with white hair asks if Raymond is that happy, and he talks to Walker, asking if he's not as happy as he is. And so everyone gets in that great mood, because it's the beginning of their adventure. And so it's said that that's the age of adventurers, and adventurers from all over the world create their own adventures and become heroes in their own journeys, and they go to a portal. Because in addition to these mysterious portals, which began to appear all over the world one day, there were several types of terrifying worlds that you couldn't find in Maple World, and countless adventurers died in the portals. But the unimaginably valuable and powerful items that were found inside attracted those who dared to dream big. But Walter says that they need bait, and everyone then is surprised. He says that they can't plan anything until they know what's inside the portal, and countless adventurers have died because of unexpected variables, which is why they need a slave to act as bait. And the girl who looks more like a ninja notices that they need someone to divert attention while they escape, saying it's a good plan, agreeing with it. And they go to the slave market and say that they are all very good and they are worthy of the price, and so Walter decides to take both of them. One of them being our protagonist, and he carries them both to the portal, and says that they will mark the pillar there to notify the others that they are already there, and it seems that there is no one inside yet, which means that they will be the first. Looking back and asking if their friends are ready, and they agree to this, going through that portal along with the slaves. But in that, the boy notices that it is very strange there, and when he looks ahead, he realizes that it is a very mysterious forest with huge mushrooms, and realizes that he has never been in such a mysterious place, and it is totally different from what he had imagined. But Walter says that they do not need to be so nervous, and calls for them to go ahead, because portals usually form in places far from monster habitats, so everything should be clear for now. Besides that, he gives an addendum, saying that they cannot use the same portal to leave, and says that they have to find an exit portal first. But in that, while the ninja looks back, a monster appears out of nowhere, holds her mouth in air, and actually manages to catch her in the middle. And everyone is surprised that there's a monster there and screams Charlotte. But the girl is already being chewed by the monster, and they end up noticing that they are surrounded on all sides by that kind of humanoid monster that is there. And so, Walter uses his fire arrow to try to kill one of the monsters, releasing Charlotte inside its mouth. And it screams that something is wrong, ordering them to tie the baits to the trees, because they have to get out of there. But in that, one of the slaves tells them to wait, because he wants to leave with them. But the fat guy tells him to shut up and do what he says. And so, the boy starts saying he's sorry, leaving the two behind. But one of the slaves keeps asking not to be left there, and they simply run away. And the slave who is not the protagonist is caught there, and the other tries to catch the boy. But meanwhile, the fur adventurers run away from the monsters, and Walter is carrying Charlotte all injured, saying that they failed, and cleaning doesn't matter anymore. They have to hurry and find the exit of the portal, but everyone is very nervous, and Raymond almost can't hear. Then the fat guy grabs him by the collar, telling him to pull himself together, and tells him to do what Walker is saying, telling him to calm down, because they even failed this one, but they can always prepare again. So he must not give up, and must focus on the present, saying that they will all get out of there. But another of that monster appears, showing that maybe he is wrong, crushing the fat guy on the ground and killing him in one hit. Then Walker screams in terror, but he is already beyond dead, and only his little hand is left up, all broken. And with that, Raymond starts screaming, and Walker tries to do something else by launching another fire arrow. But that monster shows that it doesn't only have its hand to attack, and throws its tongue that looks more like a frog's, holding Walker's neck and bringing him to his mouth. And with that, he is finished too. And the last one left is Raymond, who runs out screaming for help, but the monster goes after him and wants him to eat. And when it grabs his leg, he becomes desperate, realizing that he is losing it, until he looks forward and sees that bait that is the protagonist, then says it's good that he's alive, telling him to help quickly, saying that everyone died, and it's just the two of them for now, and says he's sorry for before, because he didn't want to do that, saying that he can't get out of there alone, and it's better to have more people, so please, he should help him. But the protagonist continues looking at him in a completely cold way, and Raymond becomes desperate, saying that instead of just standing there watching, he should help him, cursing him. But the protagonist gives a slight smile, and even goes down there, saying that he doesn't know, because it seems like he's a little late, and the boy is already stuck dying and being split in half. But Raymond spends the rest of his life smiling and cursing the protagonist, asking if he really thinks he'll be able to get out of there alone, saying that he's next. But the monster has just eaten him completely, chewing him up, leaving only one arm out, and now looking at the protagonist, going after him. But the boy says he won't die there, attacking that thing, and with that, he grabs from the ground a staff for the fire arrow, and notices that no, the bad skin is perfect for his skill level now. But he thinks that it is not enough, because an adventurer must have more than a simple weapon, and otherwise, there will be no point in him coming back there. But then he sees a foot there, and remembers that some guys hide valuable items in their shoe, and realizes that he got a ring, and that ring shines on his wrist, and notices that it is a telekinetic ring. And then he hears some more monsters coming towards him, and ends up being surrounded, and realizes that they smell blood. And with that, the monsters go after him, and the protagonist starts killing them calmly, and one of them even throws its tongue towards the boy, taking the spear that was in his hand and breaking it in half. And with that, the protagonist is quite surprised, but the monster that comes after him is stopped by his fire arrow, which is activated instantly. The boy kills that monster very calmly, and he says that he will test the ring too. And with that, the arrow he shot rolls through of the telekinetic ring, killing all the monsters around him, and with a single arrow he kills everything that was chasing him. And he says that he won't be able to do this for long. And some monsters, seeing how strong the boy is, get scared, and he thinks that it doesn't matter, but he ends up noticing something, and manages to escape the attack of one of the monsters before he was hit, and realizes that the fire arrows are not working, and looks at his staff, noticing that it doesn't seem to be broken, wondering if it's on cooldown. And then another monster comes from the side, but the boy goes for ignorance, killing it purely with the staff, realizing he won't have a choice, going down with the beating and killing some of the monsters. And one wonders how much longer, until he manages to activate another arrow, and so throws it towards the monsters, killing the first one, and zigzagging killing all around, finishing off the horde of monsters that was behind him. And so that girl who was bitten at the beginning ends up speaking, noticing that he's not just any slave, and the protagonist is surprised that she was alive, and she starts talking about what she saw, about him having mastery with lance and magic, asking who he is, and the protagonist notes that she was lucky, but in reality unlucky would be a better choice of word. So she asks why he has that staff. Besides that, she also talks about that on his wrist, asking how he awakened, how much is just a slave, but in that she asks if by chance he planned all that destruction. But the protagonist just looks at her and asks if she's finished talking, and she questions what he's saying, and he apologizes, but says that he understood everything wrong because nothing would be different, even if he had planned that, because he would have killed them all anyway. And she questions what madness he's saying, and the protagonist simply says that it's completely stupid. People who use slaves as bait, preparing the fire spear for the girl's head, and sometime later in the city, everyone is surprised because a bait slave returned on his own, and the protagonist walks through the middle of all of them, saying that the dice have been cast, and he has to hurry to prevent fate from repeating itself. So first he will have to free himself. And in front of one of the authorities' building ships is surprised that a slave returned alive, and his subordinate confirms this, saying that he apparently returned without a single scratch. But Habes questions what's wrong with that, as it's not uncommon for someone used only as bait to return safe and sound. But the subordinate says that all the adventurers who accompanied him died inside the dungeon, and so he is surprised that he is the only one who returned alive, noting that this is definitely strange. And most importantly, he said he didn't run away and come back there alone on his own feet. And he said that people who are reduced to slavery because of their dead will end up being bait again, even if they come back alive. And other than that, he didn't run away, which means he knows he can't escape their grasp so easily, because the only way to escape is through death. But then Habes asks if that's how the Garford Merchant Union deals with slaves. He then asks why he needed to hear a report on something so trivial. The man says he has another event to report besides this one, as that slave unlocked the first circle. Habes is even more surprised, noting that the slave who was bait is now in the first circle, and that the slave would bring many negative feelings against the Merchant Union, and if something goes wrong, it could get really bad. And the subordinate adds that, to add insult to injury, he asked about a contract change, and he asked about this because apparently he wants to be registered as an adventurer. Habes is even more shocked, asking if a slave with no rights would dare do this, noting that he apparently doesn't know his place. The subordinate tells him that Hakan ordered him to personally handle this matter. Habes is shocked that the order came directly from Hakan, as an executive of the Garford Merchant Union is showing interest in a low-class slave for this reason, so he thinks it can't be because of that alone. And so, when the subordinate leaves, he thinks of the bait who wants to be the adventurer, and he's a little uncomfortable. And it's said that, under Empress Signas, the status of slave should not exist. And this is just superficial talk, because humans have always been slaves to the table, their currency. And he says that if they fail and pay back what they borrowed, they make up for it with their labor. And this notion was created by the world of guarantees, the so-called slaves. And on the day his only family, his father, passed away after an illness, protagonist became one of them, and the black moss, the herb he bought from the Merchant Union on credit, caused the Merchant Union to raise the price of the black moss multiple times its real price, ending up at 1,000 mesos. And so, they speak to Palm in a trial he passed, saying that the defendant, who failed to pay the amount of 1,000 mesos on the correct date, is sentenced to perform work equivalent to that amount at the Merchant Union. Condemning the boy, he says that's how he was exploited for 6 whole years in the Union. And now, it's time for his revenge. And so, he stands face to face with the Habs, saying his name is Elpon. He wonders if he still remembers Hab's name, saying that he's Raken's left-hand man, one of the union's executives, and he caught a big fish. And Hab says he's right, asking if he wants to modify the contract, and says he's already received a report on it, and then gets straight to the point, and says he's going to change the contract to a rank F adventure contract. And so, protagonist is surprised that he accepted his request so easily and begins to thank him. But something remains on his mind, because as he had thought, he is being cautious about this. However, the boy says that he still wants Ranky, and says he has no intention of playing with him in his game. Habs then questions the boy about wanting Ranky for himself right away, since the Adventurers Association hasn't even given him a rank yet. The boy says he's already explored nearly 100 of these portals during those 3 years as a bait slave. However, Habs says he's only experimented with bait, and he's never caught a monster. However, the boy asks since when is hunting a monster of virtue for an adventurer. Habs asks what he's talking about, and Palm says that the reason the first adventurer was able to make a name for himself was survival, and the virtue of an adventurer is to return alive, especially when information from a returnee can be far better than an individual feat. And Habs says he admits this is true, and he's clearly right about surviving as a bait slave for 3 years. And of course, this is no ordinary feat, but he says that's all he is, saying that everyone else has only entered low-rank dungeons, and asks if he really thinks his pathetic survival skills will work in high-rank portals. He begins to think the boy thinks they're idiots, especially idiots who would approve a risky contract for someone who could die without even paying what they owe. He thinks the boy is a Donatic because he thinks he's all that, and he'll die without even taking 3 steps. And yet, Habs wonders what this repulsive feeling is he's having, and tells him there's a portal that only 5 people can enter, and it has 12 marks, and he says that's right. The bones of the last 12 groups are buried there. So, he asks the boy to prove to him if he really is as talented as he claims. And if he manages to get out of that portal, he'll do whatever the boy wants, sometime later. The boy is with the other adventurers, and they ask if he's a newbie coming with them. Chev says it's nice to meet him, saying he's the group's tank, and that he heard about him from Habs, and that he was a decoy slave, and says he doesn't care about such things, and tells him not to worry, as the same goes for his companions. And Palm says she hopes they can have a good time working together, and he starts examining Proto, having heard he can use fire magic, and the boy agrees. Then the other guy asks what he means, wondering if the magic element he can use has already been decided. Then Chev says he heard that mages can't use elemental magic, other than the one they were born with, and so apparently any item unrelated to their elements is useless to them. They think this is pretty complicated, and Chev says that enough chit-chat, as he's probably heard this before. But for this mission, the objective isn't to hunt monsters, but to return safely with the items from the 12 groups that were annihilated before them. So, they just have to return the items to the Union, and heard that they will offer 3,000 mesos for each item. But the white-haired madman asks if they're being too brazen, since they won't gain anything if they can't bring them back. And items for First Circle adventurers are worth 7,000 months or more, and that's not even half the price. But then his companion tells him to stop complaining, and he questions what's wrong, saying he never complains, and at that Chev finally puts an end to it, questioning if they're ready, and calls everyone to make some money. And once inside the place, they notice that it's bright, but it seems quite depressing, so Chev talks to everyone there, saying that there's a very good chance of a prolonged battle in that dense forest, so they're going to set up camp first. And then they ask Chev who's near that tree, because with all those branches hiding and moving to the other trees is quite easy, and he says that it's not bad at all, and prepares to go there, throwing some ropes and some things to make the tent. And that guy talks to Palm who he can just rest, saying that setting up camp is that idiot's specialty. And so, after setting up a well-prepared treehouse, they say that now that the base is made, they will split into 2 groups and search the surroundings. And they say that Tom, Max, and Rua will be in group 1, and they will each go to a side, east and west, and they will search and come back. And if anything happens, they must send a signal and run to the base, and they all agree. And so Chev goes along with Palm, and he soon wonders how they haven't found a single monster, much less an item, wondering if they fixed the location too early, thinking that they will have to move further tomorrow, and says that apart from that, he asks what Palm is thinking of his first mission as an adventurer, and Palm lies, saying that he feels nervous, and Chev says that that is quite normal, laughing at the boy. And he starts a conversation with Protagonist, saying that he has been an adventurer for a long time, and yet every step he takes inside a portal makes him nervous about it, admitting that he has always been a scaredy cat. But other than that, he says he can muster up courage because he has people by his side, and praising them may sound a little strange, but they really are good people. And he says he felt very sad when he heard his story, because in Eskravoska, he can only imagine how hard it must have been. And getting into that topic, he talks to Palm, saying that if it's okay with him, how about they join his group? But Palm stops there, and Chev is surprised. But Chev thinks there's something about what he said, saying he wasn't serious about it, telling him not to worry. However, Palm kept looking at that footprint on the ground and that moss, and when they sit at night by the campfire, they start talking, and Chev tells them to stop talking about work while they eat, because they can talk about it tomorrow. And Palm just continues drinking their water, and very late at night, they go to Palm asking if he is sleeping. Everyone is awake, except the boy, so Palm pretends to be sleeping, and in that, Tom asks what the captain is doing, revealing his true intention, saying that the guy is lost in his dreams, asking how he could have answered. Then he says that Chev is really very cautious, asking if he has already forgotten what they mixed in his food, because that sleeping herb could even make a mother mushroom weighing 100 kilos fall asleep. So Tom says he swallowed so much of it that he would be crazy if he's not dead, and asked where that fire arrow staff is, because that's almost 10,000, and he prepares to kill the boy while Palm sleeps, saying that they're going to get to work. Who would have thought that the little group that appeared out of nowhere, full of good intentions, would be a bunch of assholes, right? Who would have thought? Who could have imagined? However, when he sticks his dagger where the boy is sleeping, he feels a different texture, and so he lifts the cloth and notices that it was a tree trunk, and Theprotagonist was no longer there. So they find this strange, and say that there is no way he could have escaped, and Chevy tells them to find him, because he must not have gone very far. However, a huge explosion happens right behind him, throwing everyone aside, and the tree ends up catching fire. So they ask what happened and why. There is fire there all of a sudden, so they think they have to go fast, because they have to get the food and items. So he wonders if this is Palm's doing, but in that, Tank calls Chevy and asks him what it was now, and it turns out to be a huge monster with a gigantic eye in front of it, and he wonders if Palm brought that and starts cursing the boy and notices that he used them as bait, and they all jump out of the tree quickly before that monster full of eyes can bite it to eat them. Meanwhile, Palm is from afar just watching and thinks it is ridiculous because they shouldn't have been so kind if they wanted to trick him, because in a portal where 12 groups with veteran adventurers failed, they immediately accepted a bait like him, and it was obvious that they were up to something. But then he notices that the boss of that area is that guy, and says that he already expected it based on the evidence of the Crusoe he had found before. But it is much bigger than he expected, and the monster continues chasing them, clearing the entire forest. And Chevy notices that that type of monster moves at a disadvantage, and Tank asks if he knows anything, and he says that if his guess is right, that is a golden slime, and it is not something you normally see in Maple World, and says that it is a rare boss that only comes out of red portals, and says that the body of that thing is acidic. So it is the worst possible enemy for melee adventurers like him. And he even tries to talk about the most dangerous one, but before that, he just asks everyone to dodge and look back, and so he is almost hit by a golden slime from that thing, and asks him what that was thing, and Chevy says he has long-range attacks too, and he says it's the acid arrow, a skill that allows him to shoot acid from his body. Then Tank shouts asking if that's not a hindrance, my friend. In the jungle, anything goes, but Chevy says he's coming, telling everyone to get their act together. But then Tank asks how they're going to deal with that thing, asking if in fact there's anything they can do, and so he says they should get out of there first, because the acid arrow must have a 1-minute cooldown, so they'll recover and find an opportunity, and they have to aim for the core that's in that thing's head. And at that, Max gets excited that his skill has a cooldown, turning to attack that thing. But then Chevy calls him, and he says they still have time, asking to leave it to him. Simply leaving there, jumping towards that thing, and Chevy asks him to wait, because they have to attack together. And so, when he gets close to that thing, Max simply gets cut in half by that thing with his arrow. Then Chevy wonders what's going on, because there should be 10 seconds of cooldown left. My friend, the deaths in this manga are brutal. The author simply doesn't want to know anything, and the monster keeps watching him, and once again, throws a bunch of musicians on top of everyone. And it ends up that the crocodile group is completely torn apart by that acid, and the protagonist anis that it seems to be over, and tells Chevy that his words were not wrong. However, a golden slime gets stronger according to the items it eats, and the skill's cooldown decreased as it got stronger, and the normal size and almost non-existent cooldown of the acid arrow. Now he knows why the groups that came before failed, because that thing has already surpassed its own class, which has grown so much that it is at the level of a yellow portal, which is 2 levels above a red portal. So he says that it is no longer a monster that a first circle adventurer can deal with. He is sure that there are no more items in that dungeon, and what seems like the mission failed. He remembers Abyss telling him to prove it, and Palmy laughs at that and goes on top of the slime, and the slime continues walking around there until it notices something coming, and that protagonist hits him with a fire arrow, making him explode completely, losing one of his eyes and throwing Godiva everywhere. And the slime feels the pain of having lost one of his eyes, and Palmy wonders if it's because of the magic resistance, because he's sure he aimed directly at his core, but the monster isn't doing so badly, and so he says that if that's the case, for more shots will be successful. But looking at the situation, he thinks better, and notices that he must hit at least 5 shots, and thinks that it's not, as if it matters, and says that he's just going to prove to Abyss that he can do what he has to do. Then the monster throws an acid arrow at Palmy, but he disappears, being in front calmly, and the monster continues shooting its arrows at him, protagonist. But even in the air, throwing himself through the vines, he continues to escape and uses his telekinesis ring, thinking that he has to hit exactly the same spot with no margin for error. But he realizes that an ordinary wizard would not even think of doing such a thing. However, he is not an ordinary wizard, and one of the titles he had in his other life was the best telekinetic, and so he uses the fire arrow along with that attack, and once again hits the same spot of that slime and thinks he needs for more shots. And the slime also aims its shot at the boy, who starts running through the trees to escape with everything he has, grabbing a rope and throwing another fire arrow, hitting the same spot again, and thinks he needs 3 more. And the slime gets more and more pissed off, attacking that protagonist with everything he has. But the boy continues to dodge even in the air, preparing to launch another arrow, and with that he hits another spot, and now there are only 2 shots left. And he continues using that dagger with telekinesis to stay in the air, and launches another arrow of fire, but the monster ends up dodging, and realizes that considering the size of it, he attacks very quickly, but he thinks it is useless, once again taking that fire arrow that missed and attacking the monster in the exact same place. And so its core becomes visible, and with that protagonist stappers right on top of that thing and goes straight for the last attack. but the slime is no good at all and sees that the protagonist is enough and creates a hand to grab the boy. And as he brings down the mosquito-killing slap, that protagonist looks back and then activates his ring, and with that the sword sticks in the ground, pulling him and taking him out of the way of that hand used. And when he falls to the ground, he activates his fire arrow once more towards the face of that monster. But the slime puts his hand in front to protect himself, and so Palm smiles because the arrow goes towards the hand but makes a beautiful curve right in front of it, hitting exactly in the core. Then he explodes, and the monster becomes desperate as it falls apart. And Palm takes advantage of the monster being defeated to put his foot in the final line. That bunch of acid has to go somewhere, and it turns into a tsunami heading towards the boy. So he once again takes that dagger, uses his telekinesis, throws it up, and is dragged up the tree, escaping that acid bath. And the boy looks back, seeing that a large part of the forest has been decimated by that thing, while everything is going to melt around him. Palm goes down there, walking in the shine of that dirt all, and finally thinks he went there to get it, seeing the core of that thing, grabbing it with telekinesis, bringing it to his hand. The core he finally got, and it shines brightly in the boy's hand, until he manages to use his power to create a shield around himself, and so he leaves the dungeon, returning to Abyss, who can't believe what happened, then notices that what seems he wasn't just showing off after all, but thinks there's something strange there, because he came back alone again, and without the item he was hired for. However, the boy says that those he put in his group were amateur hunters, who worked to steal his items, and when he left to prevent this, they encountered the boss, and it seems they all died. Then Abyss is surprised that they died to the monster. He says it was a golden slime. Then Abyss is surprised, because if it was that thing, then all the items inside the portal all were melted, and the boy confirms this, and Abyss is shocked, because to think that all the items rented from the Merchant Union were destroyed. It's a loss that can't be ignored, but the problem is that this guy came back alive. It's said that there are some common rules for portals. First, the number of people entering is limited, and only the number of people marked on the entrance pillar can enter. After that, the portal will be deactivated until everyone inside is annihilated. Second, there are entry limitations based on the difficulty level and the circle level. Difficulty levels are indicated by colors, which range from red to purple. Those with circles above the gates, difficulty level cannot enter. Third, the portal can only be used once, and this is the biggest obstacle when dealing with portals. And if anyone who enters survives and leaves, the portal that he used is destroyed and cannot be used again. So, if the adventurers who enter the portal don't die, there will be no other chances to use the portal again. Habs then notices that the portal is gone and a lost cause, and thinks that honestly, it would be difficult for first circle marks to deal with the golden slime. He says he understands, and only he managed to get out alive, and as he already told him, since they all melted, he understands why the boy couldn't return them, but says that regardless of the reason, the fact is that he failed. But then the boy says that Habs is very patient, because he hasn't finished explaining yet, questioning what the boy is talking about. Palm comments about the golden slime, showing something to Habs, which leaves him wide-eyed, and says that he ate the slime, raising his circle once more. Then, he is surprised that the boy has 2 circles now, because he absorbed the human stone from the golden slime. Palm says thinking that this is enough to prove himself, and now committed. He should give him rank E, but he says he will give the boy rank D, and Palm is very surprised. And Habs says he will give him rank D, but says he will do even better, because if he starts working with him, he will treat him like a rank C adventurer, and with that, the boy signs the contract and has that collar removed from his neck. Then he says that normally, giving rank C to someone who is not in the 3rd circle would be considered preferential treatment, because adventurer ranks are strongly influenced by the circles, and a veteran adventurer is rank A and B, and a junior would be rank C and D, while a rookie would be rank E and F, and circles symbolize power, and the difference is clearly evident. But that bastard in front of him is not normal, and you can't move up a circle only by absorbing a mana stone. So he wonders if the boy said it was a survival instinct, but he thinks he does have that, a survival instinct, but he also has overwhelming talent, and someone who just became a first circle mage quickly returned as a second circle mage. He's never seen such a speed of evolution before, and thinks he definitely needs the boy, and so Palm notices that his treatment has improved faster than he imagined, and it seems that Abyss is really quite patient, but he thinks this is good, because it won't be long before the first portal raid of 100 red rank members and the first big event, which the Ulite Merchant Union and the guilds were watching, will happen now. And obviously, the Ogarfer Merchant Union must also be quite interested, and he says there's no harm in that, because he's also in a hurry, and while he's at it, it's a good idea to advance his plans. And he asks Abyss saying he needs a favor, and he asks what the boy wants, saying that he just has to say it. So he asks him to lend him money. And Abyss thinks for a bit and notices that that kid is already going a bit too far, and it is said that the portals started in the Age of Adventurers, but that was a trap set by the Black Magician. Many adventurers died in the portals, killing all the future potential of Maple World. Then, the last day came after that, and all the monsters that were waiting for their time rushed through the portals, and then humanity lost. And exactly 3 years from that moment, the fate that Maple World will face is not so far away. And so, Abyss watches that protagonist go in to the middle of the other adventures, and he thinks it's not enough, and yet it's good enough to start. And the portal of the 100 found this time is the red level, and only those with 2 circles can enter, and normally, the Gaffer Merchant Union only selects those adventurers with more circles. And the reason they invest in a second circle like him is because the Gaffer Merchant Union is targeting that portal, and while he had some money, spending it all on items would be foolish. And items that fit his level are very expensive. And if he were to think of something useful to spend his money on, then he goes to another shop and stands face to face. And so, one of the vendors there says he's happy that he chose the leech slave market, and says that he must be an adventurer, asking to guide the boy, asking what kind of company he is looking for, questioning if the slave bait a warrior to fight alongside him, and that protagonist says there is someone he is looking for, asking to lead the way, and that guy doesn't quite understand him, and he says that that is the punishment camp, and says that they are using that place to punish those who act like that person he is looking for. And he takes the boy to a cell, but he is afraid of who is inside, and asks the boy if he is sure it was that guy. And he talks about it, but that protagonist sees he is aware, looking at that man, saying that he is the one he was looking for. And he says that the death of a certain individual accelerated the destruction of the world in his previous life, and that is the axe heroine, Erin, and that was the killer of that girl, and the perpetrator of the crime was none other than the only apprentice she ever had, Dibbo, killer of heroes. And that was the incident that marked the beginning of the end. Then Dibbo asks why the boy came for him, saying that he doesn't think he knows him, sending him away. And so, the salesman begins to apologize to the customer, saying that his mental state is a little complicated, but in that protagonist sees that his behavior is a little different than it was before his return, because now he is just a slave, treating adventurers like that, even though he is a slave. And he thinks that Dibbo is very rude. And the seller says that there are other crazy dogs like him, but protagonists think that not only in personality, but in skill as well, and beside him, he was one of the few who gained attention after the last day, and sometimes they were compared. They are from the same region, and they awakened at the same time, and they were very skilled. But what was most similar was something else, and so he is released, and that protagonist asks how much it cost. And Dibbo says that it seems they have a young master from a rich family there, asking if he can pay what he asked, saying he wants 1,000,000 mezzo, asking if that's okay with him. And that protagonist sees that what compared the two of them was the fact that they desperately needed money, because that guy has a younger sister who has the black blood disease. So Dibbo tells him to leave if he doesn't have money, because he wants to act conceited. It's not the time. But in that protagonist rummages through a bag, and the kid is surprised, realizing he actually has 1,000,000 mezzo, asking if it's real money. And that other salesman asks if he's serious. And Dibbo lowers his head. Then that protagonist tells him to wait a bit, because he should listen to what he has to say, because the terms are 1 year, and the benefit is divided 7 times 3. And he says that he has priority in choosing the items that are drugged in the portal. Then the seller is surprised that he is making a group member contract instead of a slave contract. So he tells Dibbo to take a look at the contract, and the boy takes it from his hand, saying that there is no way back, and simply bites his finger, accepting without any excitement. He wonders if it is because his sister's life is ending, and so Palm smiles, saying that since the contract is signed, they will go straight to the portal. And Dibbo clearly agrees with the boy, while Palm says that he will have to prove his worth. And Dibbo says that he will work harder than anyone he has ever seen before. And so, they go to the portal, but arriving there, Dibbo calls the boy and says that he is pleased that he bought a new weapon, but normally he uses a sword, long, and says that they should go back and exchange. But the boy says that from now on, he will be using an axe while working with him, and if he doesn't like it, they can just end the contract. And Dibbo agrees, but in that, he asks if that is the portal that the boy is planning to test him, and says that it is a red level with a mark, with an entry limit of 8 people. So, that protagonist says that what appears to be the right place. But then Dibbo asks where the rest of the group is, because if he is a boss with deep pockets, he is sure he must have very good members, saying that he must have a healer, because fighting is fighting, but having a healer is essential. But Palm turns to him, looking a little strangely, and asks him why they are looking at him like that, noticing that apparently they are the only ones. And he says that there is no need to worry about other members, because they have enough. And Dibbo says that was what he thought, because he was scared for no reason. However, he says that all the members he needs are right in front of him. And Dibbo does not quite understand the boy, noticing that it is only the 2 of them. And so, Palm tells him to stop wasting time, throwing him in there. and the boy is surprised to fall in that place and asked if Palm is crazy because making a portal of 8 people with only 2, there is a limit to madness, and asks if that it seems like a joke to him. Besides, he will still need to use a weapon that he is not used to, but Palm looks at him in a somewhat serious way, and Dibbo soon realizes that behind him there are monsters coming, and they are tree stumps with 3 eyes, and he notices that they are stamps, and soon realizes that he ruined everything because of his shouting, taking that Bakudo, and preparing for the fight, and he says that they are known for their golden trunk that swords and spears have difficulty crossing, besides those numbers. But then, the protagonist tells him to get out of the way, and Dibbo asks him to wait, but in that, the boy uses the fire arrow, cutting one of them right in half calmly, and Dibbo is surprised. And so, that protagonist used the telekinesis of that fire arrow, killing several of those things in front of him, and he says that this is disappointing, especially when thinking that he would act like that as soon as they entered a portal, telling him not to make mistakes like that again. And so, Dibbo asks, who is this monster? While that's it, elsewhere, a girl says that the merchants have taken the bait and they're still buying time for their plan, but they've already captured the people they're going to send. So, a person who's drinking wine in a villainous manner listens to the story, and the girl asks if they have his permission to continue, and that guy says yes. And the girl disappears behind him, and he says that everything will be done according to that person's wishes, and wishes freedom for Maple World. And after the protagonist deals with all those logs, Dibbo gathers all the mana stones, getting a total of 27 of them, and so, that protagonist tells him to continue, and he says he's right. While they walk in that desert, he says he thought he was just a crazy person, or whatever, but the boy is no joke, and he is surprised that his power is telekinesis, saying he has never seen anyone using a fire arrow like that, and says that since he is accompanying a person as strong as him, he must be able to get a lot of money, and thinks it's incredible, and since the distribution is 7-3, he must be able to save on medical expenses and food for now, and so he is all happy. But the protagonist says he found it. He doesn't quite understand, and he says he found another group of stamps, and then Dibbo notices that there are about 9 of them. Then Palm says that it is the perfect number, and Dibbo asks if it is the perfect number for what, but Palm is looking directly at him, and he already begins to feel what he is talking about. And so Dibbo throws a stone, calling the attention of one of the monsters. He appears on top of him with his axe, ready to chop wood, split the trunk in half, and the others get scared, and Dibbo already starts to complain mentally, asking why he has to fight alone against those bastards, because he's never used that kind of weapon, so it's kind of annoying, and even if he had 10 lives, it wouldn't be enough to defeat all those monsters, and he thinks that his boss is really a crazy bastard, fighting alone against those things in the middle of everyone. And Palm remembers that he said he only used swords in his life, and thinks that this is quite obvious seeing how he moves. But he will soon realize that the axe is the weapon that will make him stronger, and say that there is no doubt that he is talented, especially when he is the only apprentice chosen by the axe-wielding heroine, Eren. And so the monsters go after him, splitting them all, but the boy continues to cut them calmly, and he ends up noticing something, thinking that the axe has a much greater range, as well as great attack power, and it's much more comfortable than using a sword. And after he calmed down a bit, he started to feel the axe lighter, and if he wielded it more freely, he wondered what would happen, and he managed to start cutting down all those monsters very calmly, swinging the axe on pure instinct. And so Palm noticed that he got the hang of it very quickly, and noticed that he hadn't even awakened a circle yet, but he was already strong enough. But while he was doing this performance, he felt something, and the ground started to shake, and he wondered if it was an earthquake. Looking up, and from the middle of a wall, the leg of one of those monsters came out, and so he had to dodge quickly to avoid being hit, wondering what that was. And it was actually a gigantic stamp, and the monster tried to kill him. Anyway, but Palm appears taking him out of the way and throwing the boy to the side, and says that his size has nothing to do with the threat, saying that it only makes it easier to land an attack. So, Jibo thinks that magic might work. The boy shoots his arrow at that stamp, but the monster ends up blocking that attack. The protagonist realizes that his reaction is faster than expected, so he prepares to try again, using his staff as a bow, preparing another arrow. Using his activated telekinesis, the monster sees the arrow spinning around him and tries to follow it with his eyes. However, the protagonist turns it around, thinking that he only needs one shot. But even so, the monster stops the attack with one of its branches, making it ineffective. Palm notices that he blocked that, getting a little nervous. Jibo shouts at him, asking if magic doesn't work either, and asks why he's still standing, telling Palm to run if he doesn't want to die. He says that it's not that the attacks don't work, because he wouldn't have cared, and blocking if it didn't work. but the problems are the branches, and so all those branches go towards them and they almost get hit. And the monster sees that they jumped and are in the air, preparing another branch to try to hit him, and Jibo, seeing that, is surprised. But the protagonist uses a rock to give them ground, and with that rock, they manage to get out of the way of that, and Jibo says that the boy did very well because he thought he would die thanking him. But Palm says that it's not a problem because he must take care of the stampedes that are behind him, and he wonders how long those monsters are there. And Palm says that he will take care of the other bastard, and Jibo even tries to shout to him, but ends up being left behind, and he wonders why that boy is so fast. And then Palm goes after the monster, launching another arrow like that, but Jibo gets desperate because that monster is not something he thinks can be defeated without a plan, and thinks he needs to escape. And looking at the fight of the protagonist, he realizes that the monster blocked his arrow once again, and says that just as he said, it happened, but the monster ends up being hit in one of its eyes. And then Jibo is surprised that he gotteth it, and the protagonist keeps firing arrow after arrow. And he says that the branches move much faster than he expected, so it's impossible to use telekinesis and attack at the same time. However, since they are in the second circle, he manages to cast magic twice in a row. So he fires an arrow to make the monster stop it, and a second to rip off its branch. Jibo thinks this is incredible, because hiding a fire arrow right behind the first one is simply absurd. And no matter how fast he is, he won't be able to block two consecutive attacks. He is surprised to think that Stamp is defenseless against attacks like that, and says that this guy is more of a monster than he had thought. However, while he is just watching the fight, he realizes that shit has gone wrong, and shouts to Palm because several other smaller Stamps are behind the boy. He tells Palm to look back, and thinks that there were so many that he ended up letting some of them pass. But Palm turns that arrow that was heading towards the monster downwards, killing all the other monsters that were surrounding him, and he talks to Jibo, asking if he can't even handle those small ones. And so, the big one gets pissed, launching another attack on the boy. But the protagonist quickly gets out of the way, squirming over the rocks, and evading the attack of that thing. He thinks that if he shows an opening, even for a second, the monster will use it while he is in the air. A whip from that tree goes towards the boy, almost hitting his head, but Jibo appears in time, touching the protagonist's shoulder, throwing him down using his axe to cut that root. Then he says that he just saved Palm, and he better take back what he said. And so, Palm smiles, saying that he finally seems to be becoming useful, activating once again some arrows, and together they become motivated to finish off that damn thing once and for all. And with the two most motivated, Palm fires to arrows at the monster, blowing up most of them. The monster tries to stop one of the arrows, but then Jibo charges forward, cutting it down with his axe. The protagonist, seeing this, notices that it's attacking from the sides. The boy is almost hit, but Palmy tells Dibbo that he'll go right, that he'll handle the left, and the two of them cut through the roots. And they charge at the monster again, and Dibbo begins to circle its body, jumping and cutting everything he can in his path. But he ends up getting hit in the ribs, and spits blood everywhere, and the monster almost swallows him. But the protagonist takes a rock to the boy, and pretends to be Goku's cloud, quickly pulling him out. But then another root of that one grabs the rock where he was sitting, destroying it and throwing him out. The protagonist realizes this is becoming too much trouble, summoning even more rocks, forcing him to stop on top of one. But the monster attacks again, and he realizes there's no escape, and begins walking over the rocks to try to avoid it. The protagonist, in turn, continues with his fire arrow, circling the monster's entire body and drawing its attention. And when the tree turns its face to look at the protagonist, it tells Dibbo to finish it off, and he takes his axe to the monster, hitting one of the thing's eyes. And so, he, who had 3 eyes, now has 2 on the same side, and begins to suffer, screaming at it. But Dibbo ends up dropping his axe, jumping and leaving the weapon behind, and tells him that it's not over yet, and goes back on top of that thing. And the protagonist, in turn, uses his telekinesis to grab the axe and throw it into the boy's hand, and Dibbo catches it in the air and tells that thing to get ready, because it's time for dessert. And once again, he hits another one of the creature's eyes, which screams again in pain that was caused to it, and so he is thrown back, bouncing and staying in front of the monster, and the tree even goes with its mouth to try to bite him. But the protagonist enters with the fire arrows in the mouth of that thing, launching both of them inside, causing a huge explosion in the core. Then, with the core being destroyed, the monster begins to catch fire, and Dibbo looks at it to calm down, and Palmas comes close to him, saying that he did a good job. And Dibbo says that the boy did too, and with that, they finally managed to destroy that monster. And it has been a while then, in another corner, in a very humble house on the outskirts. Dibbo's sister is eating alone, thinking that it is getting late, and she should eat quickly and go to bed, being thankful for food. But then there's a knock on her door, and she opens it to ask who it is, and gets a big fright, realizing it's her brother. And he says he's back, and the girl starts shaking all over, crying with emotion, but remains firm, just hugging her brother, thanking him for coming home. Meanwhile, the protagonist goes to another corner, all broken, and inside that house, there's a picture of him with his supposed father, but that person is lying on the bed. A very dangerous situation because he's beyond Baghdad, and the protagonist looking at that gets a little sad, and the only thing he can do for that person is to activate the fire arrow, setting fire to that house and simply leaving it behind. In a while later, Abyss is in his room, thinking that this will bring problems, because the 100 portal is close to appearing, so he wonders how he should organize what has appeared to him, because Raken will be in charge of things this time, and if he fails, it won't end not good, because this time, all 10 major merchant unions will be focusing on clearing that portal, and epic or higher quality items are basically guaranteed in the 100 portal, and even an intermediary may appear, but that doesn't mean it will be easy, because the 3 Natasha sisters of the Goldrick Merchant Union are so powerful that it's hard to believe they are only second circle adventurers. So he says that that trio is so powerful that the second circle adventurers of the Gotham Merchant Union can't even compare. And if he were to analyze objectively, not only the Goldrick Merchant Union, but all 10 unions will be sending their best teams, and his Gotham Merchant Union is easily overwhelmed by all of them. He's a little hesitant, but he thinks about Palmy. Then he realizes that someone is daring to enter without knocking, and when he notices, it's someone he knows very well, Mr. Raken. He asked if Abyss has already prepared the group list, that they will clean the portal, so he apologizes, getting up from that chair and letting Raken sit. He says that it is not in his spell to be late, asking what he thinks of the boy that time. Then he says that damn Palmy, there are some circumstances to take into account, because they know he is talented, but there is no way of knowing how much. And last time, the entire thief group was killed, and that is the reason for his skepticism. So Raken asked if he wants to test it again then, because it turns out that there is a great place for that, and says that of course, he should just gather all the groups he is considering, all for practical purposes. And Raken says that there will be many witnesses this time. In the meantime, that protagonist goes with Debo to another gate, and he says that it seems like there are a lot of people going this time, saying that's how it should be. Then one of the guys goes to talk to the protagonist, asking if they are the guy from the 5th group, because to people with a history of slavery doesn't make him very happy, and the protagonist already doesn't like what's happening at all, noticing that they are clearly not friendly, and are trying to say that slaves will only get in the way, and he thinks it's normal for experienced groups to think like that, and it seems that everyone is between the 1st and 2nd circle and are totally different from the boss's group, and are really professionals who don't need bait. Then Abyss arrives, asking if everyone is there, and the protagonist is surprised that he went there personally. Abyss says it will be straightforward, and they will proceed with the test now, and will give them a chance to show their skills, and that pirate guy asks if he will give them a chance. And Abyss says that's right, a chance for him to go to the Ism portal. So they are surprised by the news, and he says that he is sane, that they will have special treatment, and the protagonist notices that this is how they will play. And he tells them to show their best in that 40-person portal, so they all enter, and realize that it is the forest again. And the pirate says that they will only join together for the boss hunt, and asks if that would be okay for everyone, and says that there they will split up, and when there is a signal, they will come back together. And once again, both the protagonist and Vo are alone, and the group of mages move forward, and they say that they will kill everything in their path, since they don't have much time, and they agree with Dolan, until a monster comes towards them. It's a type of 6-legged crab turtle, and he asks if there's only that shit there, saying that they're mushrooms again, and the wizard releases his energy ball, saying that it's a huge waste of time using the energy beam, and thinks that this is tedious, telling him to get the magic stone and continue quickly, but that monster completely resists his magic attack, and gets pissed off by the attack. Then they notice that it's still alive, and the wizard is surprised that his magic couldn't get through, and says that this won't work, saying that they should do something. But then a noise starts to appear around him in the middle of the forest, so he asks everyone to be careful, because they're already surrounded, and that group is very screwed in the hands of so many monsters. But the monsters start to be killed, and after a while all four are very tired, but somehow they finish killing it, and one of them talks to Dolan, saying that the monsters are stronger than normal, asking what they should do, and Dolan says he bets that he'll win with death count is out of the question, and if they continue like this, they will end the resistance before the main one. And since it is like this, even if it is a little risky, he thinks about breaking the alliance and going straight to the forest. So the protagonist thinks that is what most groups will do, and Dibbo says that it seems that is the case, but those things are very hard, and tells him to forget about it, since earlier he was just standing there without helping in anything. And the protagonist says that there were only 3, he should be able to handle that many, and Dibbo says that anyway. He asks if he is saying that they can waste time with just that, and that protagonist sees yes, calling him to continue. But then Dibbo wants to go kill the boss, while that protagonist wants to clean up the trash, and so he asks what the boy wants, telling Palm that he just said they were going to the boss, And he says he was saying that was what the others are thinking, and they go with the numbers. And killing the boss is not the only way to get a good score, and the way he deals with the small fish is also important, and besides, the boss is dangerous and the competition will be fierce, and they don't know what tricks the other teams will do, but Dibbo thinks they probably won't go over the line, but you never know. And he says that he always talks like he knows everything. Besides, Palm also says that he can sense something very dangerous about that portal. Meanwhile, Doolin's group continues moving forward, until that girl from the group calls him asking him to looks at something and says it's an escape portal and says he wasn't planning on looking for it, but that's good, but not leaving marks there. But then one of the members starts laughing behind Dolan and he asks what was that, talking to Vit, saying that he's being too loud, but Vit doesn't stop screaming and laughing, and Dolan asks if he can't hear him, saying that he'll attract more monsters around like that, but Vit is completely out of control, laughing even without meaning to. He cries while laughing, and Dolan asks what that is, and around him everyone is feeling sick with that smoke that has already taken over the whole place. He realizes that it's poison and thinks he needs to escape from there even if he goes alone, leaving everyone behind. But then a horrible mushroom appears behind him, smiling with a mouth full of teeth. Then when that monster gets close enough, it starts releasing even more poison near Dolan, and he sees that there's not much he can do, while the monster also starts laughing, and he gets infected by that fog, laughs nervously in front of that thing desperately. Meanwhile, in another corner of the island, the protagonist leaves with Diogo calmly, and the boy says that the guy hasn't come back even once today until he notices something, and notices that someone is using a flare. And Debu says he knows they're supposed to use the flare if they find a boss, but them actually doing it is a surprise. And when the two arrive, everyone is looking at the protagonist with a frown on their face. He notices that there is a group missing, and the pirate Jiraki says that since it seems like everyone is there, he will start the explanation. But one of the girls says that the wizard Doolin's group is not there yet, and he says that it doesn't matter because there is no reason to wait, and says that they found the boss. And when they found him, they all witnessed Doolin's group being decimated, with the last one being eaten by the monster, which is the boss of that place, the poisonous mushroom of madness. My friend, if there is one thing that the author of this manhwa knows, how to draw ugly monsters. So the girl is surprised, asking what he's talking about the poisonous mushroom of madness, and says that they're in trouble because their group isn't in a shape to deal with this boss. He says that if the mushroom of madness really is the boss, they'll have to give up hunting it because they need to find the escape portal as soon as possible. So Debu asks about this poisonous mushroom of madness, questioning if it's dangerous, and the protagonist is surprised that this is the boss, saying that it's the worst type of boss to encounter in a dungeon at his level. While he's thinking, Debu keeps calling him, and the protagonist says that it's because of the spores that spread, and it's difficult to get close, which also means that they can't use their number to beat him. And Debu keeps talking to the protagonist without stopping to annoy him, and he says that if they want to take him down, they will need to use ranged attacks. However, half-range attacks won't do any damage, since he is very resistant and fast. And then the pirate says that unfortunately the boss is in the way of the escape portal, and it will be impossible to escape without facing him. But in that, Debu asks if he is scared, saying that this boss is nothing, saying that with just one invincible fire arrow from the boss, everything will be fine. But Palm talks to him, telling him to shut up, and Debu gets very angry. And Palm says they will die if they enter Thethys without any plan, and says that his fire arrow won't even scratch him. And Debu asks why he's scared, and he says that even the small mushrooms in that portal are all tanks, so they can assume that the boss is too. And the pirate gets all pissed that they're talking about something so obvious, saying that's why slaves are like that. And one of the knights tells Iber, saying that they don't have time for any of this, and they need to figure out how to get out. But then the protagonist raises his hand, offering 50,000 mesos, and Iber asks what he's talking about, and the protagonist says that he'll give 50,000 mesos per person, since the elite has 30 people and they only need to pay 5 million mesos, and tells them to do that, and they'll be the bait for all of them. And so Debu is very surprised by what the boy is saying, asking what the hell is this. But Iber tells him not to be convinced, saying that he must be used to it with these slave tactics, but he shouldn't think it'll always be the same, and says that this boss isn't a boss who can be attracted so easily. Says that if they follow what he said and they fail and attract attention, ending up dying in the process, they'll all be dead in an instant. And says that slaves only get in the important path of Autorang, and says that leaving that aside, what's wrong with that guy next to him, because he doesn't even seem awake, and asks what the two of them can do with a two-circle adventure and a slave. And so Debu gets very pissed because that guy's talk is irritating him, saying that he's been trying to pick a fight since early. But then, Palm asks what he wants to do, saying that he must already have a better plan than that, because he's been talking a lot. So he says no, and Palm, just as she already thought, realizes that he doesn't have one. And if he had the knack of dealing with the boss, he wouldn't have taken the flare, and also says that he wants to clarify something, saying that his group consists of one from the second circle and one from the first circle, and Debu is surprised that it appeared on his arm, asking since when it has been there, and then he gets all happy, thinking he is a genius, and Palm asks if Obero's group doesn't only have one or two from the second circle, and he realizes that the boy is right, but that girl who was there asks him to wait, saying that if they are really going to be the bait for them, she is willing to pay. However, they do not have all of that with them now, and Silver says that this is not a problem, because they can take it as soon as they leave, and if they cannot leave, they should interpret this as if they are becoming a sacrifice, but he says that everyone there must agree, and then he tells them to decide. And sometime later, near the exit portal, the monster is eating the rest of that group that was there, until a fire arrow comes towards him, and he receives it right in the face. However, he is enveloped in smoke, and Silver tells Debu that they will move when the boss notices them, and Debu asks why they have to do this, and the boss really notices them, with his eyes shining as if it were death, going all out towards the two, very quickly, smiling and running to be able to kill them. And Silver notices that he is coming, and Debu asks why he is so fast, while the two already have a mask covering their face, and the monster comes running like crazy towards them with everything he has, and the two keep coming, with the mist chasing him, and that girl tells everyone to run now, telling them to move quickly and activate the portal before the baits die. So they hit that pillar, and the portal starts to open. Everyone gets ready to leave, but then, while Debu runs desperately, other monsters appear in front of him, and he starts to get pissed, asking him if he looks that easy to kill, summoning his flames on that axe, imbuing it, telling them to just go away, using explosive cut on those things, splitting several of them at once. But then, the crazy mushroom appears behind him with its mouth open to kill the boy. But the protagonist uses the fire arrow, hitting it right in the mouth, and the monster is thrown back, and even all injured, it still continues laughing. But the protagonist launches another fire arrow, once again on top of the monster. But the mushroom quickly gets out of the way using its agility. However, Palmy uses her telekinesis, making the arrow turn around and go towards that monster, which starts preparing an attack on the boy, and the arrow tries to get him in every way, while that mushroom runs like a cockroach from one side to the other, dodging that thing, and going after Debu goes all out, wanting to catch the boy with his hand, and Debu tells Palmy that he is catching up to them. However, the two are already close to that ravine, and when they get there, they jump, and the mushroom almost catches them, but then Debu gets the attention of that thing, telling it to eat it, with the protagonist throwing another fire arrow upright at that thing's face. Then, the two fall into the river below, and Debu coming out of the water is very informed, because he almost died to that damn mushroom, and the protagonist starts drying himself, while Debu asks what the problem with that thing is. He questions if he didn't hear, because that is the boss of the place, and it seems that they will have to prepare better if they want to kill him, and so, he remains very calm, and Debu questions about him being the boss, asking if he is talking as if he was really going to kill that thing, because he must have heard wrong, but the boy says that he heard correctly, and Debu asks if he is joking with him. But Palmy questions what is the problem, asking if they didn't come to hunt the boss, and he says that was when they still didn't know that the boss was the poisonous mushroom of madness, asking if he doesn't know that there is something called strategic retreat, and Palmy says that he won't be able to re-enter a portal he escaped from, but at that, he just yells saying that he knows that, wonders if they shouldn't run away from there, since his work with Whiskey is already done, because he can't think of how he's going to kill that boss when not even the fire arrows work, and wonders if the boy hadn't said that they would die if they tried to fight that thing. But then, Palmy says that the situation has changed, because since the competition is gone, they are free meals, and besides, they will still receive a great bonus, asking if this isn't very good, and asks what's wrong, questioning if he really goes against his contract, and so, Debu says he wasn't thinking about it, and even so, he says he has to give a bonus for everything he's doing, and the boy says of course. But Debu asks Palmy to just tell him this, asking how they're going to kill that thing when melee and ranged attacks don't work, and says he has no plan to throw his life away for something impossible, and asks if there's at least some way to kill that thing, and in that, already outside the portal, Abish is surprised that they're already leaving, and asks if that wasn't too fast for a portal of 40 people, and he asks Jubal how it was there, because it seems that some people are not there, because that delinquent is still there. But in that, she says that they failed, and says that Doolin's group was killed, and Palmy is still there, and they were only able to escape because Palmy and another guy served as Whiskies, and says that it is impossible to kill the portal boss with only that group. And Abish asked what she is talking about, says that then she did nothing, besides running with her tail between her legs, and she says that the boss was an infamous poisonous mushroom of madness, and there was nothing she could do. But then he throws his cigar on the ground and steps on it, calling them to come back. And so she tells Abish to wait, because Palmy's group has not left yet, and since the portal is still active, they must still be alive. But then Abish says that they will not survive, because it is only a matter of time. And she herself said that the boss is the poisonous mushroom of madness. And if they want to wait, they can wait alone, and he doesn't have time. So he starts cursing those damn useless people, because it seems like they just got unlucky. And it's impossible for a two-circle maggle to kill a poisonous madness mushroom, and average adventurers like those are of no use to him, and says that the type he wants is someone who can overcome obstacles. And already inside, the protagonist is aiming his fire arrow in the middle of the forest. And meanwhile, Abish is thinking that what he wants is someone who turns the impossible into the possible. And the boy is eager to launch his arrow in the middle of all that, and tells Dee that they are going to start the hunt. And when he launches that arrow, it goes all the way to the forest. And it is said that this boss is faster and tougher than those they faced before. And besides, he even uses poison that makes things even more difficult. In a situation like this, it's better to keep your distance and attack with a strong power from as far away as possible. But he still can't reach this one power level point with the fire arrow. However, if he uses telekinesis to make the arrow spin at high speed, its penetration power will increase drastically. And this is something he can only use in the Maple world. And it's something he invented when thinking about a bullet, a skill that makes the impossible possible. So he uses his revolver, and that spinning bullet goes towards the mushroom, hitting it, spinning and piercing that thing. And with that, from afar, he manages to hit the monster and also cut down some trees. And the monster is left with a huge hole in the middle of its chest. And he says he tried to hit the head that contains the core in one go, but it seems he missed. And with that, the mushroom of madness begins to bleed that poisonous blood everywhere. And he says that this will become even more problematic. While the monster looks back trying to see where that shot came from, then he finally sees the glow of the protagonist arrow and starts running in that direction. But the boy shoots another arrow, but this time he misses and can't hit the thing's head. And he says that it's very difficult to use the revolver while it moves. And the main problem is the reload time, because he has to finish it before the boy gets up there. But he's already very close, running from frame to frame like a dog. Then the monster arrives at the foot of that mountain, but getting close, feels that something is strange. So Paulo and agree to stop Jibo, that it's time. He prepares for the plan and pulls a rope. Macking monster stumbles. Then he stumbles and falls face first into a slimy mud, and from the middle of that slimy mud, the protagonist looks down from above, and the monster thinks he's strange. And Paulo calls his attention, but then Jibo comes from behind using his huge explosive axe in the face of that monster, hitting it with everything. And with that, his axe returns to his hand, and the monster prepares to release its venom. Then Jibo says he can finally breathe, calling the monster up, saying that the air is very fresh, asking why they don't play now. And already in that situation where one is on top and the other is on the bottom, Paulo thinks that with this, the conditions have been met. So he says that the focus of the mission this time is to lure the monster to the swampy area, since the basic thing in a hunt is to nullify the prey's strengths. And he says that this should ensure that the prey's strongest weapon is nullified, and the monster even tries to release its venom, but the mud that is on top of him blocks that. And Jibo asks what happened, asking if he's annoyed because they covered all the holes in his face. And he says that's a shame for him, spinning his axe around in every way and throwing explosion at that monster. And when he throws the axe as if it were a whip, it really goes up to the thing. But the mushroom manages to hold the axe well with his hand. But in that, Jibo spins his axe, swinging in every side and hitting the mushroom from all ends, until the monster starts to return the attacks. But in that, he runs towards Jibo. And it is said that they didn't lure the monster there just to block the holes and the muddy swamp for fast monsters like that. And the monster really can't step very well, because that's the worst place for him, and he's being trapped underwater. And with that, the protagonist uses his revolver again, turning it on the monster's head, and puts his hand in front, but ends up being injured because of that shot. And with that, Jibo, on the other side, prepares to help too, but Palm's attack causes a huge explosion, and Jibo asks if it died. But then, the monster is still standing in the middle of that smoke. Jibo thinks he is too tough, and Palm tells him to aim for the core, saying that he must be close to the head. And Jibo says he knows that, throwing his axe away, trying to hit it. But when he tries to hit the monster's head, manages to grab the axe handle with his hand, and Jibo is surprised. But he doesn't think fast enough and ends up being pulled by the monster into that swamp, while flying attached to that rope. But then, Palm gets in the middle to prevent his companion from being killed, using telekinesis, throwing a tree trunk right at that monster's face. Then, Jibo holds onto it, while the monster pulls the trunk out of its face. Then, Jibo tries to attack from the other side, turning around and kicking the monster's head, jumping away and not falling into the swamp, falling on top of the root of one of the plants that is there. But then, he prepares to attack again, jumping from that place, and jumping on top of the rocks that are there. Then, Palm uses his telekinesis to be able to surround the monster with mud, throwing even more mud on top of him. filling those holes. Then, in the middle of that tsunami of mud, Jibo appears on the other side. To explain another attack with his axe, however, the monster sees his shadow defending itself and attacking in the middle of that mud, trying to catch Jibo, but he is not there, surprising the monster, and ends up being attacked from behind, and the boy, with a single clean attack and as strong as possible, manages to tear off the head of that thing, and the head of the mushroom of madness falls next to his body and remains standing still, and Jibo, completely tired, waves ready from above while he looks. But then, Palm sees something that leaves him scared, and so, behind the boy, the body of that thing is still moving and hits Jibo hard in the head, making him sink into that mud, and his axe is thrown aside, and the monster begins to gush even without a head, and Palm asks how this is possible, because he is sure he blew its head off, and he shoots another arrow at that thing. But the monster disappears from in front of him, running even faster, jumping for on top of the rocks that Jibo just used, and going straight towards the protagonist. And he says, "You must have forgotten something," so he uses telekinesis to get that monster out of the lake and stop its movements. But then, that thing jumps on top of the rock where he is, grabbing onto the rock and starting to climb, and with that, Palm thinks he only has enough for one more fire arrow, so he says there's no next time, and he can't withdraw it anywhere. But at that, Jibo gets up, thinking that it's making him angry, already covered in blood, and he dares once again his explosive blow, throwing his axe at that thing, and hits the middle of the thing's body, cutting it in two. And so the legs fall down there, and the boy thinks it worked. But that thing keeps moving, and the hands keep climbing towards Palm. He yells to his boss, saying that it's dangerous, and the boy uses his last fire arrow, throwing it at that thing, and there inside the chest the core is still full of desire to kill. But in that, Palm realizes that that was his true head, and thanks him for showing him. Simply pulling the karaoke mold. It doesn't work, guys. There is no way. There are few things in this world that a 38 won't solve, so Jibo thinks that's a flare, thinking that the attack just now was a bluff. And so the protagonist uses his revolver and really unleashes that attack with everything in the chest of that thing, and so he finally manages to exterminate the poisonous mushroom, and that cloud of smoke goes everywhere, and Jibo thinks that the guy is being a pain in the ass until the end, because that thing is still releasing all that poison throughout the area. But the protagonist quickly uses the rope that was there and his telekinesis to get Jibo out of the area, and he is not affected by the poison and is happy that the protagonist did that, because he thought he was going to die. And the entire area down there is covered by that purple cloud, and Jibo asks if it's really over now, and the protagonist says yes, saying that Jibo did very well, saying that they will get the mana stone when the poison dissipates. But in front of him, once again, that thing returns to appear, right in the middle of that trunk. The core is broken, but it still exists, and that thing starts releasing poison on the protagonist, along with Jibo, and he thinks that it really went wrong, and starts laughing in despair. And outside, Reiken laughs at Abyss's face, thinking that he really came back empty-handed, and says that his temperament hasn't changed at all. And Abyss apologizes because they should leave that matter to the Sign Knights. But then, someone knocks on the door, and he tells the person to leave, saying that he already told him not to bother him. But then Palm simply opens the door, not wanting to know, and Abyss asks how it is, cursing the boy. Then he is surprised to see that Palm is there, and he simply says that he's back. And Reiken opens a big smile, thinking that this is very interesting. And in that, Reiken talks to Abyss, asking what's going on there, asking if someone came out of the tomb or something, saying that it is a pleasure to meet the boy, introducing himself as Reiken, asking if he is Palm, saying that his survival skills are, as rumors say, and says that he is the type they need now in Gotho. And Palm, hearing that, thanks him for the compliment, and he says he will ask just one question, asking if he would be able to show that skill again at the 100-men gate. And Palm looks directly at him, but says that it would be difficult, and Reiken does not like that answer very much, and Abyss asks if that is the way he talks to Reiken, calling Palm, asking if he thinks he made him an adventurer who can simply choose his missions, saying that he should not forget that he still has a debt. But Reiken, in turn, smiles, thinking about what the boy said about it being difficult, realizing that it is not impossible, saying that he does not like roads, saying that he will change his question, questioning what he wants. So, some time later, Giggs is already spitting out his beer, amazed at what the kid said about the 5 million mesos per person, because considering the two of them, it's 10 million mesos, and that's a lot. And the protagonist doesn't even hear the shit he's talking, because the kid threw the beer all over his face, and he apologizes. Then he questions himself anyway, and he's not being too ambitious, because they're definitely going to give up on the proposal, and it was his first big mission in a while. But Palm says it's not his problem, and they're the ones who will decide. Then Gibbon notices that he's acting differently after making such a mess, and says that if it doesn't work, Abyss will put them in a black book. But But then Iboro appears there, saying that he seems relaxed, unlike them who feel like they are dying. And so, Gibbon asks what he is saying, asking if this is how they thank people for saving them nowadays, and says that he didn't like him in the first place, and that is enough, telling him to go with him, because they will put their ranks aside and just fight. But in that, the to their apologize to them, saying that they played them biasedly while questioning their abilities. And Iboru says he is ashamed of himself as an adventurer and wants to truly apologize to them. Okay, I wasn't expecting that. I certainly wasn't expecting the apology coming from an NPC, and he says that that is the amount promised by the 30 people. It is a total of 1.5 million tables, and everyone put a little extra as a thank you, and so Gibbon just thanks him. But Palm says that they don't need it, and what they agreed on was 1.5 million tables, and he only did the work he was paid to do, and he can leave out those thanks because he's telling them not to get things wrong. And so Gibbon says he got excited for nothing, hyping that up, saying he'll do the math. But then the protagonist talks to the pirate Iboro, asking if that's his name, and he asks how much he is, asking if he can do the work he's paid to do, and he's in doubt. And so Abyss later talks to Hakan, saying he can't because 10 million tables is too much, and that's something he pays to 3rd or 4th circle adventurers. And although he may be the best candidate, he'll set a bad precedent by accepting his terms, and says that it's possible he's just plain green and it's better to call him back to discuss the payment terms once more. But then Hakan asks if he really thinks that's how it is, saying that it wouldn't be strange if he asked for double the amount, and Abyss finds what Hakan is saying very strange, and he tells him to read it, and says that they will only be sending out Palm's group to represent the Gafor Merchant Union this time. And Abyss wonders what only the people can do, but gets scared when he reads that, asking if it's serious, and Hakan says he would be in trouble if it wasn't serious, because he paid a large amount for that information. Then he reads about the Dark Lord Jin, and Abyss thinks that if that's true, it's going to be bad, so Hakan tells Abyss not to be mistaken, saying that the war has already started. So, in that portal of 100 people, several groups are already camping around there, and they talk among themselves, until one of the guys notices that protagonist Stan Jibo arrives, and Palm tells him not to get too excited and to concentrate, and he tells him not to worry, because he is also an experienced adventurer now, and those crest with them show that. And so everyone is surprised looking at the boys. Then Jibo notices that the atmosphere there is as if they have knots on their faces. Then one of those guys, with a very scoundrel face, asks if they are from the Gafor Merchant Union, and says it is a pleasure to meet them, introducing himself as Shulden, a ranky adventurer of the John's Merchant Union. Then the protagonist introduces himself as a rank C adventurer, and Shulden is very surprised by that, because he thought that only 2 circle adventurers could enter through the gates because of the restriction, asking how rank C could be there. But in that, a girl asks if they could give them some space, saying that she has business to discuss with that person. Then Shulden acts strange, asking if they were with those guys, saying that he wasted his time for nothing, and Parm in turn remembers something he discussed with Abyss, asking why he would have to do a mission he was giving, and he tells him to just do what he told him, questioning why he is asking so many questions. And he says that his Merchant Union Gafor will be working with the Order of Knights Senios at that gate. Then it is said that they follow the teachings of the Empress Senios, the strongest of the group, Order of Knights Senios, and he says that the one called the Symbol of Power has shown interest in that gate. Then Abyss says that the quota for the gate has already been taken by another union of merchant knights, so they decided to work with them, and even if they are the knights in training, the probability of success will be high. And although they may have ulterior motives to come to that gate, their offer for him wasn't bad, so they will work together. And the protagonist says he understands, saying that it won't be a problem if it's a cooperative work, and Abyss is surprised by the boy's decision because he didn't think it would be that easy. Then he thinks that something about them smells strange, and that girl introduces herself as Kiri, the one who leads the beginners of the Order of Signs, and she says that she hopes he doesn't think they are on the same level just because they exchanged a few words, and she says she doesn't want any extra trouble, so they should just follow her orders and follow her in silence. Then Gil asked what kind of attitude is that, and I'm also questioning what kind of bullshit attitude is that. After all, they were supposed to be friends, but the girl already comes in scolding. Don't come thinking that we are on the same level. What a stuck-up girl. You think you're shitting gold. It's not possible, man. So she asks the protagonist if it's just the 2 of them who were sent by the Gafor Merchant Union, and he says that it seems like it, and Kiri wonders if Gafor isn't taking this seriously. Then the Dig Merchant Union, Kroko's group, arrives there with some pretty tough guys, and the other merchant union from Murdia. Come on, it's not possible. No. It's not possible that the guy's merchant union is Murdia. No one can put a name like that on something, and that is the Kugels group. Then Jibo is surprised to see the elite of the respective merchant unions, and says that the atmosphere has completely changed. And finally, the three sisters arrive, stealing everyone's attention, and that's the Merchant Union, Goldrick, and they're the three Natasha sisters, and they're very high-level adventurers. So Kiri starts acting jealous, calling them arrogant, but in that, another guy who's there calls everyone, greeting them all, saying that they are the chosen ones to be the guards of that invasion, and his name is Lone Giko, and says that they are there to support them as they leave the gate, and says that, although they've probably been informed of all the details through their respective merchant unions, he will explain once again as the reminder, and says that the legendary item that will come through that gate will not belong to any of them, even the one who obtained it, and the item will belong to their respective merchant unions, and they will be paid according to the terms they agreed to, and says that they can at least keep them on as stones, and they should be happy about that, and he reminds them that if they are caught trying to steal an item, they will have to face your group of adventurers rank B. As he points to his group, he clearly shows that he has 5 circles on his arm, and Jibo is surprised by this, wondering if they all have this level of power, and he says that this ends the warnings, and they are all free to enter, and that he continues to pester her, calling the protagonist to follow him, saying that he will lead and says that they will be the victors, and Jibo asks what her problem is, asking if he really has to work with someone like that, and the protagonist thinks that finally all his efforts were for that gate. It is a gate that he has not experienced even in his past life, but he needs to get there, since everything will start there. And he just calls Jibo to be able to follow him, and he goes after him complaining, saying that he will not help even if they come crawling later. And in the middle of that wheat field, the portal is there, and people are passing through. So the man guides everyone, and Jibo asks why the grass in that place is so tall, but that he asks the boy if he thinks they're just there for fun, telling him to stop playing and follow the group. He falls behind, but gets really pissed off, talking to Palm, asking if they're really going to accept that treatment. But when he looks back, Palm has his ear glued to the ground. Jibo finds this very strange and asks what he's doing, but then he hears a herd running toward him, and one of them even hears what's going on. But too late. Those monsters are coming toward him, and they're big pigs, a herd of Feta pigs, and they notice there must be over 1,000 of them. Kiri asks what they're doing, telling them to avoid it, since most of the groups haven't gotten there yet, asking if there isn't a tactical rule about not attracting danger to the portal entrance. A guy starts calling out to the elder merchants over there, but the fat guy refuses to go with that guy, saying he's going the other way, and starts going alone. So that herd passes through their midst, and those pigs they are normal pigs, because they have very sharp teeth and are ready to eat someone, and Kiri says that this is good, saying that they will continue like this, attracted by a place with more obstacles, and then hunt them there. But at that point the subordinate says that they have a problem, and says that the people from the negative union Algarfers seem to be missing, and she gets very upset about this, and while they are in that suffocation, that protagonist and Jibo are in a completely different location, and he says it was refreshing, saying that now he thinks they can relax, but asks how he guessed those Feta pigs would be so agitated, and the protagonist says that based on his experience, there are many herds of beasts that travel through plains like that, and he talks about the Feta pigs, which have an average body length of 2 meters, and are a monster with a violent personality, and they usually act in groups, consisting of hundreds and sometimes even thousands, and he says that although they are difficult to deal with, they are not impossible to kill, and the people of the other merchant groups could deal with them, but they will probably avoid them in order not to waste energy so soon, since no one knows which monster they will note in that portal. It is impossible for the portal to be completed only by killing the Feta pigs, so before his return, the attack on the 100-man gate in Sleepwoods was a complete failure, with all the adventurers who participated dead. Then Gil asks what he's thinking so much about back there, and it turns out that as he moves forward, the idiot steps on a trap and almost gets hit with everything, but the protagonist gets him out of the way, saving his life, and he keeps asking what that is, noticing that it's a trap, and asking who would do something like that, and the protagonist in turn becomes very fearful, and the traps don't stop, and several other adventurers fall into them, and are almost killed, but by very little, and that bald guy thinks that this is very childish, while his friend says that he just cleaned things up around there, and that must have been the last one. But one of them tells Babel not to let his guard down, and he notices that it's Kroros, and says that although they may have dismantled some small traps, they are still dangerous enough to kill on the spot, and says that besides, they copied the way humans hunt, and from that alone, it's possible to realize that they are not ordinary monsters. And if these monsters have such a level of intelligence, then they are probably the ogres, and they are more difficult to deal with, because an ogre is equivalent to a final boss of a red gate, and with that, they have an idea of what to expect, and they can be sure that the difficulty of that gate is high, and they would all be dead without knowing if there weren't adventurers who weren't at their level out there, and he says that they should make use of this situation, asking them all to follow, but in that, someone falls, and he tells people to be careful not to leave anything behind, But in that, Babel's head falls next to his body, leaving Krokos very scared, and that same thing that cut off the head of one of them starts cutting the heads of the others, and Krokos himself tries to ask what's going on, but his head is already in the air, completely the opposite, and a man appears killing him, and he asks who it was, but that guy calls them an idiot because he was acting like he knew everything, but he ended up dead anyway. And it is said that using the ribbon pigs to distract the people entering the portal, he doesn't know whose it was idea, but it worked well for him, because in this opportunity, he must start acting, and he thinks that that one is annoying, and that guy says he thinks they can't do anything, since they are short on time, and wonders if he should start, and so, the Natasha sisters get serious, but in fact, they can't move, and he says there's no point in trying, because magic alone won't allow it. For the next 30 minutes, and one of them questions why he's doing this, and that guy finds it incredible that she can still think and talk, even under the effect of her magic, and says that is expected of Natasha, and says that since she is more dangerous there, it's better he get rid of her soon, summoning a fireball right in the middle of the girl's stomach, killing her in front of her sisters, and they both start to tremble and cry. And he says that this is indeed a difficult question to answer, questioning why he is doing this. But then he realizes something, questioning if it will be easier to understand if he does that, saying that it is all for the Black Magician Lord, summoning the fire arrow towards the two and killing them without further ado. They fall completely dismembered on the ground. Then he thinks that this never ends. He just wanted to rest there, and he thinks this while hearing that bunch of explosions around the place, and remembers his master talking to him, William, and says that they stayed in Theshidos for a long time, just for this moment, hiding from them, increasing their power and spreading their power. And that guy turns to him saying that it's finally time to reap the fruits of his efforts. And he says that he won't disappoint him, and that guy tells him to take it, a gift given to him by that person, and he tells William that he won't accept failures, and with that he gets tense, because it's not like he can do it halfway after that. And he says that he can't do anything, and he should take this a little more seriously, my friend. I wasn't expecting this brutality, like okay, the work is brutal from the first moment. With those adventurers, they're dying, but damn, he killed them in cold blood. Crazy. Meanwhile, in a village, some ogres are all gathered there, ready to fight, and Debu arrives there and wonders what this is, getting desperate, because all those brothers are boss level, and Palm says he is sure he already told him earlier that there is only one boss among them, and they have high resistance and are strong by nature, and just facing one of those, and risking them enough. Apparently, they stole several items from dead adventurers, so it will be more complicated to deal with them, since some adventurer weapons allow the wielder to use a skill, and upon seeing that, Debu becomes very desperate, asking what they will do now, because this means they will fight the equivalent of an army of adventurers, and just the two of them, and so the protagonist notices that he gave him faster this time, saying that he did a good job, but he says he is not talking about that, saying that it is impossible to fight those monsters with only two people, and they have to regroup with Kyre, and also Kike, and he always forgets her name just like me, and he asks why he would have to do that, because Jibo himself said he wanted to separate from her as soon as possible, but he says that this is because he didn't know about those monsters anyway. It's impossible for the two of them to defeat that army, and the protagonist thinks about it, and a while later, some ogres are separated and follow in pairs, but Jibo appears there, ready to kill him, and the ogre ducks by a hair's breadth, escaping the boy's attack, and he asks if this is serious, because he is sure that the bastard is doing this on purpose, and said he never wanted to do this alone. And while he is on top of the ogre, the monster returns a hand in the direction of the boy, but he keeps his axe on the ground and jumps over the creature, turning around and appearing behind him, and the monster continues trying to grab him in every way, going after the boy, however, and Jibo dodges by a hair's breadth, almost receiving a punch in the face, and hits him with the axe handle, saying that he screams very loudly and comes back with another attack on the knee of that thing, making him fall. Then he uses the attack, saying that it is over for the creature, but the ogre moves at an absurd speed, escaping his attack and preparing a punch in the direction Jibo throws the boy away against that tree, but he manages to hold the impact only with the handle of his axe, and he asks why it doesn't die soon, and the monster comes back to attack him again, hitting that tree with everything, but he manages to get out of the way and goes inside the monster again, playing the infighter and tearing off that ogre's arm, but the monster still has one arm left, which grabs the boy's head and starts to spin him from side to side, stomping Jibo to the ground, and prepares to attack him again, and so he grabs the boy. But Jibo also grabs that thing's arm, tying it in a knot, and I know the ogre. I think it's better to throw the boy away, and when Jibo falls to the ground, he comes back up with an attack again, and goes one-on-one with that thing, until he manages to defeat his, while the protagonist defeats his easily, and he says he thought he would intervene to help him. But Palm says it seemed like he could handle it alone, and thanks to that now he knows they are not impossible to kill. But the boy is not at all happy to discover this, because he is starting to doubt the mission even more. Because if there is an army of those things, it will be difficult. However, as he walks forward, he finds something strange, because there are several bodies of dead adventurers there, without their heads, and he notices that they are the Knights of the Signs. And he wonders what the hell happened there for everyone to be beheaded. But in this, one of the people is still alive, moaning there in the corner. And Jibo tells the protagonist to look, and notices that there is a survivor, even though he is all beaten up. And he asks what happened there, asking if they were attacked by an ogre. But he says it was nothing of the sort, saying it was an assassin. Meanwhile, Abby is calmly in her room, thinking that this doesn't make sense. But it is said that assassins are people who can enter certain portals, where some cannot, and their sole purpose is to gather information and kill other adventurers. Since the portal would disappear soon after completing all the trials, they would also disappear. However, this time, it is just a fight with no winner, since they would have to overcome that difficult portal, having wasted energy with a minimum of personnel, and even if they cleaned their tracks and brought something from the portal, they would not escape the suspicion of people outside, because Jibo says that, after all, the adventurers who are in the portal are elite at the merchant unions, and that doesn't make sense. And even if that is the objective of the assassins, if the news gets outspread somehow, they would have to wage war with all the other merchant groups. And a dangerous bet like that is not something a merchant union would participate in. So if it's not another union trying to steal, it means there's something else behind it. So Jibo asks what happened, and Palmer says he hasn't seen that girl in a while, and so that other guy gets really pissed. Because this is all your fault, because thinking that there would be a traitor among them is absurd. Wondering why Lady Karita is like that, and Palmer says he doesn't understand. Because she was a member of the Signet Knight and would be an assassin. But that guy says he doesn't understand that either. And it's still hard for him to process everything, and says that, however, stopping to think, the orders she gave at the portal entrance seemed to be part of her plan, and says that before ending things, she herself said that she was the follower of the Black Magician. And the two are surprised by that, and the protagonist explains about the Black Magician, saying that 800 years ago, that was a transcendent, and he threatened the entire world with his followers, and to stop him, the 6 heroes took command, and the fight was completely turned against the Black Magician and his forces when he and the 6 heroes were sealed. And with the Black Magician's army in chaos, the Allied forces began to advance, thus killing all of the Black Magician's followers. And the protagonist says that any citizen of Maple World would know this. Jibo can't believe she's a follower of the Black Magician. But Palmer says he doesn't think this is the time to worry about some others, so they should go after her. He asks if that guy will go with them, as he should be prepared to fight her when they find her. And he says that's exactly what he wants. Meanwhile, the girl is running around until she comes face to face with that magician. William says he was waiting for Lady Kitty, noting that it seems she was the one who dealt with the ribbon pigs, and says they managed to proceed with their plan without any problems since everyone was separated, and now they can wrap this up slowly, asking if she received the gift they sent, and the girl gets very upset, asking who the hell they are. Meanwhile, Jibo tells that guy that they can go a little slower if he wants, since the boss went ahead anyway, and that guy thanks him, saying that he's fine. Then Jibo tells him not to worry, since the boss is quite skilled when it comes to finding things, and says that he will definitely find her soon, and the blonde disagrees, saying that that's great, taking his dagger and preparing for another act of betrayal with someone like that. So, Kyra goes all out against those assassins, but the guy gives her the dagger, and Willian watches from afar, thinking it's incredible, as expected of the captain of the Sign Knights, but he wonders how long she can hold out. But then, the girl doesn't stop there. Instead of just fencing, she also activates a spell, activating the rising sun in her sword, imbuing it with that energy. That assassin approaches the girl, saying it's time to die, attacking her with everything she has. But Kyra simply finds and uses his sword to cut that woman like a Lego, with head, leg, and arm, each to one side, using his solar strike. With that, she gets very tired, looking at them and ordering them to reveal their purpose if they don't want to die right there. William says she's annoying, asking what they're doing, telling them to hurry up and kill her. All 3 of them go after the girl together, but something happens. Several of them are chopped up and cut for all the world. Willian is scared to death. It turns out that Jibo is the one who steps in, saving the girl at the last second. A few moments before, while he was still with that blonde man, he tells him not to worry, because the boss is very skilled, and he says he understands, saying that this is great, taking his dagger, and trying to kill the boy secretly, telling Jibo to give his regards to Kyra when he finds her. But his plans are completely thwarted, and he ends up losing his hand with a single blow from the protagonist, who rips it off with his fire shot. And so, Jibo asks what happened, and the protagonist appears there while that guy is screaming for his torn off hand, and Jibo asks what is happening. And the boy says that as he suspected, his little lie is very lame, and says he is sorry instead. But he is not in the habit of trusting anyone, finishing the guy right there. Then William thinks that this is strange, because he thought an unwanted guest would appear, and one of the lackeys tells William that he is from the Gaffa Mercantile Union, and the fact that they are alive means that Pitum, that cowardly rat, who couldn't even take his own life when he was found, he simply failed. And he says that he still gave her a second chance for losing Kyre. Then he wonders if he made a mistake. And William continues saying that the situation is very irritating, because since they both seem to be very strong, it's time for the elite to play, and they all join forces to finish off whoever is there. And Kyre tells him to be careful with those guys, but Jibo says he knows, assuming they are perverts, and the girl asks what he is talking about, and William says he wants to end it quickly, sending 3 more. And Jibo says that the girl should be able to take care of at least one of them, and he will take care of the rest. But she tells him not to let his guard down, but one of the assassins goes after them using a wild blow and going through with everything. But Jibo goes to the side and uses his axe wanting to hit that guy who ducks by very little, almost losing his head. And Jibo says that apparently he was all ready, but in that, he is almost hit by the piercing and needs to move his head away from the front so as not to grow another ear. And that girl starts shooting fire arrows at him, and he realizes that those bastards are very strong. And another assassin goes behind the boy using the upper charge, almost managing to kill Jibo, but only causing a wound in his back. And he says it wasn't deep enough, and it tells him not to worry, because he'll put him out of his misery now, launching again with a leap attack. And that's how he asks what Jibo is doing. But as that guy gets close to him, Jibo goes to the back of that assassin, appearing there using only speed, telling him to stop yelling after all he was just messing with that guy, cutting him in half. And at that, the spear assassin gets angry, wanting to hit the boy with everything, but Jibo manages to dodge all his attacks and uses the explosive cut on the spearman, who has to step back to avoid being cut, so he runs back, asking how Jibo can be so strong. And then Kiri kicks one of his friends, saying it's quite disappointing, and they all hit each other and fall rolling. And she asks William if they call those guys elite, and they get very frustrated at being lost to them. And at that, William says that it looks like he'll have to intervene, since this is as far as they go, and says that they've already wasted enough of his time. Then Jibo notices that he is using the fire arrow, and that thing comes towards him, right towards his eyes. And he ends up noticing that it is faster even than the bosses, and an explosion occurs right in front of his eyes. And William notices that he let his guard down because it is a fire arrow, noticing that this fire arrow is on a completely different level, but says that it was not as if he could dodge anyway, and says that it is over there. Now they will finish that portal soon, but in that, he is surprised, because the protagonist appears there in the middle of them, stopping that explosion, and looks directly into William's eyes. Even though, when it is his turn, William is looking straight at him. Then he asks who the hell is that guy, and the protagonist uses telekinesis, telling him to leave that for later, after all they have other guests bringing one of those scarf pigs, only this time gigantic, towards William and company. And the pig takes William and his group with everything being dragged. And after a while fighting against those pigs, William finally kills the last of them, and then says that thing was a pain, and they ran away after throwing something like that at them. He talks to Gerald, and he says he's sorry, saying he's finishing on that side too, killing them with everything. And William says they don't have time to regroup, so they're going to chase them. And everyone agrees. And William says that if they get out of that portal somehow, it's going to be a lot of shit. And he says that that situation is starting to give him a headache, and that guy ahead seems to be someone problematic, and there's something about him that bothers him. And Gerald talks to William, saying he can see footprints over there, and says that if he sees the man in the cloak first, he should just hold him, because he himself will take care of that guy. But in that, Gerald says that there is no need to do that, because he knows that he is not in a position to speak. But that guy, he didn't seem like some idiot. And William asks if he is worrying about him, asking if he knows who he is, and says that they're in that portal. It is impossible that there is someone stronger than himself, blindly trusting in the feather that was given to him by his superior. Meanwhile, the protagonist is with Jibo and asks if he saw their faces at the end, saying that he doesn't know if they will survive being attacked by those pigs. But that protagonist sees that they won't die easily, and leaving himself aside, he should be careful where he goes, as there may be traps. And he says he is very attentive, but he asks why he didn't finish them off right then, saying he could have aimed for an opening. But in this, the protagonist simply says it's because William is stronger than him, and Jibo doesn't even believe it. Then, the protagonist thinks about that fire arrow that went towards Jibo, remembering the speed of that one with the power, and he almost couldn't stop it. And he remembers that even causing an explosion to slow it down, it still continued towards him. And he says that this fire arrow barely managed to change its direction, and didn't even affect his fire arrow. And Jibo Jibo doesn't want to believe that William is stronger than the protagonist, but he questions if he was joking, questioning why he would do something like that. And Jibo then asks if they just really ran away, and he says yes, showing that ring, and says that it seems like the circle grew to its limit, so he asks why this happened. And the protagonist says that depending on its thickness, even using the same type of magic, there will be a difference in its power and speed. And since he's at the top of the second circle, they should be equal or even stronger than him. But his magic has something more that he can't understand, since he was able to enter that portal. And he's sure that he's also from the second circle, and he has no doubt about it, but he's sure that somehow he's strengthened his ability, and says that it would be fair to say that he's the strongest adventurer in that portal now. And Jibo doesn't want to believe it, asking what they should do, asking if they should try that tactic from earlier, only with ogres. But the protagonist denies this, saying that it won't be easy, because ogres are different from simple Feta pigs, and they might discover that it's them and use that against the enemies. But at this, Kiri asks what he means, asking if he doesn't understand the situation there and now, saying that the important thing is that one of the Black Magician's followers was hiding with the Sign Knights, and that this is very important information and can change the future of Maple World, and says that they should go outside first, and says that he should give up on clearing that portal. But the protagonist says it's useless, and Jibo asks what he's talking about, and she says that she knows he used to be a slave, as expected, and asks if he's still after that little completion reward. But the protagonist says that after warning the people outside, what will she do, asking if she really thinks this is the best way to get rid of those guys. And he suggests that she not underestimate them, because those followers have been hiding for hundreds of years, putting down roots, and exposing them does nothing but cut a branch. They need to go deeper, and if they decide to hide, no one will be able to find them, and with that, they will become parasites, which will consume Maple World, where no one can see them. And she gets mad, saying that this won't work, asking what he wants them to do, telling him not to talk nonsense without having a plan beforehand, saying that they are being chased now, and they need to get out of there before that. But the protagonist simply says that they should let them know who the real hunters are while that group goes after them. Beard says that they need to find them fast, because if they escape through the portal, their necks are already gone. But in that, Jibo appears behind him, saying hi, and going after them on the shortcut, almost ripping off his head. And they think that this is really stupid, because they really came to find him, and says that he is sure that he will kill you. But then, 8th trap is cut, and so, that guy is definitely quadriplegic, being hit hard in the back, and the girl realizes what is happening. And Jibo asks if Goatee thinks he can really be distracted in the middle of a fight, throwing his axe at him, but he goes inside, trying to hit Jibo with his dagger. But the boy dodges, looking deep into his eyes, and simply prepares a knee, hitting him hard, then drops his axe and starts to fight, descending the pulika on it, simply in the oldest way of fighting, the simple exchange by Manhwa. Then that other girl thinks about hitting him with her crossbow, but keeps wondering what is happening, unable to do anything in the middle of that exchange. And Kira appears behind her, ready to kill her, but can't hit her because she gets out of the way. But the attacks don't stop there, and she continues attacking her with everything, descending her sword from top to bottom, forcing her to defend herself with her weapon. Then Kira tells her that she shouldn't look away, because she's already fed up with how things are going. Meanwhile, William is alone, and says that it seems like they've started, but there's still one person he's curious about, asking if they were waiting for them. And that protagonist stays to face with William, and tells him that it's okay if he doesn't want to talk, saying that they should also start there, with both of them invoking the fire arrow. And William gets very excited about that dispute, throwing his fire arrow in the direction of protagonist, and with that fire arrow goes towards the boy, and he starts running everywhere, launching his fire arrow towards William too. And he thinks this is incredible, totally crazy about that fight. He stands face to face with the boy, and the protagonist keeps looking to see if he hit, but William ends up getting out of the middle of it with another attack. And the protagonist notices that it is another rock, but it turns out that while he dodges the rock, William is behind him, asking if this is all he has, activating a fire arrow right at point blank range. But the protagonist manages not to be hit by it, and William, in the middle of the fire, keeps watching the boy, who is also in a pretty bad situation, and he is surprised that he managed to dodge that, saying that it is really unexpected. But he was sure that he wouldn't have the power to be able to block it, asking how Palm did that. But the protagonist just keeps watching him, and he notices that apparently he is not much of a talker, but says that he just leaves, because it's not like they can talk casually in the middle of a fight. And he says he'll find out for himself, and launches another fire arrow at the boy. But Palm uses his revolver to destroy that fire arrow, and so he is surprised, noticing that he's using telekinesis to spin the fire arrow, and it looks like a drill that's piercing his magic. And he says he's never seen anything like it, and the protagonist attack goes directly to him, and he thinks this is unbelievable, because he can't hide his surprise that he has strengthened strengthened his ability with telekinesis. And now he begins to understand, saying that he is the kind of person they call a genius. And he says that this is the type of person he hates the most, and calls the protagonist to have some more fun, telling him to show what else he's capable of. But in this palm simply uses telekinesis, making a stone shield in front of him, but William's magic passes through it quite easily. And he asks what the boy is doing, questioning if hiding is all he can do. Then the protagonist once again activates telekinesis, almost hitting William with his fire arrow, and he ducks by a hair's breadth and asks since when he's been using that. And the boy continues to fire the fire arrow, dodging and turning in every direction, almost hitting William every single time, but he keeps jumping like a gazilla from one side to the other, running away from that thing, until he manages to launch another fire arrow at the protagonist while he gets very angry, saying that he's tired of messing with him. But the protagonist activates his revolver, throwing his own fire arrow towards Williams, and he thinks that he's finally used his 2 shots, appearing behind the boy, using a ring that makes him release the poisonous breath at point-blank range on the protagonist. Very close. Indeed, and so with that poisonous breath, he says that it's very useful, but he says that it leaves him full of openings while he summons it. He asks if he's not a fire and telekinesis user, saying he figured he could seal his attacks if he forced his fire arrows to go on cooldown, and now he won't be able to do anything for 30 minutes, and says his fire arrow is also on cooldown, so he should forgive him for ending things with his dagger. But he says that now is his favorite part because he can't wait any longer, and says he's very curious to see what his desperate face looks like, totally crazy, licking his own dagger, and he asks if the boy will tremble, cry, or what he's going to do. But the protagonist simply moves, and moves very close to him, to deliver that punch right in the middle of William's face. And that punch is as pleasurable as loafs, which he hit in the face of those Terabitos, throwing him away and crushing that thing's eyes. And after that punch, he remembers Iberu asking how he managed to do that, asking him to tell him how they managed to defeat the poisonous mushroom of madness, and he asks Jibo about it, questioning if it's okay to say it now that his boss is gone, saying that he'll pay the bill, asking him to tell him, and Jibo says that it will be useless even if he does, since it's not something he can do because he wants to, and says that he called it the room, saying that it's an ability that uses telekinesis to pull and hold the air. And he says that just when he thought they were finished, he pulled all the poison from the area, and says that there's nothing special. Then Iberu asks if this isn't a cheat, and he says that's what he was talking about, since the boss with these abilities is already a complete cheat. And the protagonist continues beating William up, simply going into barbarian mode as soon as he runs out of mana. And William is completely exhausted, trying to use his poison again. But while he's talking, the protagonist punches him from the bottom up, making him bite his tongue and not say anything else. And after that punch, he connects more times in the abdomen of that thing, completely knocking him out and throwing him away. And then he pulls out his staff, preparing another arrow of fire towards William, wanting to close his coffin with a golden key. And after that UFC-worthy beating, the protagonist rips off William's arm, who fell to the ground, trembling and groaning in pain, but still activates his ring, releasing that poison upon the protagonist. However, the protagonist uses telekinesis to create the room, trapping all the poison and excluding himself from any kind of threat. He asks if William is trying to trick him because he acts like a lunatic, but in reality he's plotting something, and since his poisonous breath didn't work, he should try to get his staff back. So he calls William to try to get it, because that's when he'll finish him off. But what he didn't expect was to be attacked from behind, and he was surprised, having to get out of the way quick. William himself, however, somehow managed to unleash magic, and all psychopathic and crazy, he stood up saying he was going to finish off the protagonist and break him into pieces. And the protagonist was far away after taking that fireball, all smashed up, and he realized he let his guard down, and he didn't expect him to have an orb of flames, like an ace up his sleeve. He wouldn't have made that mistake if he were William facing regression. Then another fireball comes at him, while the protagonist thinks he's lost his touch. Then, Jibo notices that his boss might be suffering a bit. Meanwhile, he rips off the spearman's head and tells Jibo to stop messing around and put an end to it, as his opponent is too strong for him to handle alone. Jibo says that's what he was going to do, telling her not to give him orders. But while he's doing that, an arrow ends up going straight for that guy, and he's killed. Those ogres are the ones who arrived that way, coming at them both with all their might. He realizes he was wondering why they hadn't shown up, and that he surprised their green ogres. He tells them their focus is on finishing things quickly around here, and tells them not to underestimate them, as they're not that easy. He also mentions that there's a strange man among them, and he seems to be the Lord, as he even has a little rug on his head. He almost looks like the Hulk. Meanwhile, the protagonist is with William, who wonders if he finally killed William, but he bleeds after so much beating, and he realizes that he has to admit that he wasn't bad, and think that he would take that tip too much, because he should have at least asked his name before killing him. But he himself appears saying that it's Alpam, and he's surprised that he can't be alive, and the protagonist tells him to remember it well, since it's the last name he'll hear. And so, Willian says that he even looks like a cockroach, saying that it's useless, because even if he tries to bluff with his skills, he won't achieve anything. But the boy says that he really has to admit that it's almost impossible to catch him with just 2 circles, and the boy in turn has something in his hand, something that will change the course of that battle, and he notices that it's a mana stone and starts laughing, calling him crazy and a wretch, asking if this is his last hope, absorbing a mana stone and moving up a circle, and says that he's very stupid, because just absorbing a mana stone won't make him move up a circle, and says that he needs knowledge through countless experiences. And the protagonist says that's exactly it, and starts absorbing that thing, talking about experience and knowledge, and in that, Willian realizes something, and the protagonist's circle forms automatically, and he says that he doesn't need to worry, because he already has enough of those 2 things, and he is finally the 3rd circle. And Willian asks if he's trying to scare him with those protagonists again, sending the boy to die by shooting at him, but the protagonist uses his fire arrow, passing through his arrow calmly, and Willian tries to use the flame orb too, but the protagonist uses his telekinesis to make the shot generate, and the revolver bullet goes towards Willian's head while he screams his name and misses it, and Palm realizes he did something absurd, leaving only the charred stump in the middle of that mass destruction. Then he remembers that he ended up forgetting to ask Willian's name after having killed him like that, and then the ogres arrive with everything, putting on a show and hunting the 2 who were there, and Jibo ends up having to be taken by Keel to hide, and she says that things are getting complicated, and moments before Jibo tried to do something, going after all those ogres, killing 17 of them, and she asks what's going on, because he's taking care of those monsters very easily, and he says that it's easy, and that he can see their movement pattern now very easily, and that ogre goes after the boy, trying to hit him, but Jibo starts to crawl through the trees, calmly evading his attacks. But while he went after the other ogre, he is hit, and that leader manages to shoot him calmly, and Keel is surprised that that is an orbital flame, and she wonders how a monster can use that, and she says to think that a monster would be able to use an item, and that is something she did not expect, and thinks it is too problematic, because they have no choice but to stay hidden until they find Palmy, and says that she just hopes he is still alive. But in that, an ogre arrives there almost catching them both, and she has to leave taking Jibo with her, but the monsters continue behind them, and one of them surrounds them from the front, and the girl needs to throw Jibo up in the air while using her sword to kill that thing, and as he falls, she catches him again, telling him that that guy over there and the other one are a great help, so he can't leave him behind, and says that she thinks she can handle it if they come one at a time. But in that, she almost gets a fireball in the middle of the face, and that monster starts laughing, and she thinks that everything will be fine as long as that one isn't her opponent, and he keeps throwing fireballs at her, and she almost gets hit while running, and that explosion is simply stopped by Jibo, who wakes up again, and she's on the ground while he protects her, and he doesn't show any reaction and simply goes after those monsters again, and he starts cutting them in a totally different way, one after the other, cleaning each of those monsters with just one blow, killing them very calmly, making huge explosions, and Jibo thinks this is unbelievable, and he simply goes to the leader, and Jibo starts asking if that boy is really from the 1st circle, and Gibbo's eyes are getting more and more red, and Ogre, seeing his axe coming towards him, gets excited, releasing another point-blank fireball on the boy, and Jibo is thrown again on top of Jibo along with his axe, and the girl thinks about holding him so he doesn't crash to the ground, and that monster is all happy, or should be, because he was actually hit by Gibbo's attack, and he gets very angry, summoning another fireball, so Jibo tells him to back off, because she will take care of things from there, and when he launches that attack, it turns out they don't have much left what to do besides the girl having to stop it. But then, one of the protagonist's shots goes towards that fireball, and also passes by the leader of those ogres, and Jibo is left wondering what's going on, and who appears as the protagonist, already completely modified, along with his fireball and telekinesis, and he says that it seems that it didn't arrive so late. My friend, this is absurd. This protagonist, he knows how to act. Meanwhile, the guy who was on guard outside says it's been for days, but there's no sign of him, and says he was happy to be able to make some easy money, but his body is starting to tingle, and he says that air vagrants aren't his style, and he'll have to refuse defense missions from now on, but then he wonders why it's so noisy, and that portal starts to collapse, and he's surprised by that, because the portal is closing, so that woman in front of him tells him to go and call the bishop now, and he asks Kitty what's going on, telling her to report the situation, and she tells Lonko that some people came back alive, and seeing how the portal is disappearing, the radio was full, and he's surprised that those 3 there came back, and after a while, the protagonist wakes up in an infirmary, and Lonko says that it seems he finally woke up, and he asks about that place, and Lonko tells him to listen, saying that it's better he tells the truth about the things he's going to ask from now on, because it seems that only the 3 of them from the merchant group and Fork from all the groups survived, asking what happened inside inside the portal, and so the protagonist starts to wonder what he's saying. He says he thought it would be that, but to think that all the others died. Solanko tells him to answer properly, unless he wants to lose his own life that he fought so hard to save. Then the protagonist starts to say that there was a demon inside, and Lanko is surprised. And the protagonist asks for a paper and a pencil, saying that he's going to draw it for him, and says that he doesn't know what it's called. But when Lanko sees it, he closes his eyes and just accepts. And after a while, they tell him that it doesn't make any sense, because there were a total of 100 people, and besides, they were all from the elite, each representing a merchant union. And even if it's a portal of 100 people, it was still just a red portal, and asked if they want him to believe it that they all died because of monsters, and they say that they shouldn't even face any monster. Inside a red portal, and the Centaurial Off-Merchant Union, Sky says that his cousin was among them. Then Lanko says that he didn't seem to be lying, saying that he said that the boss of the 100-person portal looked like that. And they notice that Achilleo is a green ogre, and if it is a green ogre, they remember that they are monsters capable of using items. And one of them says he heard that they are so intelligent that, in a large-scale battle, it would be no different from facing a human army. And having only 100 people going against that thing must not have been easy. But another says he can't accept something like that, and Achilleo is Franco from the Goldrick Merchants, and he says he doesn't know about the others, but there's no way his Natasha would lose to something like that. And Lanko asks what he's talking about, and Franco questions if he's asking because he doesn't know, and says that it must have been sabotage. And none of this makes sense unless someone on the inside betrayed them, and after entering the portal, it wouldn't be impossible to know what's going on happening, and someone could take advantage of it, whether planned or not. And it also seems that the three who survived are from the same group. So Hab says he can't stand this nonsense any longer, and asks if he's saying that Fork screwed everyone over, questioning if it was simply because next to him there was someone who became the third circle, survived, while the others didn't. And the stuck-up rich kid asks if he's trying to say that his mercanted unions aren't as good as Fork's, and he says that trying or not, he's just saying things as they are. And they continue arguing a lot, because that guy in red doesn't want to accept it. And then Lanko wonders if they're already over, and the mustachioed one says that since he's saying all this, he must have proof, and he questions about it, saying that they didn't bring any items out of the gate, and they had no reason, asking if he understands that. And so the protagonist, after a while, says he'll come back thanking Lanko and simply leaves, and Lanko asks if it's okay to let them go like this, and he asks the girl if they haven't already reached their conclusion. And after a while, the protagonist leaves and finds a snail there, and he asks if that's really what they're seeing, because that thing really followed them. It's a cute snail, and the protagonist remembers that he asked something when they were still inside, asking why he's hesitating, because they've already taken care of the black wizard's followers and finished off the green ogres and the other monsters, so they just need to throw all the items away and hurt themselves a little before leaving. But then the protagonist thinks for a bit and remembers that feather the wizard had with him, and he says that's right, because killing the boss and throwing the items away would be the best thing. But the items he got, and the phoenix feather, the feather and holding it can increase the firepower of your spells by 30%, and unlike other items which do not have their effects overlapping the others, this one does. So he says that the reason the others were all killed there, he thinks he sold it now, and this is an unexpected gain, and he has to take it out no matter what. And that he says that if they take anything that has not been registered before, they will raise the suspicion of sabotage, asking if it was not he who reminded them of this. So she tells him not to be greedy and follow the plan, since they found the exit portal. But then he notices a snail, and that is the snail pet, unlike other monsters. It has no attack power, but it walks around looking for and collecting items. And the more items he collects, the higher his account becomes. Then he says that it is a life form that was found after the portal was opened in his past life, and that creature gives him those to feathers. Then she asks if he really managed to bring it without being caught, asking how he knew about the use of the slug. He says he thought it would be better to try something than just accept and leave with nothing. And she questions what to do now that she did everything he asked, asking what he is planning next. And he tells her not to rush, because since they managed to infiltrate the Knights of the Signs, they have to be careful when gathering information, and if they are not cautious, they may hide further. Then he says that they must have already returned, and so they will wait. Then they start talking about all of them who died, and say that they were all annihilated, and that Hyde was a shit, and that leader who gave the feather to William gets angry. And that girl says that it was said that everyone was killed by the Hyde boss, and only 3 members of the Garfer mercantile group barely managed to escape, and there was suspicion of sabotage during the meeting, but the one who was questioned was Garfer, not Hyde. But even so, he was left aside due to lack of evidence, and said that fortunately they were not exposed. And even though the mission was a failure, and with that said, she says she will prepare for the next mission. But the leader asks if they were not caught, and so she asks. And he says that his plan was to kill all the groups and kill the boss themselves, so at least one of the 3 who survived certainly saw William. But there was nothing related stated in the report that was submitted by El Palm, and asks if there really is any need to hide this, and even if there is, since they had people in several merchant unions, it would be difficult to make any connection with the group, and there is a reason to hide it. And he says that if the protagonist has realized that the one behind this is not a merchant union, but rather the followers of that person, and they would be the only ones who would know about the return of the Black Magician's followers, and they wonder what will happen if they decide to spread this information, and the girl doesn't want to believe it, and says that they have to eliminate all of them. So he thinks it's an invitation, asking if it really is an invitation, talking about how interesting it is, saying that he will accept it. However, it will be better to prepare something different, so that they can be the first and the last guest. And in that, a boy reveals that his life was hell among a bunch of monsters in an apocalyptic place. He says he lived in poverty and could only dream of living as a normal human, and all he could do was watch his sister suffer from the black blood disease. He wasn't even able to build a grave for his family, and this place has always been a hell. But then someone came up to the boy, noticing he had a 2-story house, saying he looked like he was having some trouble, and asking if he wanted help. But Debo sent her away, saying this was his first encounter with Aaron, and a while later, they were up against some pretty fierce monsters, and he said he was in first place, while another guy said if he were just 30 seconds faster, he would be. Then the girl said it looked like the cleanup was done, and she spoke to Debo, saying he was to focus on looking cool, and he got frustrated about it. Aaron said it looked like everything was sorted out, so he called them over so he could leave. He says that 1 year was enough to make him see life in a different way, and she was a heroine who didn't let herself be carried away by emotions, but with a kind heart, and she protected people and was always at the forefront, creating a new path. And he says that watching her made him see the world in a better way, and his goal, naturally, became to help her. And another guy in the group starts making fun of Debo for washing the dishes, leaving the girl abandoned, saying it's hilarious. But he says it's because he wasn't in his best condition, getting mad at the guy, and he says, of course, because there's no way, and of course the great Mr. Debo can do it, since he's Aaron's self-proclaimed disciple, but he says he should catch up faster, not even recognizing him, and Debo says he asked him to stop talking about it. And Aaron asks Shannon if she said that was the right direction, and she says that seeing the mark he left there on the roof, it must be, and somehow it seems different, and she wonders if a place like that existed in the Ilna Mountains area. And a while later, she talks to Aaron again, asking her and begging her, saying that it is too dangerous for her to go alone to the abandoned mine in the Ilnaz area, saying that there is no one willing to go with her, and he needs Aaron's help if he wants to find his brother. But she says that the girl went to the wrong person, because she does not accept personal requests like that, and the clause saying that taking her is a necessity is inefficient, because while she would theoretically be a guide, someone in the third circle would just be dead weight. Besides that, she says that she does not guarantee that her brother is alive, sending the girl to intercede for another adventurer. But then Debo talks to Aaron apologizing for interrupting him like that, but says that they are probably his last hope. And after the last day, there is no adventure going to the Cave of Challenges, and he says he wants to help her, because he guarantees that he will keep her safe, asking if she cannot reconsider. And after that, they go to the place at Debo's insistence, and there, they see a dead man asking if it is that body. And the girl says that that one over there is not her brother, and Aaron says she understands, asking if she should be relieved. But how that person died there like that, it's very strange, because it doesn't seem like he was killed by monsters, saying that it already seems like he's been dead for over a week. However, if they remember correctly, they recognize that person, but they don't have time to talk enough after all. A gigantic stone goes towards them, almost crushing the entire group. And Debo saves the girl, but is left wondering what just happened. And when they look to the side, it is a monster, a Zaken, that is attacking them, and Debo asks the girl to stay behind him, going after the monster. However, Aaron also arrives, throwing the monster away, with just one axe blow, and she tells Debo that they will go left, and he says he will finish this quickly, leaving with everyone. And they join that gigantic Zaken with several arms, attacking each one from one side, and the girl who requested the mission, in turn, just watches from afar, and sees a hole in the middle of the wall, and with that, they finally finish off that monster. And Debo says it was so hard, as other rumors say, but then that paladin who was there says she didn't come to find it anywhere. There, asking if anyone saw her, and Debo is surprised, but when he looks to the side, he sees only the girl's plush, wondering if she didn't go that way, asking why she acted alone. Then Aaron speaks to everyone, asking them to prepare themselves, because although he still doesn't know what it is, there is a strong aura in there, and everyone wonders if there is something there. And she says that maybe she is not sure, but she can tell that there is something strong, and that this will be dangerous. However, Debo says he will bring her back, because protecting Shannon should be his duty, and they must protect that place. But at that, the paladin asks Debo to calm down, saying that he did not hear what Aaron just said, and first they will do something, but then Aaron says he will go with. He says that whatever it is, that thing inside, is a threat to Maple World, and it's his job to deal with it. So they end up deciding that everyone will go in, and they end up going to that place. Inside, there's a lot of magma everywhere. They get scared. Shannon, in turn, is on top of an altar next to a fallen person. They arrive at that place, getting scared, and notice that Shannon is there with the body. There, she says that that's her brother, but Aaron finds something strange, and so does Debo. So, he yells at Shannon, telling her to stay there and not move, because he's going to get her. However, the girl, in half tears, starts to smile, saying that he really came, and she knew he would come, since he's a good person, but there's no going back. He asks what the girl is talking about, and she asks Debo if he knows the meaning of the name Zarkum, and says it's the demon tree. And while many believe these moving statues are Zarkum, they're just mediums that Zarkum uses, and this giant tree is the real Zarkum, and they still have to deal with the real body. But Debo asks what she's saying, and Aaron then thanks her for telling him, because thinking that it would have a main body is too much, and tells Shannon that she can rest easy while she goes to kill that tree, and tells her that she has to hide, because this will be dangerous, and she could end up crushed by that tree if she gets caught in the middle of it. But she asks also if the girl has something she still needs to do, like using her brother as a sacrifice, but the girl says that, apparently, they still don't understand her, and it already started like this, that they entered that place. And she takes the core in her hand, and it starts to burn, until it breaks, and she says that Zarkum uses mediums, and they are not limited to just statues. And so that paladin pierces Debo's stomach with her sword, and when Aaron looks back, she is surprised, and that other member of the group attacks her with an ultra-strong punch, and in that Debo, who is already on his last legs, asks Miria what she is doing, until he gets scared, and the girl is already completely changed, saying that he was the one who killed her friends, totally demonized, and that girl says that there is nothing to do, and they will see them only as targets of revenge. And now is the time for the grand finale, and she calls the real Zarkum, saying that he should do his best to end this performance. And the girl is already completely changed, with white hair, white clothes, and completely pale skin. And she says that this is how it should be done for the Black Wizard Lord. Okay, I wasn't expecting this at all, and I love how this monster acts in twist after twist. And with that, the monster Cuber beat them up, and Debo wonders if she was possessed by Zarkum. But Aaron yells at him, telling him to stop being a child and end this quickly, because she's not Miria anymore, telling him to wake up. Then he says he knows, while looking at his former friend who is already completely corrupted. Then Aaron uses the adrenaline boost to launch a crushing cut at that monster, cutting off some pillars and also part of his arm. And Debo remains quite shocked with an absurd self-loathing, thinking that he screwed up everything, because he shouldn't have told them to go to that place, and one of the members of that team is already dead. He prepares to go after Miria, while thinking that it's all his fault. He actually manages to hit the girl in the middle of the chest, making her spit blood everywhere, and finally finishes her, apologizing to Miria. But before dying, she still comes back with one more attack on him, but he ends up breaking more than two. And it turns out that it wasn't an attack, and she simply touches his face, thanking the boy, asking him to take care of Aaron. And he becomes increasingly frustrated with himself because of what happened. And Aaron in turn goes after that real Zaku, wondering if that is the main body, wanting to finish off that thing, that cursed tree. But then in the middle of all that noise, a hand comes out of that tree and leaves her completely surprised, and the hand goes after her trying to catch her. But she somehow manages to get out of the radius of that attack, while Debo yells at her, saying that they must finish that thing off, and the two prepare themselves with everything to be able to axe and chop that thing. But while they do that, Debo receives a punch and stops that hand before being crushed and begins to curse that thing, while the monster tries to crush him. But then that apostle girl who took her, they stop there and is transformed, goes after Debo, saying that she offers her life to the Great One with a dagger, wanting to kill the boy. But Aaron doesn't let that happen, passing like a lightning bolt to her middle and killing the girl before she could do anything. Then she notices that all that's left now is that statue, and Debo says that this thing probably won't let them break it so easily. But then he is affected by a psychological attack from that thing, trying to take over his body, and he is really affected by that. And Aaron yells to Debo, asking if it could be that he is being controlled. But he yells to Aaron, saying that she has to kill him quickly before he really does something that he regrets. Then she starts as a Tarara holding her axe, asking him to forgive. But Debo smiles at her, thinking that this is the best ending, because this must be his punishment for his idiotic thoughts. He apologizes to everyone, because of him that is the end of the team, and he asks to Aaron axe quickly, but he is very surprised, looking everywhere, and also sees Snow, wondering why his sister is there and what is happening, wondering who brought her. Then he wonders who it was, asking if it could have been the work of that person in front of him, a woman with an axe. He asks how dare she, and Aaron in turn tells him not to worry, because she will finish this quickly. But Debo asks how dare she bring her sister there, saying that he will not forgive her. Then the monster goes after Eren now along with Debo fully transformed, seeing an illusion in his mind that is making him attack Eren, and she even dodges his first axe blow. But he goes with his knee towards the girl and almost hits her, and she says that his senses are unnecessarily sharpened and they go for the pure man in hand, the two trying to attack each other, while Eren runs away so as not to have to kill his disciple. But in the middle of that battle, she launches a long cut that goes directly to the hand of that thing, and Debo ends up not knowing where she is as she falls behind him, and when he looks back, she uses her throw to cut that statue and also affect Debo, and goes up to the statue getting close to his face and says she wants to end it once and for all, using her final attack as she prepares to kill it once and for all. The idiot Debo appears on the forehead of that creature, going after Eren again. Then she starts cursing him, saying that this is her only chance, and says she can't stop, launching her final attack on the creature and also on the boy, apologizing to him. And after that final attack that cuts the tree and everything in front of it, the boy incredibly is still alive, wondering what is happening, wondering if Sakum is still alive, and she says that it seems he finally came to his senses, saying that this is good, but she already has an axe stuck in the middle of his chest, and she tells him that she thought she was going to have to leave without saying goodbye. Then Debo gets totally scared, wondering what happened, not wanting to believe what might have happened, and he says that this can't be done because he told her to kill him, asking why she is dying because she is the one who is injured, and she tells Debo that they already failed once, 800 years ago, and she is no longer the person who will stop the black magician, but he has a great talent, and unlike him, who at his age could not even compare, and he tries to say something to Era, saying that he cannot become as strong as her, even if he had eternity, but at that the girl begins to smile, saying that she leaves the maple world in his hands, and she is sure that he will succeed, since he is her only disciple, and she says that she is a little tired, and goes to sleep for a while, and he asks Era to wake up, trying to talk to her, telling her to open her eyes. But that was how Era closed her eyes forever, and he had to make his friends, heroes, know that. So he got up, took that axe, and went on ahead, and he says that he eventually left that place, since there was no place for him without Era, and that it was hell, and because he was unable to protect his life goal, which he had barely found. Because he was unable to pay for his sins, he could not even answer the request of someone dear to him, and that place was truly horrible, and until the end he continued fighting. And this time he wakes up in a bed very peacefully, and his sister is surprised that he has already woken up, saying that she was worried that he was still unconscious, even though he had no wounds, and says that he was also talking in his sleep, asking if he had some kind of nightmare or something similar, and he asks if it was a dream, since he does not remember anything. But then someone knocks on the door, and she asks who it is, because she does not think he is expecting anyone, so she tells her brother, because someone came to see him, and he is surprised by this, and when he gets up, it is Palm, and he speaks to Diabo, saying that his plans have been advanced, telling him to get ready as quickly as possible, and the boy asks to Palm if he doesn't have any time off, and he questions if he hasn't rested until now, but then he asks what the change is. Then Diabo says that he will have to lend him some money, and 200,000 months should be enough, but he says that it is impossible because he doesn't have all that. Then a few moments before he is talking to the person in charge of the guild, he asked about this angle base, and he says that they killed all 97 people, but he managed to get through it because he increased the circle. So Palm says that is true, but the supervisor doesn't believe it, asking what he is planning and questioning himself, so he doesn't know any other details. He is telling him this now, but he will only be rewarded for this portal when he gives him enough information, because he must be needing that money. But Palm says that it seems he made a mistake, so he says he wants to pay his debts first, putting the money on the table, and says that it is 2 million months, and with that everything was paid. And Abyss is very surprised, asking how he managed to gather such a large amount of months, since the amount they pay him is not even close to that. And it seems that he has been secretly earning money, and says that the moment he chose that also seems that he planned carefully to make the most of the information he has about the portal. Then Abyss says that now he thinks so, and congratulations kid, saying that he is now a free adventurer, and therefore believes it is right to discuss a new contract, and asks him to say how much he would like to receive as a sign-up bonus, saying that he will try to match it as best as possible. Then the protagonist asks 50 million months, and Abyss is very surprised by this, saying that this is absurd, and he is only a rank C adventurer, and no one would pay him that much. But then the boy says that this conversation simply ended there, getting up and leaving. Then Abyss asks what happened, but in that, already outside, Dabu asks what was wrong, and the protagonist says that he rejected it after hearing his sign-up bonus. Then Dabu asks how much he asked for, and he reveals that it was 50 million months. And Dabu is very surprised, asking if his boss is crazy, but he says no. Then Dabu says that he is always doing things without telling him anything, but asks why they came there. and Palma asks if he knows that place, but Dibu questions how he could not know it, since it is the land of the favela, and there is nothing he has not done to get out of that place since he was young. And although he cannot say that where he lives is the best place, but still, it is a paradise compared to there. He heard that that place used to be the most vibrant area of Elise, and he thinks that this is all talk of the past, because nowadays, it is a den of bandits, and says that it is probably the worst place on the island of Victoria. And some girls are there asking them to play, if you know what I mean, and a guy flies away. After being beaten up near the two, he is surprised to see that guy, and some bandits come after that adventure. He says that he thought things were going well, and Palma notices that what looks like a fight has started, and now he should just leave, and so, that guy says they are friends, asking why they are late, saying that those bastards, they started calling him a thief and started beating him, asking the two of them to help him. And then, he whispers to the two of them to save him. But D. Davier asks what that damn crazy guy is talking about, and those guys who are beating him by that they are friends. But D. the questions if he is serious, and the guy says that that friend there robbed him, took his item, and simply sold it, and he will let them go as soon as they pay for the item in his name, asking them to give him 3 million months right now. And then, he asks if he saw him steal, and still makes fun of the guy, asking what he could have seen with that dead fish eye, telling him not to blame someone innocent and just leave. And that guy goes back to cursing the little thief, saying that he really must want to die. But in that, the protagonist throws 3 million months in his face, saying that he will pay, telling him to get lost. But in that, D. Davier asks why he is doing this, and why he would do it, and Palm tells Ralph to follow him. And Ralph is surprised that he knows him. Then in another corner, he asks if he is saying that he came there to recruit him, and asks about the money. And Palm says that he doesn't have any more, and says that the money he threw before was all he had. And then Ralph asks with whom he is affiliated, and the boy says it's not anyone. And Ralph asks if he's joking with him, wondering why he would join his group. And D.Va starts to get angry, telling him to return the 3 million months they paid before. And Ralph asks if by any chance he asked them to pay for him, saying that they acted without talking to him. And D.Va gets even more angry, and then Ralph says that seeing as how they came there looking for him, they must know of his abilities, so they should pay him accordingly, or he will give a special discount and join his group for 3 million months. And D.Va gets more and more angry, but someone arrives, and that girl's name is Kiss, and she's from the Kenya Merchant Union, and asks if Palm is there, and the boy acts as if he already expected it. And Ralph is surprised that the Kenya Merchant Union is there, and the protagonist says it's himself, and Kiss says it's a great pleasure to meeting him, saying that she would have liked to meet him in a better environment, but things didn't happen that way, asking him to forgive her, saying that they, the Kenya Merchant Union, highly value his skills, and successfully completed the 100 Iono Gate, and although this may be sudden, she won't make a mistake, saying that they would like to recruit his group, and says that of course, he will have a simple portal invasion test as procedure, and they will pay 3 million in advance, and pay a bonus of 50 million when they pass the test. And Ralph is completely surprised by what he is hearing, and the girl says that if he wants to join, then the invasion will be in 3 days, wishing them good luck, and after handing over the money, she simply leaves, and Debu himself is surprised, saying that it is an unexpected luck. And so the protagonist throws that money in Ralph's hand, who loves money and is very happy, and he says that it is the bonus he asked for, saying that the contract term is of 1 year, and he will give him another 7 million after a successful invasion. And then Debu asks what he is doing, asking if he ate something bad today, because he is going to spend 10 million with a guy like him. And the protagonist calls him to go, because otherwise they will be late for their next appointment. And Debu is surprised that there is still another place he wants to go, calling the protagonist while he runs away, and he does not believe it, because he goes after that blonde again, and he asks why that noisy girl is there, and she tells him to shut up, saying that she only came to fulfill her promise. And a while later, the four go to the gate, and Debu says that it is certainly a good day to invade a portal, and says that there are 5 groups there, totaling more than 50 people. And he says that this number should be good enough to invade, and Ralph notes that bringing all those useless people will decrease the money he will receive. But up ahead, Piju talks to everyone, saying that as they were informed, the portal this time is at the orange level, and it has a maximum of 50 people and 3 marks, and she believes that with this number, clearing the portal will not be a problem. And the protagonist thinks about the followers, saying that he expected the Neo Merchant of Kanya to hire him, but to think that they would bring him there is too much, since they have already started using that place. And although the time is different from his past life, it is a portal that he has already cleared once. And thanks to that, things went as planned. and shuttles everyone to note that all groups must fire a flare if a second portal is found. But Debu asks about the second portal, questioning what it is, and she says that the portals are divided into levels according to their colors, and a second portal means that there is another dungeon inside the portal. And Laura says that since the orange portal has two portals, they have to invade another dungeon inside it, and besides, since this one has a second portal, there will be totally different terrain and monsters, trying to remember that. Then Rolf says that this is bad because he really didn't know they were newbies, and asks if he said his name was El Palm, saying that he will make one thing clear, and even if he hired him, that doesn't decide who will be the leader, and the leader of the group should be determined by skills. And so Palm notices that he is the ambitious type, saying that is right, and they will decide who will be the leader of the group by the contribution in this portal. And so Rolf says that he is a newbie and really fell in this, and as soon as they became the leader of the group, he already has bad intentions and thinks that this is about to get interesting. Baiju then wishes good luck to them, and at this point Kiranov is finally talking, and Debu says that they can earn 50 million months for this, and precisely because of this thought, he wants to take care of it quickly. But Rolf asks if he thinks this is a picnic, because he thinks his group will lose a first circle adventure today. So Debu asks what he's talking about, saying that he can't take it anymore, calling Rolf to fight. But he says that even when the result is obvious, he won't do it, because he doesn't do things that don't make him money. So Debu starts talking to the boss, asking why he hired someone like him, because he's destroying the morale of the place. But when he looks back, there are already people being eaten and killed right behind him, and a lot of blood ends up in Debu's face, and he gets scared seeing those people asking to be saved, because that is a high level, and those monsters go after the boy. And Debu is almost eaten, ending up between the teeth of one, while the monster gives him a lick at him. But Rolf quickly goes to the boy to save him, kicking the monster away and throwing him with just one punch. Then he tells the boy to pay attention, and Kiri says that it can't be, because this portal was in the middle of the monster's territory, and several of them go after all of them. So Palmy in turn uses her fire arrow to ricochet around the place, killing several. And he says that it's not like that. The evil eyes didn't attack us as soon as they entered, and it's different from her past life. And the girl uses her nascent soil to finish off some of them, but the monster starts to dodge her attack and gets by very narrowly, fleeing from all of them again and again. And she asks what that is, because he can't predict her movements, and ends up that she is also hit by those things, and several of those evil eyes go after her, almost killing her. But in that some of those things are killed in front of them, and she is scared by that turn of events, and then even Dibbo is almost hit. But then Rolf starts killing the monsters with absurdities, punching and throwing them away with their own fist, and Dibbo is shocked by what is happening, with him killing the monsters with his fist. And he says that with this he saved the life of that new kid twice, and once of the sassy lady. He says that it was a good feeling, saying that they don't need to thank him, telling them to continue being whiskeys for him so that he can shine even more, and that he notices that these are his true abilities, and says that he didn't want to admit it. But someone who has 3 circles is on another level, and he really keeps going after those things. And the monsters even try to give him some trouble, but he dodges calmly and notices that he moves in an irregular pattern, but that's all. And he is definitely superior to those two, but he wonders about Palmy because he controls the fire arrow against Esnes, thinking that it makes sense that the Merchant Union and Keen would be interested in his abilities. And he doesn't know about the boss fights, but his normal hunting speed is faster than his, and says this guy is absurd. And one of the monsters goes for him, and he even tries to punch, but the monster manages to dodge the blow, going all out for Rolf. But even with that, he keeps smiling, preparing for another punch. And he thinks that Palmy is definitely useful, and the contract fee of 50,000 mesos is not something that just anyone could get. And besides, if he observes how the Merchant Union treats him, he will probably pay more in the future. And he says that he can see himself sitting on a pile of money after taking this group for himself, happier and happier, delighting in his own illusion, laughing behind them, and that he notices that damn monster is awesome, and he is definitely enjoying it. And he continues killing the monsters thinking that this is exciting, but before he can do anything, he receives a huge kick in the rib, and it is Palmy who is throwing him away. And he asks what was with that attack, questioning if the boy is trying to be rude, but he says he doesn't need to thank them because other monsters are going after them, and he ends up asking what the hell he's doing. But a bolt of lightning coming out of nowhere kills those monsters that Rolf was trying to kill, and he asks what was that now, and when they realize what's happening, it's someone else shooting glowing arrows at them, and the protagonist notices that it came from behind him, and he goes after the monsters and ends up killing the monsters, stopping the arrow of that guy that's aiming at the protagonist, and he hides behind one of the dead monsters, taking advantage of this opportunity to create his own arrow, because since he's already attacked, now's his chance. And that assassin from afar realizes what the boy is doing, but it's too late, because the protagonist's fire arrow is already burning him point blank. Then a huge explosion occurs in the middle of the forest, and Ralph notices that he blocked the attack using the FY and counterattack, thinking that this is a completely crazy idea and execution, so Thibaut tells him to look, and the protagonist questions what it is, and when he looks back, several arrows are coming towards him from behind. Then the explosion occurs, and D.Vo screams at him, but the protagonist, even though injured, is still in one piece, and he notices that he clearly got him, asking how this happened, and how he is attacking him from behind. But Kiri shouts clap, telling Mithath that place is dangerous, calling him to retreat first. But Ralph talks about retreating, however, before they can do anything. A rain of arrows comes from above wanting to kill him, and Ralph asks where they would go in the middle of all that chaos. And with that amount of arrows, everyone needs to start running, but several are hit and killed right there, without having much to do, and even Kiri is almost hit, but uses Solar Slash to save her and another girl, and she asks what they are doing, telling them to run to the forest quickly if they want to live, and they say that they would have gone a long time ago if they could, but the evil eyes are already waiting for them, so how should they pass? But then the protagonist begins to open a path for them with his magic, and Ralph says he will go first, putting his foot down, and Kiri tells them to stop wasting time, and move quickly through that forest that the protagonist opened, but the arrows do not stop coming in her direction, and Debo says that at this rate they will die, and the protagonist launches his own fire arrow back to be able to take away their visibility, and he tells Debo, telling him to listen carefully, and so, that guy who is attacking everyone notices that the protagonist located him in an instant, and she thinks that Voke's concerns were not unfounded, and notices that it is Palm apologizing, but she says goodbye to him, aiming at the protagonist with everything she has while he continues running, but the arrows go towards him and fail to hit him, and that assassin wonders why a wizard is fast like him, but thinks that something is strange, because there are 6 people, and one of them has disappeared, noticing only now that it was the one who uses an axe, and then an explosion occurs right behind her, and she ends up getting scared, but she cannot escape, and it is Palm who is there, holding Debo's axe and using her magic, and he thinks that this time, he saw with his own eyes that he hit him, and so, Debo, who was wearing the protagonist's cape, holding his staff, finally notices that it seems the disguise change plan worked, and all thanks to the great Debo who bought time, but he is hit in the middle of Akai's abdomen, stinking, and Kyra and Ash are surprised, and the protagonist himself is also surprised by that, but he doesn't have time to think much, because the arrows continue coming towards him and towards several other people, and even Kyra who grabs Debo to be able to run away, and several are killed, and in that she tells them to run fast, but ends up being hit in the leg, and falls along with Debo, with the arrows coming towards her, but Ralph tells them to pay attention and goes back to get them, and will say that he is acting like a father when he doesn't even have children, and this is quite problematic. They are surprised that Ralph is back, so the killer tells them to run wherever they want, because they won't be able to escape its final reach. So she notices something while trying to shoot. Meanwhile, Ralph asks what plan they're following to be running in that direction, but Debo says he doesn't know either, but tells him to just run and shut up like the boss says. He says he's barely holding on, and still acts like that, but they end up running to much and come out of a wooded area, and when they look ahead, they notice the second portal. And they think it's impossible, because it could be that Pound the damn guy knew the location. But Ralph says that thanks to them, they will live. And the distance from the enemy was approximately 100 meters. And they can reach the portal faster than air with that distance. And Debo asks him to wait, because he doesn't believe that Ralph is thinking of going through the second portal without the boss. And he asks if that wasn't what he wanted since they sent him to that place. He says that they will enter first while they wait for that damn guy. But the arrows come from the front this time. So they all fall when they are hit, and Debo stays on the ground. Then Ralph asks what happened and how the attack came from the front, wondering if he got in front of him in that short space of time, and several other arrows come towards his body, but an axe is thrown and stops the arrow before they hit Ralph's body, and he is surprised, as is Debo, who notices that it is the axe that the boss took. Then they realize that he knew he would save him, but the way the protagonist chooses to save it's a bit complicated, because he sees a gigantic tree trunk heading towards the 3 of them. Then Debo realizes the shit he was planning, and the 3 of them are swept into the second portal by a huge hammer blow, and so they finally get out of there, and that assassin is very surprised by what happened, realizing that the protagonist is truly a damn madman, and with that assassin continues killing everything that moves, but ends up killing only Evil Y with her arrows. And with another one of those monsters falling dead, she gets frustrated, asking why he's not moving, wondering if Palm is trying to lure her while hiding, and thinks this sucks, while still trying to catch her, and she says it's okay, saying she'll play with him and wants to see how long he can survive like this. Then it is said that in the 13 years since he was taken in by his master Volk, selection match was held between 13 assassins who would fight until only 5 remain, and the girl I thought was a girl until now is a guy in true, and says that during the 7 days that they brutally killed each other, no one was able to detect him until the end of the game. So Master Volk rewarded him with the title of Ghost, but in that he gets scared looking to the side quickly, and ends up killing another evil Y with his arrow. Without success, he notices that it is another, completely useless animal, and an arrow from the protagonist goes in his direction, opening a hole in a tree that is very close to him. He is scared by that, and says that the boy is not bad at all, running away from where he is and going to another corner, stopping in another tree, and thinks that with that attack Palm revealed his position throwing arrows at the boy. But he does not hit anything behind the tree where he thought Palm would be, and another palm arrow comes at him curving and almost hitting him, and he becomes more and more surprised, wondering if this bastard used telekinesis to make him misplay his location, and thinks the boy is a dam falling to the ground and disappearing from there as quickly as possible, getting out of there. But to more arrows from the protagonist begin to zigzag through the forest towards that assassin. Then the ghost turns and launches his own arrow towards the boy's arrow, wanting to stop him and not be hit. So he ends up blinding his vision with that amount of fire. Another arrow from the protagonist comes from behind, almost hitting him, but he quickly turns and launches another one of his, but in that explosion ends up hitting him and throwing him away. He talks about Palm, thinking that that brat is amazing. He already felt less pain from being thrown from one side to the other with so much fire, but he thinks that this is getting interesting as he gets up. But he ends up inhaling some kind of smoke, and already in another corner, Palm thinks that he suddenly became quiet, wondering if he decided to stay hidden, thinking that this will be annoying because his level of stealth is incredible, that he can't detect his presence, and says that there was no one as skilled as him in this portal in his previous life, and he has to be an assassin sent by the Connie Merchant Union then, because it means that the future may have changed because he participated in the attack on the 100-person portal. But in this, that person simply shouts for Palm to appear, leaving the boy surprised, noticing that he is on the other side, and the ghost says that they will only waste each other's time like this, and he knows this, so he wonders why he doesn't stop hiding like a rat and fight like a real man, and says he heard rumors that he was acting like a full of his own adventurer, questioning Palm if this was all just a lie. And the protagonist notices that he is there, but asks how he got there, since it is impossible to travel that distance without making noise, wondering if he teleported, and says that unless he used the quiver flow, there would be no way. But then the ghost notices that the boy is back there, but those arrows of his come from another direction, one completely opposite to where the protagonist is looking at that assassin in front of him, and he is even more surprised by this attack. Meanwhile, in the middle of a blizzard, a portal throws the 3 members of the protagonist's team there. Debo then notices that the boss left them alone. Ralph wonders who said this is his problem, questioning why he is complaining to him. Debo starts to trick Ralph, wondering what he can do alone. Ralph says he is sure he stayed behind because he has a trick up his sleeve. Debo then notices something as soon as he pays attention to the surroundings, seeing a skull there. He wonders what all this is. After all, that is a portal with only 3 marks. So why are there so many crows around? Saying that it would even be normal to see something like that in a portal with 100 marks. And finally he understands and says that those bastards from Kania must have set this up, saying that the recruitment offer here came out of nowhere, and then that persecution started in the first portal, along with the number of corpses that contradicts the number of marks on the portal. And there's only one answer for all of this, because the Merchant Union of Kania supports the Black Mage. Then Debo asks if she is serious, and she says that they must have attracted adventurers who could get in their way until Thur, and even send the skilled assassin. And the Alpha was right when he said they would take the bait. Then Ralph says that supporters Xenon he thinks he needs to interrupt them, because they have to talk about this later, because the host of the party does not seem very happy with the new guest. In front of them a huge blue monster appears there, scaring Killian and the others, and that thing starts looking at him already hungry. Then Debo asks if this is the boss of the portal, and Ralph, saying what seems, he will have to pay the price in the end, telling him to consider himself exhorted, because he does not use this ability much. So he pulls what was on his string, activating the magic, and it is said that if he had to describe Ralph's character in one sentence, he would basically be a complete idiot. Besides that, he would also be called a piece of trash, and they say he would do anything for money, and he is an idiot. But when asked to describe him as an adventurer, they say he is useful. He may be an idiot, but the boy has skill, and that guy is probably the best 3-circle healing bishop there is. And he starts healing all 3 of them quickly, and then Debo notices that their wounds are gone, and he assumes that he thought this guy was a viper or something, but he's actually a bishop, and he notices that this means that even without using his ability, he was so strong. So he says that now that all the wounds are healed, they should get ready to fight, because that's what they came for, since that guy won't wait. And that gigantic thing goes for them, and Ralph tells them to get out again at least once. And Debo is surprised by them running away, but the monster doesn't expect their cuteness, almost hitting everyone, and with that, he holds on along with Kiri so as not to fly away, and thinks about that monster that was soon biting them, so it could eat both of them in one. But they manage to get out of the way, and Debo holds on to one of the thing's fangs, climbing the monster's face, and then throws his axe at it, taking out one of the monster's eyes with one. And Kiri hits from the other side, attacking together with Debo, and in that, the monster takes his hand to the boy, wanting to take it out of his eye. But before Debo, who was completely vulnerable, can be caught, Ralph appears hitting the hand of that thing, throwing him away and connecting another kick, but the monster tries to hit him again, but Ralph starts running through the arm of the thing, so Kiri tries to help, but ends up being hit. And Ralph then makes that punch expression and pays attention when it groans once more. And Debo thinks that he is not only healing, but also fighting head-on, and besides, the moment he uses the chorus is not a random moment, he uses it when they are in danger. Then Ralph says that he forgot to tell him, because it is the first one on account, but from now on, he will charge for additional services, activating his blessing, gathering angels on top of him. And in that, Kiri notices that she can feel the wave of energy inside her, and he says that it is 100 miles per blessing, and it is a bargain. And they both get pissed off at that mercenary who even wants to charge for helping, saying he can get his blessing back. And sometime later, they finally kill that gigantic ant and manage to end the threat. And Kiri falls to the ground, thinking it was a horrible fight. But Ralph seriously questions himself, because he doesn't think it was that bad. Anyway, it's time to talk about his payment. But then, the monster starts roaring again, and Debo tells him to shut up, saying his breath stinks and that if he doesn't shut up, he'll shut it for him. But the monster starts freaking out, grabbing a huge piece of ice on its own arm, and seeing the Ice King Kong twist completely and evolve. He can't believe that thing is doing this, and the monster actually says evolve, coming back to life, even more ferocious. Meanwhile, Palma is running away like the devil runs away from the cross, while being shot by a bunch of arrows from that assassin, and he thinks something is wrong, because he can't predict where the attacks are coming from, and the teleportation ability that a third circle archer could use is called Quiver Flow. But Quiver Flow allows the archer to return to a previously marked location, and he can only place one mark at a time, so this should be impossible. Meanwhile, the ghost starts laughing, saying there's no point, as he already said, saying that he's so slow that he's stuck dying of boredom. But the protagonist summons his fireball, throwing it back, trying to hit that assassin, but the assassin yells that he missed again, telling him to keep wasting skills like that, and he'll experience a mana shock soon. And the protagonist is really affected by that, blood coming out and marks growing on his body. So the ghost continues chasing him, and says that he's trying to get past the next one, Portal, using abilities to divert his attention, while the protagonist blows up almost the entire forest. Then the ghost says that this is too obvious, and the protagonist thinks that he can't keep wasting this energy like this against the enemy he can't even find, and he'll be done for if he reaches his limit, and he should smile from there as soon as possible. But then an arrow hits right where he's passing, and he falls to the ground because of the explosion of that arrow. But he takes from his bag another mana liquid, thinking that he doesn't have time to think, while the arrows keep coming, and he says that he'll have to take the risk taking that, and this time using the flaming orb, huge, that sweeps away all those arrows that were coming in his direction. Then the ghost screams, calling the protagonist an idiot, but as he stops in another tree, his eyes widen because several arrows come in his direction, and there are 6 of them at once, and he is completely scared by this, and notices that maximum number of skills that the Circle 3 adventurer can use at once, and wonders if he is planning to self-destruct or something like that. But the protagonist continues to resist that mana curse that surrounds all his skin, and Palm thinks that if his guess about his secret is correct, he will force him to reveal it. Then the arrows are hitting close to the ghost without him having much to do, and he notices that he is desperate, not knowing where to attack. And he is sure of it, because he has completely lost control. But this time, Palm throws a fireball in the direction of that assassin, who begins to flee and continues there, jumping from tree to tree, escaping the protagonist's attacks. Then Palm becomes increasingly nervous, thinking he just needs a little more. He starts to explode a large part of the forest with his fire, and begins to have more and more mana repertoires, coughing up more blood with each skill he uses. Then the ghost thinks this is useless, because he will never be able to touch him like that, and says that his fate is already sealed. The protagonist is lying on the ground, already suffering from the lack of mana, and he says he will suffer terrible pain as his body collapses due to the mana shock. The protagonist puts even more blood while trembling and almost falling, but the forest begins to dissolve him in fire. So he uses another skill, and this time he finally manages to create something even bigger, and creates a wall of fire around him along with that gigantic circle on top of his head. And the ghost gets scared, wondering what this is, because the entire forest was swallowed by the flames. And he asks if this was what the palm was wanting, and says that this is bad because this way he will be burned alive. And he thinks that that place seems safe, a completely open place, and thinks he needs to get there. But then he notices something, thinking that there shouldn't be a safe place. And so he realizes something, and when he turns around, there is something strange. And he shouts to his other version telling him to go back, because there is a trap there. But at that moment, that other ghost asks what his brother is talking about, and then the protagonist uses his telekinesis, and the one who is running away is caught by a rock and thrown away. Then the ghost brother quickly uses his arrow to break the rock behind him, also breaking that telekinesis. And his brother is almost caught, but the palm appears through the fire, thinking that one has already gone, about to kill that copy. But before the boy could hit the copy, he sticks his bow in the ground, managing to get out of the way of the protagonist's attack. So before he could do anything else, he prepares to hit him with a kick. But Palm gets out of the way by lowering his head, so he thinks he doesn't have much time, and needs to finish this quickly, hitting the base of the shield that was stuck in the ground. And this makes the ghost lose his balance, and so Palm manages to hit him, throwing him away, making him lose his bow. So Palm prepares to launch another attack, and the ghost gets scared, and the other in turn shoots an arrow in the direction of the protagonist, who needs to get out of the way to avoid being pierced. And with that, the ghost orders Lear to get up, and says that this wretch doesn't have enough hands to cast another attack spell, ordering to finish him off. And so, before he could do anything, a dagger comes towards him and almost pierces his head, but he manages to get out of the way. Seeing what it is, he realizes that he decided to use telekinesis, since it doesn't consume much mana, and that dagger begins to chase him all the way through the battle. But before he can do anything, the other one, who was on the ground, takes his own dagger and goes for the protagonist, wanting to hit him while he's in the air, and her is distracted and going after the ghost. But he manages to stop Lear's attack using his staff and quickly ducks, and that dagger continues chasing the other brother, who launches his arrows to try to stop that thing. But he is unsuccessful in hitting the flying dagger, and he says he's seen enough, launching some more mana. But in this, Palmy uses his intelligence, using not only the dagger, but also stoning that archer so he can't launch his arrows. Meanwhile, he is against the groaner, who is using the dagger, and the boy tires him out using only his staff. And then the groaner asks how can a wizard be so good in hand-to-hand combat, until Palmy manages to knee the groaner in the stomach and thinks he can't stop there, picking up that dagger again and doing it there behind the one who still has the bow, trying to kill him in every way. But that guy manages to escape the dagger him anyway. Meanwhile, he uses his staff to take the dagger out of the unarmed gemmer's hand and prepares to use his staff to beat the gemmer. But then his arm is pierced by a real arrow, and so the gemmer with the bow thinks he finally did it, and Near tells his brother that he did a good job throwing Palmy away. And the boy, while kicked, drops his staff to the ground, and then the unarmed gemmer once again picks up his dagger and prepares to throw it at him, launching several cuts at the boy. He says that he can't do much with just one arm, and Palmy prepares to continue fighting and simply uses taijutsu to stop all the dagger attacks that the gemmer is making, not letting him hit, and ends up that with just one hand, he manages to disarm that asshole, pricking his arm while he is dying of fear, and spinning to break the gemmer's arm with the scar on his mouth completely, and tells the boy to let him go while he curses, threatening Palmy, saying that if he doesn't let him go, he will be hit again. But the boy uses his ability again, simply throwing a fireball at himself, and that moaning is scared to death by what the boy is doing, and his brother, seen from afar, asks Palmy not to do that. But the two are hit by that layer of fire, and he keeps screaming near his brother, but ends up being thrown away, hits his back against a tree, and when he falls, he can hardly breathe because of all that smoke, and wonders what is going on. Seeing a dome of mana in front of him, he wonders where his brother is, and then to try to find each other. But Palmy appears in front of one of them, coming down from the top of a tree with an arrow in his hand, and Near can no longer bear to see the boy's face, telling him to just die once and for all. And while he takes off his cape, wanting to use it to defend himself, the protagonist manages to go against that and apparently sticks that arrow in the ground. Meanwhile, the ghost that is trapped inside that dome gets scared until he sees it breaking and runs to the place where there is a hole, wondering about what had happened to his brother, not wanting to believe that he died. And as soon as he looks forward, he sees his brother lying on the ground, so he asks Near to stay with him, trying to wake him up, saying that they have to get out of there because they have already wasted enough time. They will just quickly recover the phoenix feather and then finish the mission. But the body that is on the ground that he thought was Palmy's has something that was not supposed to be there, and it is the bracelet that his brother was wearing. And when he notices that the one on the ground is Near, the protagonist, who was disguised, takes his dagger and sticks it in him before he can do anything. And finally, after killing them both, Palmy falls to the ground completely exhausted, thinking to himself that he is tired of fighting against shooters. Meanwhile, back in Portal 2, back in the snow world, the three are still getting screwed by that revived dead berserker who is killing everyone. Ralph is now being thrown away, and the monster keeps struggling, throwing everyone everywhere. Dibbo is already completely screwed again, now on all fours, looking at that gigantic monster in front of him. Then that huge thing that has become twice as big prepares to crush the boy on the ground. But Ralph appears there trying to distract that thing, saving him. However, the Yeti manages to see him and tries to punch Ralph. However, he says that thing is too slow, punching him directly in the creature's eye. But when he hits him, he wonders why that thing is so hard, unable to do any damage to the monster. The Yeti slaps himself in the face, crushing Ralph against his face, and he is in a very complicated situation being crushed. But Kira appears there using the solar cut and tearing off part of his fingers of the monster. Then she extends her hand to Ralph, saying that she knows him, and she paid him once for saving her life, and she grabs him, taking him away from there, carrying him on her back. And the monster tries to crush her as she runs away and continues going after the girl along with Ralph running after him, and he takes a gigantic leap that covers most of the distance between the two and hits the ground that raises snow everywhere. But in that, Ralph uses the cure on the three, and the three manage to run normally because he escapes from that thing. Then Dibbo talks to Ralph, asking if he has thought of any way to deal with that thing, because if they continue like this, it will not work. But he shouts that he is coming after him, but Dibbo does not understand what he is saying, asking him to be more specific, because that thing is too big. And Ralph tells him to shut up and try to get the attention of that thing. And in that, he sees a huge sword, a great sword there, and says that he needs to get as close as possible to its weak point. Meanwhile, Dibbo tries to stop the attacks of that thing only with his axe, asking Ralph to go as fast as possible. So both he and Kirito go around the monster trying to get that sword that is on its back. But while they try to climb the body of that giant, he starts to struggle to not let the two finish the climb. And Dibbo on the other side also starts to climb, noticing that he comes to the conclusion that he's not just a big idiot, and the monster begins swinging, trying to catch them all, but they manage to escape somehow. However, he manages to hit them from top to bottom, pinning one of them to the ground, and the one who falls is Dibbo himself. And the monster arrives with another blow to finish the boy off anyway, and Kirito yells for Ralph to heal him quickly, but the monster manages to land the blow, and when she looks to the side, Ralph is in a very bad situation, and Kirito yells at Dibbo, and the monster hears that looking at the two. Then Ralph says that he only has 4 heals left, saying that she better do her best to be able to dodge, because he will try to find an opening. So they must prepare, and in that, while they continue that bloody battle, the monster does not stop going after them, increasingly angry, and already throws Kirito up without the girl having much to do. And Ralph is already pissed at her, because she did that right after he told her to dodge, and he heals the girl again while she falls face down on the ground. Then he ends up noticing that she has fainted and thinks it is a waste of skill to save this girl. And with that, he starts running away to take that creature away from the two fallen. And Dibbo is there like a mosquito after being slapped in the middle of the floor and is almost dead. And he then starts remembering when he was talking to Palmy about moving up a circle. And Palmy says that he already has enough experience to reach the second circle and says that it will be better if he moves up a circle in the future. But Dibbo asks him if this is something he can do just because he would. But Palmy says that enlightenment depends on how he thinks, and he questions about enlightenment, asking what it is, saying that this is something he should teach. But Palmy says that it is different for everyone, and even if he shared this experience, it would not be useful to him. So he asks what the boy wants him to do, and Palmy says that he just needs to find a keyword that is suitable for him, and says that it could be about understanding mana, his search for knowledge, or even an unforgettable memory. As he remembers this, his heart starts to beat faster, and with that he starts to explode aura near him, and draws the attention of that monster with the amount of snow he raises. And when the monster looks back, Dibbo is already turned on Jiraiya going after that thing, and he even tries to give the boy a ride, but Dibbo uses the explosion cut, cutting off the hand of that thing. Then Ralph notices that he cut that ice thing with a single attack, wondering what happened to him. And Dibbo now has to circles out of now, here going after the creature once again and climbing over it. And Ralph is surprised that that brat just leveled up, so he cuts off another one of that thing's eyes while throwing himself upwards. He aims at that great sword that is on the monster's back, hitting it with everything, using his axe as a hammer and driving it into the flesh of that thing, taking the great sword to the core of that monster. But apparently the force he applied was not enough, and the monster still has little breath left to make a last move, throwing himself into the air, turning his back and placing his ice armor towards Dibbo, who is below him, throwing himself on top of the boy with everything he could to crush him. Then Ralph appears on the scene thanking the brat, saying that he did a good job, and then begins to heal Dibbo, telling him to get up quickly, using a super effective cure on the boy, who starts hammering that thing. Then he feels the pain of those attacks, and with that Dibbo gets a chance to get up and jump from there. But the monster sees that the boy is free and attacks him again. So he tries to stop that creature's attack once again with his axe. And Ralph in turn heals the boy again. And with that, Debu manages to throw that monster back. But yet he's seeing that the one giving him trouble is Ralph, grabs him and begins to crush him. Then the crazy mercenary calls him a dumb bastard, asking if this is the time to worry about him. And he again uses the cure on Debu, who is already next to the great sword with his axe in hand, preparing to hit with everything. And when the monster finally notices their plan and tries to do something, Debu delivers the final blow, plunging that sword into the monster's core with all his might. And when the core is finally broken, they finish off that ice yeti once and for all. Or at least that's what was supposed to happen, because the monster moves again, unbalancing the jibe and throwing the boy away, pinning him to the ground. And he comes back to life, emerging from that hole. Then he asks Ralph what's happening, with Ralph already fallen on top of him. And the monster starts running in fear, getting out of there, and that ice begins to break away from him. He looks back, realizing something is wrong, because his hand has fallen off, and he begins to completely disintegrate, trembling with fear as he dies, turning into a block of ice, crumbling into pieces, and the only one watching the death of that thing is the jibe itself. Meanwhile, Kiri is coming to, finally waking up, and Jibo notices that she has finally woken up, and they are already inside a cave, with the three of them covered in that monster's skin. So Kiri asks if he is alive, questioning what happened to the monster. And he says that as she can see, he must already be Vascow's new hire, because just looking at what is covering her, she will know what it is made of. And Jibo says that he was so hungry that he tried to eat that monster's meat, but couldn't. After all, it is very tough, and Kiri finds this disgusting, but asks if he was waiting for them to wake up, and he says he wasn't really waiting. He just couldn't find the portal exit, and the weather outside isn't helping either, so he thought they could rest. And besides, Ralph seems to be in a bad way. Meanwhile, he says that he will explore the area after the blizzard passes, and she should rest a little more while he does that. And so, he leaves the cave for a while, and outside while he walks, the weather is worse than he imagined, and as he walks, he almost freezes, and thinks that it has been 24 hours, wondering what happened to the boss. But as he thinks about it, he scolds himself, because he can't believe he is worried about that guy, until he sees something behind him. A hand, and there is another monster. Then he speaks well, expected it to be him, but they're definitely not the things he was looking for, and he kills them all. Then someone appears, and Kiri notices that someone is coming. So she asks why Dibbo is covered in blood, and he says that it's nothing, but she wonders if there are still monsters, saying that it's too dangerous for her to come with him. But he says that someone has to take care of the half-dead canary there. He's her companion now, and she says that she'll go next time, and she can't let him do all the work. But he says that it's okay, because he should do this to prevent her from exploring the same area he already explored, and tells her not to even think about wasting her energy and just rest there. Then the girl realizes that what he's saying makes sense, and calls him an idiot because he's trying to be tough, but he'll end up passing out any moment, and so they won't have much to do. So Dibbo continues walking everywhere, killing monsters and trying to explore that place, until he finds himself cornered in the middle of a ravine, and he thinks it's very cold there, and he still has to keep fighting those things, trying to kill them all. But that ice heavyweight jumps on top of the boy, taking him down there, and he thinks it was too close, and he almost died this time. But he notices a human there, and it turns out it's just a body, and seeing that he seems to have died recently, he goes to the corpse and wonders what it is, noticing that there's a will with it, and notices that it's a letter with a lot of writing to. That it says in the letter to entrust the hand of whoever finds it to her, because they can also keep their gauntlets as a form of gratitude, and if he belongs to the warrior class, he will also benefit from their warrior mastery ability. And as you can see, they fell into the traps left by Kanya, and their team was destroyed by the snow yeti. And the only advantage of all this is that they found the exit portal, but it seems that the exit portal is special, and his hunch is that you need to defeat the boss to activate the portal. And that adventurer asks him to check the back of the letter for his location, as he really wishes him good luck, and if he can, he must deliver that letter to the destined recipient. And so Ball reads all that, digs a grave for that warrior, and buries him next to his sword stuck in front. Then he walks back and leads everyone to that portal, and with Kiryu already there, he takes Ralph and starts walking with him outside, but he looks back, trying to wait for the protagonist, but seeing that he is not there, they go through the portal, returning to reality. He asks Kiryu what they do now, and she says that they need to regroup. Neither she nor he knows what to do, but in that, guy outside says that he cannot believe what they are seeing, and they are surprised. They notice that the ghost was actually worth it, and then Debu notices that they are also from Kanya's group, cursing them, thinking that this is bad, and they are completely screwed. And that guy with the death mask tells them not to worry so much, because they will finish this quickly by going after the three. Then Kiryu steps in front, protecting both Debu and Ralph, sending him back. But another assassin throws some poison canals at the girl's leg, making her kneel. Then Debu worries about Kiryu, but another assassin comes from behind. But that assassin ends up dying completely from an arrow, which appears with the protagonist fire arrow, piercing and killing them. Then Kiryu is surprised, and everyone wonders what he is seeing, and that arrow zigzags and kills each of the attackers who were behind his group. And seeing all that slaughter, they wonder what it is, and when Debu looks back, he lets out a big smile, saying that he really didn't want to say this, but he will be forced. And the prota asks if he missed him, so Debu says whatever it is, and he owes them all a drink for being so late. My friend, what a design for the protagonist. The animal is absurd. And in another corner, a guy is with a purple, saber-toothed tiger with a demon horn, whatever, petting that thing as if it were a yellow kitten you have at home. Then, he says that an adventurer of his caliber appearing out of nowhere, and they have no idea of his origin, is absurd, and they're going to have to risk drawing some attention. At that, Bayu returns to her master, saying that Alpalmi has returned, and she asks if he should honor as part of the agreement, but that guy isn't very keen on that, ordering him to be killed. Bayu asks what he's talking about, trying to argue, but that crazy guy says that the general public's opinion is the least of his worries right now, because his actions are beyond their predictions, and they'll make up an excuse later. But she says she's afraid he's not alone, and that guy questions what she's talking about, and she says that the protagonist brought company, and he really is with someone. Meanwhile, Ralph starts complaining about the food he's eating, saying it's bland. Debu freaks out, telling him to just be quiet and eat, asking how he dares complain when his sister made it for him. But then, Ralph says she obviously didn't add enough salt. The girl is all happy talking to Kiri, telling her to let him know if she wants more. The girl keeps thanking him. Debu says that's why, that he really didn't want to bring him there, but he says it's better if they stay together, since the Kania Union must have already heard the news, and this is the best place to hide, and even to protect his sister. He says it probably won't be long before they meet again, even if they go somewhere else. At that moment, the door opens, and Debu is surprised. The protagonist asks how everyone is, and he asks where he was until now. And the protagonist says he went to do business, and they question what while Ralph remembers that speaking of business, he wanted to know if they could settle the payment soon, and says that they can postpone the question of who is the leader of the group, since they all contributed almost equally. But what about the 7 million fears that he promised? And then Debu gets very shy, asking if he is crazy, and Jonando if he thinks he can demand payments from Kania now, and says that it was he who said that he took care of the Snow Yeti alone, event that he himself doesn't remember much about doing it. Besides that, he also, while he slept, he was looking to get out of the portal. And Kiri says that Alfalm supposedly took care of 2 assassins alone, but in that, Ralph asks if anyone saw that in total disbelief, and Debu notices that he really is a scoundrel, and Kiri asks the boy what he's going to do now, and he says that Kania will move again, and when that happens they'll do something else. But in that, Abyss gets pissed, asking how long he wants him to stay out there. But in that, Debu's sister asks who he is, and everyone is surprised. And Kiri recognizes Abyss, who was there, and he talks to the boy, asking if he can tell the idiot who came in to hurry up. And a few moments before, Lacan told Abyss to fix something he messed up, and he thinks that things are getting out of control, because he doesn't believe that the Kania Merchants Guild found Alfalm, and they started a ray of portal before he had a chance to do anything, so he wonders if he should have made a better offer, and thinks he'll be toast at this rate. But then someone knocks on the door, and he's surprised that it's Alfalm who's back, and says it's a surprise. Asks if the negotiation with Kania went wrong, and he says they offered 50 million months in advance for passing the test, and since the raid is over, all that's left to do is just sign the papers, and he's afraid of this, already getting nervous. He asks if he's there to rub it in his face, and says he's very annoying as always. But Palm says that if he doesn't have any offers to make, he'll leave. So Abyss thinks for a moment, and says the boy won, saying she'll give him 60 million months, telling him to sign, because he's offering more than he demanded. But the protagonist gives that happy smile, actually signing, and Abyss says that now they are officially partners, calling the boy to what matters. So Palm says that Kania was behind the sabotage of the 100-person raid, and he is surprised by his information. Then the boy says that even the test portal was a trap set by them. They disguised the portal and caused more than 100 hits as a 3-mark portal, and even sent assassins. Abyss is very surprised by this, noting that they must have contacted him to get rid of the evidence. Then he starts laughing, thinking about Kania, saying that this time they will expose his betrayal forever. But then Palm asks if that will be enough, and Abyss questions what he is talking about. The protagonist says that his testimony is the only evidence against them, and they can always deny the allegations. Abyss says that of course they will, but at least their reputation will be very tarnished, because the other merchant guilds are looking for an atoning way to blame the failure of the attack on the 100-person portal, and if they could at least decrease Kania's business with this, this. This will end well, but the protagonist says that they have a way to crush the Kania merchant group. And he says that he is not talking about making them lose a bit of influence as the second largest guild, and he is talking about eradicating them completely from the world map. But then Abyss asks what information he is hiding from him, since now they are officially business partners, and the protagonist asks him not to leak that information about their sabotage yet, and it's better to bombard them with everything they have at once. And then Abyss says he's right, but tells him to stop with the suspense and just say everything. Then Palm finally gets straight to the point, saying that the Black Mage's followers have started moving, now in the present, with a kiss. She says that it's been a while since Abyss asked what he's bringing there. Then he says he wanted to apologize in person, and she asked about it. Then he says that there were some misunderstandings between Palm and his guild. He says he's still young, and he lost his temper in the heat of the moment and went there. But to make things clear, Palm is an official business partner of the guild with the merchant gaffer, and he wanted to apologize for making it seem like an attempt to tamper with his contract. She says she understands, saying that she's afraid she won't be able to do the curse as planned, asking if everything is okay with that. Then he says it's acceptable, and says it's a bit off topic, but he realized the importance of having the right people working for him in this incident and decided to compensate them adequately. And she questions what he's talking about, and Abyss smiles broadly and says that the Gaffer Merchant Guild will have skilled bodyguards watching them 24 hours a day to prevent unfortunate events. And he's speaking to the entire Elpong group, since they confirmed that their teamwork is unmatched, and says that this means that if anyone tries to hurt Elpong's team, they will have to face the entire Gaffer Merchant Guild, and she doesn't even have anything to say. And in that already with the day I'll find out that the kid got 60 million tables, and he's surprised. And the calm ingenuity is that he managed to perform such a miracle. Besides, Kiri points out that he got the bodyguards because to think that the Gaffer Merchant Union would go that far is too much. And Ralph really likes Palm's great work, saying that his business acumen is absolutely wonderful, but that the protagonist tells them to calm down. And Ralph says that this makes him reconsider his position on the value of that group, and that this will be a perfect team, and thus they will get rid of mediocrity. But Debu says that he thinks he is the last cookie in the package, and Ralph says that it is worth mentioning one thing, and there is no bishop like him in Lich Harbor, and not in the entire world of Maple World itself. And he says that he can not only cast heals very quickly, but also serves as a tank on the front line, so they think he is really cool. Then he asks about Jibo, calling the kid a newbie, and he gets pissed about it. But then Ralph asks where Palm managed to recruit a beast like him, and he questions about it, and Ralph says he thought he was useless until he was knocked out. Then he gained a circle and took down the boy alone, saying that there is something inexplicable about him, and Kiri says that thinking about it, he lost consciousness against the goblins before killing them too. But Debu says they can share their stories as much as they want, but he really doesn't remember anything, and the only thing he remembers is like a dream. And this woman he doesn't know keeps appearing to him like a vision, and so he follows her and gets involved in all kinds of battles alongside her. And it's like the two of them have been companions for a long time, but strangely he can't remember what she looked like when he wakes up, and although he remembers that she uses an axe as a weapon. Palm is surprised by this, questioning about this dream about the axe, and notes that everyone in his past life knew that Debu and Aaron traveled together, and the mysterious power and the woman in his dream, who resembles Aaron, may be connected, and he wonders if he regained the powers he had in his previous life when he was unconscious, and he wonders how this is possible, and wonders if he disturbed something, traveling through time and altering destiny. But Rolf says that although he is impeccable, his intelligence is really questionable, and Debu gets all irritated questioning Rolf, which makes him imagine that he is as intelligent as himself. But Rolf says that he is somewhat similar to Alpam, saying that he gained circles at a tremendous rate and has incredible composure and perception for an adventurer with his unlimited experience, and says that he understands why the Union Gaffer's merchant is so desperate to keep him. And on the other hand, he's not sure about Killy because he doesn't want to be rude, but he'll be direct, and she has good foundations in common sense, and as expected of a former sergeant of the Sign Knight structure, and for a two-circle adventurer, she's decent enough. But that's it. Nothing about her stands out, and the Gafor Union isn't stupid. They've only endured crazy things for them, and they've rewarded him duly. And his next action is to deliberately walk into the trap that Kania has set for them, to ensure evidence that they really are followers of the Black Magician, and for that, he's willing to do anything, and no matter how wild it is, as long as he's paid properly. But he doesn't know if he wants to share the efforts with someone who will clearly be a dead weight, and he questions her why she doesn't do them a favor and returns to the Sign Knights. And the girl doesn't have much to say. After all, he's right, and she hasn't done much so far. And she ends up remembering an episode that happened there at the Knights of the Signs, with a guy saying that he heard that she went through some problems recently, and he claims that he thought she had died on the radio of the 100 people portal, since he hadn't seen her for a while. And the girl notices that is Kasinha, and he asks if she is going to see the master, and he says yes. Then he found out that she wanted to join some adventurers group, and says that this is absolutely ridiculous. But maybe this is more suitable for her, and maybe it is the only way to save the reputation of the master or the knights. And as he leaves, he remembers to say that his master must be in the office. And while the girl is left with a disgusted face after hearing all this, and she actually goes to her master, and he asks if she wants to resign from her position and questions what is happening, asking if she played her character wrong, and she asks her master for forgiveness, saying that she cannot tell him the details at the moment, but in due time, she will tell him. But he questions about that due time, looking at her, saying that it is right, saying that then they will make the entry into this group of adventurers, be part of his secret mission. And he asks Sunlight that she come back there and report directly to him every 3 weeks, and tell her not to forget this, because she is still his pupil and assigned knight until the moment she ceases to exist. I'm starting to think that this guy there doesn't have good intentions, and I'm just keeping it here in my head. So, she says she knows how useless it seems, but the Black Magician's followers have also infiltrated his forces, and she can't return to her master until she has something to report. She says she's not staying there for the money, asking only for him to give her some time, and she'll get better too, asking to be allowed to stay. Palm smiles, while Rolf says she's very naive, and this is making him laugh, telling her to get out of there before he forces her. But then Palm asks how determined she is, and they're all surprised. And Rolf asks him not to tell her that the boy was serious. Palm says that knowing how she is. Here he'll probably ask in the wrong places to find the followers, and that will certainly make things difficult for him. And besides, he talks to Rolf because he keeps talking about being skilled, so he wants to tell him something, saying that he seems very proud of the skills he has. But he's not the only one disappointed with the group members, because he sent them to the second portal first, because he had faith that they would easily take care of the boss there, but it turned out that he would have been swept away if it weren't for the devil. But he says that they didn't fight an ordinary beast, saying that he wouldn't know, and he questions if it's a snow yeti, saying that he's already hunted a snow yeti alone in the past, leaving them all surprised, telling him to stop being ridiculous. Then he says that although it was in this past life, in fact he was really planning to take care of the monster alone, but the assassins sent by the Kania Union was much stronger than he expected, and so he had no choice but to change his plans. And both the members of his group and he were at a disadvantage, but in this he doesn't believe the boy, saying that he was just a slave before being hired by the Fork Union. But Palma gets angry with him, saying that if Rolf doesn't believe him, he's always ready to prove it to him, putting that murderous intent on him and making him put his tail between his legs. He says that he doesn't think that will be necessary, but he asks if he's saying he doesn't need him either. But the boy says that's not the case, saying that what he wants is for them all to get stronger together, and they have about a month until the next raid, and the best way to train is to get a good beating. And good thing this crazy guy must not be planning. Meanwhile, Bayu says she fears things have become a little inconvenient for her master, and says that fighting the Fork Union will draw unnecessary attention to all of them. But in this he asks how much she thinks the Union knows, questioning if the failure of the negotiation was all staged, and she says she's not sure, because even her spy didn't report anything related to that. And maybe their executives have information that the others don't know. And he thinks about Fork getting a little worried, and he says that this union alone shouldn't be a threat. And when that day comes, getting rid of them won't be a problem. But his biggest obstacle is the Maple World Alliance, and the rest is irrelevant. And it was like that over 800 years ago. The alliance formed between the Sign Knights, the Resistance, the Adventurers Union, the Nova, and other groups, with the Sign Empress as their leader. And since the 6 heroes were sealed with the Black Mudge, they are the only threats left, and they should be able to take care of the fight between the merchant guilds easily. But he thinks that something doesn't fit, wondering if he could really have done it only with Fork's support. And Kiss remains very apprehensive while he thinks, and he tells her to prioritize collecting any information she could about Fork's Union, and she obeys his order, immediately disappearing from there. Then that guy thinks about Alpalmi, saying that he hopes he becomes a worthy opponent. Meanwhile, in a forest, they are all getting beaten up a lot, with Rolf being thrown back. He wonders what kind of mish he is, and then the protagonist asks what they're waiting for, telling them to hurry up and attack him with their best ability. He tells them to land a successful attack, and he'll finish training for the day. Then Rolf tells them to get away from him, running away from Palm. They keep getting beaten and yelling like crazy. From afar, Debu is surprised by this, saying they're very noisy, and he can't focus with all that noise. He says he'd rather do physical training with them, wondering why he has to meditate. Then he remembers that Palm said his task is to extract the power he only awakens when he faints, although he doesn't even know if that's possible. If it is, things are going to get very interesting. Rolf starts yelling, telling the protagonist not to hit him in the same place twice. While listening to all this, Debu wonders if he can really get stronger this strange way. Back home, Rolf asks Palm if he's sure this is the right way to do it. Debu starts laughing at him, and Palm says that he was only taking the level of his circle into consideration in relation to the training. But then Rolf questions why this seems personal to him, and Debu starts laughing, saying that he is even better than before, but he wonders if it is okay to leave it alone, and Palm says that there are some guards who are also looking after her, so it should be okay, and he tells her not to overdo it, since she would have to do this again tomorrow, and Debu tells Palm that there is something he wants to ask, and Palm asks what it is, and he tells him to look at it, saying that he discovered it in the portal, and managed to find the way out, thanks to him, and says that he brought it back because he thought that delivering it to the correct recipient was the right thing to do, but it turns out that there is no information about him, wondering what he should do, and so the protagonist notices that it is the crusade ring reminding him of someone, and Debu asks if there is something wrong. Then he says that in fact he has an idea, saying that he will take care of it, saying that Debu should go to sleep early tonight because he will participate in the physical training session the next day, and upon hearing this, Alva becomes very happy. While Debu is very scared and already in another corner, Kiri is still training with her sword, hitting several trees, clearing the forest until she gets very tired and remembers her senpai saying that she is useless, and then continues more and more pissed off trying to improve her strength. Meanwhile, Palm walks around a corner until she knocks on a door and waits for the answer, but the answer comes from across the street with the guy asking who he is, and he says that for now it is a postman showing the letter that Debu had found, and it is said that in the destruction of the portal, mysterious criminals destroyed the entrance of the portal in that accident, and the developed merchant guild did their best to find the criminal, but without success. And to be precise, there was no longer any need for it, as the portal reappeared near the initial location not long after, and after it became public, there were no more portal destructions. He only found out about the criminals much later, alone, and the reason behind that was something else. He is inside the place where that guy was, and was looking around. Then that guy asks how he knows about this place, and says he has 5 seconds to explain, with some very dangerous people inside, and he says it's the Silent Crusade, and says there is a secret organization that discovered that the portals were traps set by the followers, and they were responsible for the destruction of the portal, but their altruistic efforts went unnoticed in his previous life, but this time it will be different. While they draw their weapons to be able to deal with the protagonist, he uses telekinesis to bring that letter to them, and says he recovered the item that was lost, but it seems they don't want to reward him, and she starts the countdown, and the protagonist says that they are obviously all lost, and he knows a shortcut, but the countdown doesn't stop, and he says it won't end well for him if he keeps wasting his time, and they continue counting, and he says that due to personal reasons, he can't tell how he knows about this place, but if he kill under the Eldenstein Town Hall, the hiding place of their leader, Batista will be exposed. Then that woman walks up to the protagonist and asks who the hell he is. He says it's an honor to meet Starlin, and she becomes even more apprehensive. The protagonist thinks to himself that how long ago would be more appropriate. After all, they were companions in his past life. He says that Starlin joined the resistance after the Silent Crusade was eliminated, and they fought together in countless battles until that day came. When that flock of dragons descended from the heavens, she told Palm that she would see him soon, and she sacrificed herself that day. He says he'll start by paying off his debt, and he says it will be straightforward, and she must leave Kernan City, as the followers have already identified that place. And one more thing, he says he recently found this while playing for her, and says that Kania had something very interesting. She then questions what that means, because if this is some kind of provocation, it won't work. But he says that it's up to her, showing to the girl, and she notices that it is the tattoo of the follower's symbol. So they are surprised that it is the follower's mark, being certain, and questioning why Kania would have that. And Starlin thinks that this is the symbol that all followers have tattooed somewhere on their bodies, and it is not easily detectable because it is invisible until mana is placed on them, and besides, few people know about followers, and she questions what he wants, because if he says he is there to help, she herself will kill him, but he questions what he wants, and he says it is information, and he needs information, so the protagonist leaves, and after he leaves, someone talks to Starlin, asking him not to say that she completely trusts him, and she says that of course she does not, because he is more suspicious than ever so far of her behavior, and from the moment he appeared, she thinks that if it is a trap set by the followers, it will go badly, but in that, as the protagonist leaves, she says that maybe they should play his game so they can to find out, and he says that this was an unexpected gain, as he got the information he was looking for, but still, he doesn't believe that Kania was already after this, and he wonders if his plans have also changed because of the interventions. He thinks that at this rate, they will make some notes that it is already decided, and they go to Nautilus, a place that is apparently in the middle of the ocean. So, already in that port, the Beau is surprised observing the surroundings, and he says that it has been a whole month, and his body is itching his heart. So, Habs asks the protagonist to choose one of the two, the 60-person portal with 6 divergent paths, or the 77-person portal in line E. Both are decent enough to attract Kanya's attention. He has already rested for a month and is now back to work. The protagonist says he's not sure after thinking about it for a while. Habs complains about what he's talking about, not accepting that the boy will say it will exist now. He says he's already decided where he's going, and it's to the Tomb of the Eagle's Eye. Habs is shocked because the Tomb of the Eagle's Eye is in the picture. He asks if the boy even knows what he's talking about. Kieran, the captain of the Nautilus, who led many pirates under her command, had a protege named Leia, the Eagle's Eye, and she lost her life in the Eagle's Eye portal, which now serves as a tomb in her memory. Habs then says they offer 99 million fears to clear the portal because thousands of adventurers have tried and failed, and it's virtually impossible to get through that portal. And he questions if Kenya could really be behind it and asks how he even heard about it. And then Raken shows up there, saying that he seems to be talking about something interesting, and Habs is shocked, asking what he brings there. But he says that he heard that he would be starting a radio station soon and didn't want to give him something. And he's surprised that his superior wants to give something to Prota. And then he hands over to Phoenix Pins, telling him to consider it a special gift from the Garfo group. And he says that he has high hopes for the boy, and Palm in the present thinks what this means. And now they have the pressure to get through this raid, but at least he has for Phoenix Pins, and that's a pleasant surprise. And Debu asks why he doesn't get on board, and the protagonist says that he's waiting for someone. And they question who it is, but then someone appears, and Palm calls that drunk. And Debu notices that it's Iboru, asking what that's there. And he says that his boss actually wanted it, and he can't believe he had to deliver it in person, but whatever, asking them to try it on. And they put on new clothes, and Hao is all happy that he got new clothes, saying he'll wear them all the time. And Kiri herself says that it's light, because it's as if she's not even wearing armor, then asks what they're made of. And Iboru says it's from the skin of a snow yeti, and his boss gave them to them the other day and asked them to make equipment. And Debu remembers when he said he was going to make good use of those skins, and remembers that it's that. And Iboru says that they must be doing well these days, because it makes sense, since they're skilled enough to clear a portal of 100 people. But Debu tells him to keep it down, asking how he knew that, and he questions how not. After all, his boss gave him such rare items as ingredients, but he tells him to stay cool, because he's the only one who knows, and says that besides that, there are more sets of equipment. But Palm tells him that this one is his, and he's surprised by that, saying that he's generous. But he says he really doesn't need it. But Palm says so dresses. And Iboru says he doesn't understand, and the protagonist tells him to go quickly, because they don't have all day. And Iboru doesn't understand, and ends up being thrown into the group, then a pirate, while in that submarine, says that it's in a terrible calm, and a person starts going towards her, and that person is Minya, and that guy says it's great to see her again. And she starts saying that she missed that breeze, and everyone shouts that she's back. And that means she managed to clear the orange class portal of 200 people, and everyone goes crazy, because the meta of the portal rares will definitely change now. But they say no, and so Minya asks the captain why. Because she even cleared a portal of 200 people, and one of 74. It must be easy, and says that she has already surpassed the Eagle's Eye in skill, and says that there is no reason why she shouldn't let her, but that the captain asks if she wants to challenge her hordes, because it is what's appearing. So she asks who will avenge Leia, asking if she knows how hard she worked for this moment. But the captain says she'll say it again with the captain, telling her to go back. And the girl goes to drown her sorrows and drink, saying she doesn't think she'll leave so soon, wondering if she should just go. But another guy says that his account Kyron worries about her. So she says she's acting overprotective, but someone comes running up to them and talks to Minya, saying she needs to go with him, saying that some idiots just took over the mission of the Eagle Eye Tomb, and she's surprised and wonders if they're for me, wondering why they would go there, and it's the protagonist's own group who is going. Then Debu says he doesn't like Leia's atmosphere, and Kyron says they're in their territory, so he shouldn't talk like that, saying they just violated their golden rule, and they're lucky they haven't crossed a line yet. Bullet in their heads. He questions about this golden rule, and she says she will start with the written rules. In Nautilus, the person who pulls the pole from the table has priority to attempt the portal, and whoever takes the job must enter the portal sooner or later. And although there are only written rules, there is also a golden rule, which is to avoid pulling the pole that someone is eyeing, and the pole they got is the whales. So Miller goes to them asking who they think they are, and says that pole is his, asking how dare they steal it. Then Paula asks why she didn't get the job before them, and she says she was just waiting for approval, and he questions her about it, saying she didn't know she needed it, and she says she needs it because she works for Captain Kiri, and says that in any case they can't raid this portal because she will be illegal to explain, and the Nautilus mission table is reserved for pirates, and they are not allowed to try any portal in their possession if they are not pirates. But Dibbo starts laughing, saying that now he understands his boss, and Miller asks if he is that funny, telling him to return the pole, but Dibbo asks why he should, but says it is a pleasure to meet you, and they are the pirates of Ibor, taking him just to serve as a scapegoat, and he starts laughing all nervously back there, and Miller asks if they are serious. Because you don't just become a pirate like that, and you need to go through a certified process. But Dibbo tells her not to be so harsh, because they are fellow pirates, and asks if she has never heard of Captain Ibor, the leader of the Ibor pirate group. And he has a completely nervous yellow smile, and Dibbo says that Ibor there is a real pirate, asking how she thinks they managed to get into the Nautilus, and says that a group led by a pirate is a pirate band, but at that, some other guys tell him to stop being ridiculous, because he basically just admitted that the rest of them are not pirates, and Dibbo asks who he is. And Miller notices that he is there, and it is Murat, a guy with an absurd aura, so he asks why they are making this whole scene. And Palm thinks about that name, noticing that it is a name he does not remember from his past life, and says that it is not as if they broke the rules. Then Murat says he is not so sure about that, because Kieran made the rules, so it is up to her to decide, and asks where the rest of the crew is, because this can't be his whole band, and the protagonist says that all 5 members are there, so they say these are other people, asking how they could go through a portal of 70 for people, with only 5. And Dibbo questions how he can walk like that, and says it's suspicious to say the least, asking what the protagonist's name is. And Palm introduces himself, and they question if it's that Palm. Then a woman asks if it's someone he knows, and says she heard about him, and remembers correctly. He's the survivor of the red portal of 100 people, and everyone is surprised that he's from that portal where most of the adventurers died, and they notice that they are not weak. And Dibbo says that this is true, but they question what. And that woman says that they still failed to go to the portal and barely survived, which means they weren't good enough for it. But the cave companion questions why she's yelling at him. After all, he's not to blame at all, and she says that on the other hand, Manor cleared a portal of 200 people. With an orange classification, he is clearly superior in terms of skill and intelligence. And she starts to get embarrassed that they're saying this about her, and that guy, Murat, says he understands the protagonist's side, questioning why they don't find some place in middle, because since he pulled out the pole, he'll have the first chance to go through the portal, and who knows, other groups might fill it, since there are 69 more spaces, and Dibbo tries to deny it, but the protagonist agrees. He finds it strange, and he says that 100,000 mesos per space will be paid. However, he will only take 10 more people with him, and everyone questions if he's serious, saying that the boy will probably die anyway, questioning why they don't try after he fails. But Maynard says she doesn't want to take any risks, and says that if they escape the portal just to save their skins, it will all be over. But then he questions her about Kieran's approval. So she says she can't just stand there and wait, because she realized it's much easier to ask for forgiveness after entering the portal. That's it. There was a philosopher out there who said, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission, right? But who am I to say if it's true or not? So she says this portal is hers, and no one else is going to clean it. And Ralph asked what happened to Palm, because he was doing very well, and he questions why only sell 10 seats. Because it was a great chance to make money, and the basic Alethi lost 9 million months, saying they need to sell the other slots quickly. But then Kieran says they would be outnumbered 14-1 that way, and asks if he forgot that they might have followers among them. But he questions him then, because they'll just crush them if they get in the way. But the protagonist thinks he can't afford to take risks this time, considering the enemy's objective, because Captain Kieran's first protege, Leia, with an eagle eye, lost her life in that portal of 70 for people, and the followers murdered the second protege, Manor, also in the same portal. And devastated by the loss of 2 proteges in the same portal, Kieran retired from the adventure and went into hiding, and the followers took advantage of the lack of leadership and tore Nautilus apart. And this was supposed to happen 2 years later, but things changed. And according to the Silent Crusade, the Cania Merchant Union's money was recently tracked there in Nautilus, and this is a telltale sign that they decided to execute the plan beforehand, and they need to restrict the number of adventurers. To protect the manor for sure, he won't make the same mistake again. He needs to minimize the use of his mana. But then everyone starts cursing each other around Iburu, who wonders why he is there. And already at night, someone knocks on the door, and the protagonist uses telekinesis to see who it is, and opens the door asking who is there, and is surprised, and tells that person to come in, and it is Captain Kieran herself along with Murat. Then he asks what brings them there at this time, and she says she has something to confirm personally, and suggests that he be honest with him, saying that it is Palm, asking if he is a follower of the Black Magician, and he gets a big fright, questioning how Kieran knows about the followers, questioning if the future changed again, or she always knew, then questions why in her past life she let the girl die. Then Murat says that he seems shaken by this question, and begins to thicken towards the boy's side, but Palm says he is not a follower, and was only only shocked to hear this question, but she says that for sure. He does not doubt the existence of the followers, and he says it is because there is no point in hiding anything. And she asks how to know he is not a follower, questioning if he has any proof, and the boy says he really has no way of proving it. But he is sure, since he visited her, because he already has his answer, and he knows who the followers are and what kind of relationship he has with them, and if not, he would have been greeted with a bullet in the head instead of a question. And he asks if it was the Silent Crusade that he warned, noting that she has good connections. And she says that is true, because the Merchant Guild of Cania are the followers, and he is their enemy. But that does not mean that they are allies, however. They can work together against the common enemy, and imagines that he is there to discuss this, questioning if there is something she wants from him. And she says that the situation is bleak, and she knows that the followers of the Black Magician are behind Leia's death, eagle-eyed. But it turns out that they have infiltrated deep into the Nautilus, and she can't trust anyone other than a few members of the crew and Murad himself. Then the protagonist is surprised that they have already arrived there, and says that things are moving faster than he anticipated. Then she says that sources told her that they will move soon, and she has reason to believe that the next target is Mania, as she is the icon of the ship now that Leia is gone. And if Mania, who all the pirates admire until now, also dies, great chaos will happen in Nautilus, and even she will not be able to restore order. So she wants to make a deal with Palm, saying to bring Mania safely back from the Tomb of the Eagle Eyes, in exchange for giving him an item from the Nautilus treasure vault. And so, some time later, in front of the portal of 70 for people, Debu is all excited, saying that they are going, telling them not to rush, and Mania is entering with the protagonist, and once inside, Debu notices a new, very scary environment, and he says that they are not there to have a picnic, telling them to keep their guard up. And Ralph thinks they only sold 10 spots thinking about the money they lost, until a monster appears. And it's like a rather weird velociraptor, and Debu gets excited looking at that insignificant little creature, saying he'll finish him off quickly. But apparently, the thing's mother appears, and the boy gets scared, because she's twice or even 3 times the size of the baby, and Debu starts saying he was joking, while the monster comes at him, and things start to heat up with all the pirates, killing some of those Tyrannosauruses and everyone shooting those things, and they tell them to keep taking them down one at a time. And the little pirate talks to Gil, saying that the sound of the gunshots is calling more monsters, but he tells her not to panic, because they'll make it, telling them not to be intimidated by that smelly Draco, because he can create a portal of 200 people. But he forgets to look back, and one of the stinky Dracos almost bites and kills him, but Mania's shots manage to blow up that monster, killing him completely. And she tells Gil that he is right, and tells them to stay calm and regroup, telling him to let her take care of the rest. Man, I really like the AIDS breathing that appears in several monsters, and in that the monsters keep going after them, and the protagonist group runs away. And Debu is surprised that another one is appearing, questioning where they are coming from. Besides that, he remembers that Palm ran away, saying that they should go without him, because he needs to do something, and he gets angry about that, because he ran off somewhere alone once again. But he faces a wall, and ends up getting out of the way of the monster by instinct, and the monster hits its head with everything on that wall, getting dizzy, and he takes the opportunity to finish that thing, saying that for him it's okay, and they will do it. And he remembers Palm saying that their teamwork on the battlefield is horrible, and that way they will only waste energy trying to fight at 100, and they must work together as a team, and they must think of each other as a family now. And all 3 are very surprised and do not like what he is saying at all. So he says he will start with Dilbo, and he really cuts everything in front of him, while remembering Palm ordering him to advance towards the enemy formation, and cause damage, not caring about killing the enemy with one attack. Instead, he must focus on inflicting damage, and he must keep advancing at all times regardless of what happens behind him, just ignoring the attacks that come from behind. This is because Ralph will protect his back millimeter by millimeter, and he talks to the boy, asking what he would do without his father. And Dilbo tells him to shut up. Then Palm talks to Ralph, saying that he will act as Dilbo's shield, ordering him to abandon his current selfish fighting style, and says that now instead he will fight for Dilbo, ordering him to protect him at all cost. And this is an order, and things really work that way, and so they are back to back, with 2 monsters coming, one from each side, and he wants to see what those things are made of, and each one goes to a side, killing each one a prey. But then Ralph stays surprised, because Dilbo is about to be hit, and he calls the boy his son, putting yourself in front of him to protect him, and wonders if this is what a father's love is like, saying that it sure is touching. And Dilbo asks if he can stop talking that shit, and they remember Palm saying that last but not least, he will play a crucial role, and he says that a burn caused by her abilities is not easily healed, and she will use this ability to finish off the injured creatures. And she actually puts the plan into action, using Solar Slash to kill the monster with a single attack, and he says that she is the one who has made the most progress of all of them, now reaching the 3rd circle in a month, and she says that it is not as bad as she thought, saying that they will take care of it quickly, with several Dracos heading towards them. Meanwhile, someone is protecting that portal, but then they see people arriving, and it turns out to be Cadril coming that way. So they ask what brings them there, saying that there is no more room, but Cadril tells them to move out of the way because they cannot play by the rules, and it is an emergency, and they need to tell Manir immediately. Meanwhile, inside, they keep killing Dracos. So everyone congratulates Manir, and she says it was easy, and the other little pirate says it's a great stroke of luck, telling them to look at the size of that mana stone, and says it could fetch a huge price on the market. And then an arrow pierces the girl, and she can't believe what's happening, and Manir too, and that arrow belongs to Palm, who goes after other pirates, almost killing another one of them. And then one of them gets that person out of the way, and he shouts to Manir to end the threat, and she immediately shoots, ending Palm's arrow. But another comes from behind, and she is almost hit, and then Magnum shots come from there, and she gets very angry, looking back, telling him to explain this, and the protagonist says he's just cleaning, and then he launches other arrows at them, telling them to just stay still because it won't be long. And Boru, alone in another corner, notices that no one remembered him. Everyone forgot. He says he can't believe Dibble abandoned him like that. After acting like a tough guy and everything, he questions why he brought him in the first place, because he would be screwed if it weren't for that little hole, and says it's not like he can stay there, because if everyone besides him escapes through the exit portal, he'll stay. And he thinks he's also a 2-circle adventurer, deciding to himself that he won't fall so easily in a miserable place like that, running away from those Dracos. So he ends up reaching the 2nd portal, and wonders what to do, asking if he'll wait there. But then something appears on his back. He gets a big scare, and it's that snail from the protagonist, and Burr says that it scared him a lot, asking since. When he's been there, however, he puts his hand in the portal by accident and ends up being pulled, and that snail feels sorry for him, following the crazy guy. Inside, meanwhile, the protagonist orders he stay still, because it won't be long before they turn into barbecue, wanting to kill them all. And Manor tells them to explain now, asking if she wasn't clear, and she shoots the protagonist, but he dares to be shot in the eyes. And an explosion occurs out of nowhere, and then Cadriel arrives, and he says that it's a good thing he arrived in time, supposedly saving them both. And the protagonist starts to move, and Cadriel says that the enemy is alive, ordering them to get him, and says that it seems that was how El Palm's group survived the 100-person portal alone, and says that Kieran found out about him and sent them after him. And Manor asks if Kieran did this, and the protagonist continues moving forward, launching his arrows and killing everyone who is following him. And then they ask what they are doing, because he is just one guy, shooting with a quick shot at El Palm. So he thinks he caught the boy, but a huge fireball goes over the 3, killing them, and he thinks there are less 3, but some of them shouldn't be there, wondering if they found out. And then Manor quickly appears in front of him, firing 2 shots in the direction of El Palm, who dodges by very little. And she says that he's not going anywhere, shooting again, and the 2 lock horns face to face, and he finally notices the portal there. Then Cadriel orders everyone to duck while throwing something, and the protagonist, seeing that he's throwing something, uses his telekinesis power to raise a barrier between them, and that barrier holds the explosion that returns directly to Cadriel's people and cover the portal. They get frustrated that this is happening, and Manor wonders what the hell this is, while the protagonist gets close to her, using his staff face to face, burning her clothes. And the girl also takes her gun to him, but then she starts saying that he is an idiot, questioning what he is doing, saying that he better have an explanation, otherwise he will suffer. But El Palm questions if she is ready to hear the truth, and she starts to shake, and everyone questions what she is doing, because Manor was taken to, and Cadriel says he was just trying to help. But in that, an explosion occurs inside, and they are scared by that guy who was with Manor, asking her to tell him that she is okay. But then an arrow comes out of there, aiming at both of them, and Manor herself shoots it at Cadriel, killing him. And he asks why she is doing this, and she has already changed completely. And that other guy who was with her the whole time asks what this means, and she questions the result. And the protagonist says he wasted it a lot of mana because of his stubbornness. But he was right, and they are all people who recently joined the crew. So she talks to Gil, ordering him to leave the original crew safe, saying that these are Quirin's orders, showing her cord. And on the other side, Iboru says that he shouldn't have gone in there, because now he has to wait for the rest to find him. And he realizes that he is in another cave, and says that he doesn't want there to be monsters there. So he looks ahead, thinking that that is an adventure running up. And the snail is scared by that crazy guy's instinct for self-preservation. So he shouts to that little thing that's separated from his group, asking if it minds if he goes with it for a bit. But in that, he is attacked by the snail itself that makes him stop. And he asks why she did that, saying that he will do it to to her escargot, but in that the snail tries to warn him because that thing there is not human, and he says that that snail there is not a monster, and when he looks ahead, a monster is about there and tries to attack her, and several of them appear in front of Uro, who is definitely a dumb guy. It would have been better if he had stayed there just fishing. And Minya talking to Gil about Kieran's order leaves him surprised, and he notices that thing on her chest, and moments before. While the girl asks the protagonist to have a good explanation, the protagonist asks her if she knows how to. Read it. Look, since she died, and she is surprised and tells him not to dare talk about her death. But he says that there are some followers of the Black Magician, among those she believes to be her companions, and they were the ones who killed her. And she tells him to shut up, asking if he thinks she will fall for that. But he says that Kieran already knew everything, and that's why they made a deal. And he complained if he needs to spell it out for her, because their goal is to further dilute Kieran's influence, targeting her second protege, her, Minya herself, and she is scared by this. So she wonders about the Black Magician's followers being on the Nautilus, and besides that it is the crew members who are behind Lei's murder. Then he says that Kieran asked him to give her this, and she notices that she is sure that it is Kieran's pendant, and this thing basically symbolizes her, and she wouldn't trust it to just anyone. Then she asks if Kieran realized he knew and tried to protect her, but she asks him to wait, because the crew members he killed were really innovative, but she asked how he managed to distinguish them from the others. And he obviously has the answer right in his eyes. And in another corner, Starling's people are talking to her, asking if she really thinks they made a mistake with that move, saying that not only did he know about it, but he also specifically asked for that item, and says it doesn't make any sense. And they can't trust that guy, and that is the eye patch of clairvoyance, and this item allows the user to visibly see the flow of mana. And although it offers a way to identify the Black Mage's followers, the cost is immense, as it drains the wearer's mana, and Starling says that besides that, no one has been able to use it since Kor's passed away, and it only activates when used by someone with the appropriate affinity. And although she's not sure how a caster is able to use the eye patch of clairvoyance, she tells him not to misunderstand her, as she doesn't completely trust him, but he seemed to share a common goal with him, so he asks what if it's a trap, since they don't even know who sent it, but she says that what's done is done, telling him not to look at her. So, if his mana isn't sufficient, he will end up dying before he can even make good use of it, and they must wait to see what kind of answers he brings. And he says that everyone except the three in front are followers, and the girl is surprised, but decides to take action, so they ask what he's talking about, saying that Manor can't fall for this unfounded slander, and the protagonist questions this, saying that it's quite the opposite. For example, facing the followers has always been annoying, even in his past life, and their tattoos don't appear unless mana is extended to them, and each follower has a tattoo in a different place, but he says that despite the invisibility, a follower definitely has a tattoo. Then he says that he understands that everyone has different tastes, but on the forehead, asking if he didn't have a better place to get it, and the mark actually appears, leaving everyone surprised, and they think this is bad. Aiming at the protagonist and shooting, quickly wanting to kill everyone in the area, but then Joe uses the cannon detonator on them, along with Manor, who starts killing, and the protagonist says he used a lot of mana trying to identify the followers, and if they continue like this, they will be fried, and he says that the second portal is close by, and tells them to catch their breath there, but Maynard tells him to shut up, saying that he will kill them all. However, one of the followers tells the others to stay away if they don't want to die, because the time has come to hunt, throwing that skull at the place. And that skull starts to cover Joe and also Maynard, and she wonders what this is, noticing that it is an illusion, but she can't see anything until she is attacked, and she is surprised by what is happening. And that guy says that as expected of Maynard, even blind, she can dodge, but he guarantees that she will not continue to have the luck on her side in the next, and Joe tends to talk to Maynard because he can't see anything, and that guy who blinded her says that she has been saying how much she misses her eagle eyes, but he tells her not to worry because he will join her, shooting the girl, and tell her to say hi in the other world. But before she could be hit, the protagonist steps in front, saving her, taking the shot in her place. So they think this is impossible, saying that he shouldn't be able to see, but he's using that item to be able to see, and he actually sees everyone's mana there, and they try to shoot him again because they knew there was something wrong with him, and they aim all the bullets at the protagonist, but he uses his telekinesis to put a barrier in front of him and protect himself, taking his staff, using his arrow, and killing several of them in front of him with telekinesis. Then he notices that it's a fire arrow, and that guy says that this won't get him very far, using the spike cannon at the protagonist, but in that the arrow goes through that and goes straight to that guy's head, and as he dies he thinks that this doesn't make any sense, so they think he has too much power, but they think it's just a fire arrow, questioning how this is possible, trying to get the protagonist. However, he uses the power of the four phoenixes, this time using the revolver against them, making an absurd slaughter, and they notice that he has just turned the fire arrow, and the guy with the skull in his hand is scared, but he doesn't have a chance to do much, because the protagonist appears next to him, ripping off the hand that was holding the skull and plunging a dagger into the middle of his chest. And he also kills the other one who was there. And so, Maynard notices that he can see again, looking to the side, but everyone is already dying. And that guy who is dying in the protagonist's chest prepares to use the last trick. He has to get out of there, and he says that it is all for the glory of the black magician, exploding several mana crystals near them, causing chain explosions, throwing everyone away. But the protagonist uses his telekinesis, picking up a stone, and taking all of them who were there, and they are surprised. And the protagonist says that he is also under their limit, and they need to go to the next portal before their mana runs out completely. But the last follower is still alive, and he goes all out for Maynard, throwing her off the rock, and they are surprised by her. And the protagonist tries to catch the girl with telekinesis, but that follower tells him not to go so fast by throwing a grenade at his head, exploding everything near that portal. And he also explodes part of the portal, which apparently is undone. And the girl looking back is surprised by what happened, and the portal is no longer in front of her, and without the escape route, she doesn't have much to do. And the followers seeing that are shocked because the portal to the second part is gone, and they lost El Palm, but one of them tells the others not to worry, because the portal should respawn in the same area soon, and besides, the real objective is to get rid of Maynard, and they really go after her, and one of them uses the move and pulls the cork, but the girl manages to land a shot in that guy's arm, but he says that it won't work, using the Admiral's wings to heal himself, and she thinks that her attack isn't working, and he was hiding his abilities this whole time, and he says that she's too weak, shooting at point-blank range, but he still manages to go for it and almost hit the girl, who jumps, trying to escape, and ends up behind him shooting at close range behind his head, and those shots go down to his foot, and he starts screaming, but while she's stuck to that guy, the others shoot. But she gives him a leg lock, spinning quickly and putting him in front of all those bullets to receive in her place. Then she prepares to continue shooting through his middle, hitting those behind him, and she continues making a line of corpses. But that guy is still alive and tries to hit her with the dagger, but Maynard shoots him again right in the abdomen and puts her pistol in that guy's mouth, exploding from the inside out, and so Pedro falls asleep, and she says there's no time to waste, questioning what they're waiting for, telling them to come at him. Then Debu asks what all this is, because more portals have appeared, and looking to his side he notices that there are some there too, wondering if they all lead to the second part. But Rolf says they must be special types of portals, because if what he read is correct, they say that each of the portals is connected to a different point in the second phase, and if a certain number of individuals pass through one, that portal closes, forcing the rest to use another passage, and at that, Debu asks him to wait, questioning if he's saying they won't know where they'll end up, and how they'll find the boss. But Rolf says he doesn't know, and it's not like he has a choice but to try his luck. And so they pass through a portal, and notice that the three of them pass through calmly, and he says that they should keep an eye on the surroundings, because Alfalm can appear from another portal, and the sooner they reunite the better it would be. But then he looks ahead, asking who that is, and Debu notices that he's running there for some reason, wondering if it's the boss. But it turns out to be a Buru who's running away from those monsters almost dying, and he thanks them for saving him. But Debu questions what he's talking about, telling him not to go there. And Aburu says that the Aburu pirates have the best level of camaraderie, but the boy says he's obviously wrong, telling him to run the other way. And so, meanwhile, Palm is running away from those monsters, arriving at that place alone, and he says there's no way this is happening, and Gil tells him that they're not normal monsters, they're wearing crew clothes, wondering if they were once human in the past. But Palm says he doesn't think that's their biggest concern, since they're not dying, and he says they also shoot them in the head and nothing happened, and they're running out of ammo. Then the pirate says he's never heard of anything like that before. He questions how it's possible that there isn't a core in a monster, and he says that if they're zombies born from human bodies, that would explain why they don't have weak points, but he still doesn't understand, because things are so different from what he remembers that he can't understand, and he needs to find a way to defeat them all. But he wonders what that thread of mana is connected to their bodies, which goes to another place, and he wonders how long that thing is, and says it must be on the other side of the wall. And when he goes there, following the flow of mana, he sees Dilbo and notices that everyone seems to have passed to the second part too, but he uses too much mana, and notices that it is almost exhausted, and he can no longer sustain the skill. And so the monsters come after him, and Dil asks Palm what happened, telling him to get out of there. But the monster almost gets him. However, something happens, and a pillar falls on top of that thing, and in that, Minor appears and Dil is all happy, and she shoots those pillars, throwing them all on top of the monsters, and the guy who is with Dil thanks her for being saved, asking if everything is okay with her, and she talks to Kevin, telling him to get out of the way if he doesn't want to die, and he even finds what she's saying strange, but she fulfills her promise, blowing up everything in front of him. Then with that hole, Palm looks at it scared, and Kevin and Gil talk to Minor her that she really almost killed them, but she says that there are still a lot of them, and they complain about what they do because they are low on ammo. And she says that maybe she can still get one more shot like that and use all her mana, but Palm asks her to wait, saying that she shouldn't do it yet because maybe they will need this ability later, and she is surprised by the boy, saying that he is lucky to be alive now, asking if he didn't see the monsters. And they didn't, can be selective. And the protagonist says that they are about half a mile from the devil in a straight line, and he doesn't have time to think of another tactic now, and he asks him to get ready in 5 or maybe even 3 minutes, and she questions what he can do in 3 minutes. And he says he will clear the portal by eating mana crystals. Meanwhile, Vo is swinging his axe at all the monsters that come towards him, and he wonders what the hell is going on, because he already understood that they are born from human bodies, but he cut off their heads. But before he could do anything, that monster grabs his neck, making Vo almost die. But then Ralph arrives there saving the boy, and Vo asks if it is even possible to defeat those zombies, so he tells the boy to stop crying, because if he has time to complain, then he should swing his axe again. And they continue trying to kill that thing, and even a bird tries to help by shooting completely wrong in the air and grabbing Mr. Blackadet, who stands above the zombies crushing him. Then they say it was a brilliant move, and he even pretends it was because he wanted to, and that monster that was down there ends up getting up again, but this time much bigger. And Vo can't believe what he's seen because she's the mother of those things, and he questions what Abaru did because he woke that thing up, and the only thing Abaru did so far ended up being something he doesn't like so much, and the poor guy even thought it had been a brilliant move. And in that situation, against that there are so many zombies. They're all doing their best to survive, and Palmy is gathering aura behind everyone. He says his heart is about to explode, and he really doesn't want to take such a big risk again. But he has no alternative, as he still can't advance to the next circle. And doing so prematurely will only cause undesirable results. But there's only one option left. He's been in this situation countless times in his past life, and the monsters keep getting more powerful, but his mana and attack power don't increase as quickly. After becoming a 6th circle adventurer, the highest level, he had to find another method to enhance these skills, so he bet on mana stones. And mana stones were only used to advance to the next circle. But since this substance contains the monster's life force, he thought he could perhaps convert this energy into mana by consuming its core. This would theoretically help the consumer regenerate lost mana. As long as the mana increase can be kept under control, this will work. But to do so, he needs to make the mana travel to his heart, along with his bloodstream. If his body can handle this, things will work out. While killing the monster, gets a fright looking back, and the protagonist tells her she did a good job, once again launching a gigantic fireball at those things. Then, she calls Palmy, and he's completely changed, telling her to prepare to use that ability from before. She doesn't quite understand, as he looks quite different, and the protagonist is already totally badass. Meanwhile, Kiri and the others are killing the monsters on their side, and Ralph ends up being thrown back by a monster's tongue, and the thing's saliva starts to melt his arm, and he notices that there is a mushroom growing there, realizing that this is how the adventurers turned into zombies. And he tears off that piece of his arm along with the mushroom and starts to heal back that spot. And he tells them to make sure to avoid direct contact with the tentacles, unless they want to turn into those disgusting zombies. And then Debu realizes that that is the boss, noticing that everyone started to slow down a bit, and they'll be finished if they continue at this rate. So he goes ahead, telling the two to leave him with him and go to a safe place, and everyone tells him to wait. But he thinks he needs to do something, going ahead, cutting everything that is in his direction. And one of those mushrooms, the huge one, launches its tongue towards the boy and ends up catching a part of him, making him spit blood. But he still manages to get out of the way of that thing somehow, and when that monster was fixed to hit him, he opens his eyes with blood flying, and Kiri stood in front of him, receiving that attack for him. Then, in another corner, there with Mania, Palm asks her to concentrate, telling her to focus on her skill, because he will take care of the aim, and they will destroy this wall. He says that he only has one chance and tells her to start, and she really aims her skill, and uses the crushing bullet together with Palm's help. And that thing opens a rotating hole in the wall while she destroys everything in front of her. That the protagonist uses his telekinesis, making it go faster and deeper. He uses the revolver on that thing, but thinks it's still not enough and tells it to hold on tight, because they haven't gotten there yet. He uses several fire arrows on top of that bullet to give it more pressure, and it pierces the entire wall until it reaches his friend's path, D, that is out of ammunition, and the monsters are going after Mania and also Palm, while D.Va on the other side is stuck dying. He is left without any hope. But it is said that monsters without the core are basically puppets. They were deceived by those in front of them, but in fact, men as children are trapped in their bodies and are connected to the true owner of the core, and therefore, they seem to be invincible, because the one they must target and destroy is that huge monster back there. The protagonist uses his bullet to actually go to that thing, being close to it, and using the rocket impact, leaving and destroying that thing along with its core. And D.Va and Rolf watch it, along with him and Mania, who end all the threat, and the girl starts to fall, and the monsters are destroyed, and Gil and Guru are super happy that it's over, and the protagonist says that the portal is finally clean. My friend, there is nothing like a transformation bads doesn't solve it. It's simply cinema. This protagonist is absurd. So guys, as you know, leave a like, subscribe, go to the video, and comment. Let's break like records so I can bring you the continuation of this even faster. And I'll definitely see you in the next video. Bye.